Tons. After removing the cork, Kana aimed at the mouth of the bottle, raised his head and drank it all in one gulp. The cheeks that had almost returned to normal color after resting were now lightly flushed again. Emoi leaned on the sofa and said helplessly, "Okay, have you drunk now? Do you want to share your troubles with me?" Hesitated for a long time. Kana finally felt reassured in her heart, walked to Emoi, sat down slowly, and said, "Actually, I'm different from everyone else. I came to the guild to find my father, his name is Gildarts." Although Emoi already knew about her past, but I still chose to listen patiently to Kana's story. I think that only after becoming an S-class mage can you be truly qualified to be his daughter. But just last night, I overheard the president and others discussing the next S-level assessment. There is only one place that can pass the assessment this year, and they all thought it would be you. Emoi couldn't help but feel ashamed. Why are you related to me again? After she finished speaking, Emoi immediately analyzed. Ahem. Kana, actually, there shouldn't be any necessary connection between whether or not you want to be an S-class mage and your acquaintance with Uncle G, right? Have. Kana's reaction was extremely violent and he retorted. Because his status in the guild is too high. As her daughter, I have not been able to reach even half of his height after joining the guild for so long. Emoi rolled his eyes, spread his hands and said, "Isn't this nonsense? Even if you don't know any magic, you still can't change the fact that you are father and daughter." Kana wanted to say something more, but Emoi sighed, curled his lips and laughed at himself. "Actually, I'm quite envious of you. At least you know that Uncle G is your father. But what about me? I'm almost 20, and I still don't know what my parents look like." Kana's eyes suddenly widened. "Is this, you?" Emoi had a bitter look on his face, nodded reluctantly, and said helplessly, "Yes, I came out of the orphanage. But luckily, Emoi did not encounter any setbacks while growing up. Mentally pretty healthy. Before he was reincarnated here, although he was not as good as the gold medal lawyer Zhang Yuda in material terms, he was still living a well-off life." Emoi stood up, poured a glass of warm water and handed it to Kana, and said gently, "If I were you, I would have confessed to Uncle G on the first day I came to the guild. I believe Uncle G just doesn't know you exist. As long as he knows that he has a daughter, no matter if she is an S-class magician or not, he will definitely search for her at all costs, right?" Kana is still undecided. But, although Gildas usually has no heirs, but every time Kana saw him, the truth would get stuck in her throat due to excessive nervousness. Emoi recalled the scene in the morning when he and other members of the team returned to Magnolia, and suggested, "How about this? I saw Uncle G went out with fishing gear this morning. He is probably still fishing now. I'll accompany you to the wilds to find him later. Let's make it clear to him now." Before Kana could respond, Emoi immediately added, "Also, don't expect me to hold back or let anything go during the assessment. If you are still planning to become an S-class mage before confessing, then I can't help you." Emoi uses both soft and hard tactics. Kana's eyes suddenly showed confusion, and she almost bit her lip to bleed. There was a silent storm inside. A long while. When she slowly stood up and looked at Emoi, the timidity in her eyes had disappeared a lot, and there was more determination, and a little hope and worry. "Let's go." Seeing Kana make a decision, Emoi also smiled. After all, so much time was not wasted. Emoi still remembers that Gildas was walking towards the outskirts of Magnolia in the early morning, carrying fishing gear in his hand. At that time Gildas also invited them to go fishing together, but they were too sleepy, so they politely refused. It's already afternoon, but according to Emoi's estimation, Gildas should still be there. Turn on the storm dragon wings and bring Kana over. It won't take too long. Midair. Kana was held by Emoi's wrist and said coyly, "I am still a little nervous." Emoi was speechless for a while. "We've come this far, why don't you back down now?" Her expression was still unnatural. Emoi simply released his right hand gently, and as his wrist slid down, Kana's body sank from the air in an instant. Kana's heart suddenly pounded, and she almost thought she was about to fall. After all, we are at an altitude of tens of meters at the moment. If we fall, we will probably be shattered to pieces. Fortunately, Emoi grasped her wrist again in the next second and stopped falling. Kana came back to her senses and couldn't help asking, "Hey, what are you doing?" "To cheer you up," Emoi said nonchalantly. The natural scenery outside Magnolia is particularly beautiful. Along the clear river, Emoi soon saw an unkempt fishing uncle in the distance. "It's Gildarts," Emoi reminded. "Control your emotions, we will land soon." "Ah, so fast." As soon as he finished speaking, the light of the storm dragon's wings reappeared, and Emoi's body dived downward towards Gildarts' position. The landing place was just a dozen steps to his side. At this moment, Gildas was still wearing the tattered black cloak, but his eyes were fixed on the floating fish float, concentrating on it. But when Kana saw him like this, the tension in his heart still didn't ease at all. He unconsciously shrank his body behind Emoi. Emoi had a bitter look on his face and whispered, "You don't want to say this yourself? What's the point of hiding behind me? How about you call him for me, I'll tell him what happens next." "All right." Emoi reluctantly agreed, walking up to Gildas step by step, and was about to talk. "Uncle G, shh." Gildas didn't even turn his head to take a look, and immediately put his index finger on his lips to signal silence. His eyes were still focused on the fish float floating slightly up and down, and he slowly grasped one end of the fishing rod with his right hand. Yes. After a few seconds, a flash of excitement suddenly flashed in Gildarts' eyes, and the hand holding the fishing rod suddenly raised. Under the traction of the fishing line, the golden fishhook draws a beautiful arc from the sky with drops of water, shining in the sunshine. This superb operation showed off Emoi's face. There is no flaw except that there is no fish on the hook. Cut. Gildarts snorted disdainfully from his nose, turned his head unhappily, and looked lazily at Emoi. I called you this morning and you didn't come? It's better now, because when you come you will scare away all my fish. Is there a possibility that you couldn't catch it in the first place? Emoi rolled his eyes and secretly wondered why these fishing guys all have the same moral character. As long as you talk to them, they will immediately feel that there is movement in their fish float, and then they will miss a big fish weighing 100 pounds because they ignore you. After Emoi finished speaking, he glanced into the bucket next to Gildarts holding the fish. As he expected, it was empty inside. Sensing Emoi's contemptuous gaze, Gildarts suddenly acted like a child who had discovered a secret. His face turned red. He hurriedly hid the bucket behind his back, and shouted, "What are you looking at? I caught a big fish in the morning, but I grilled it and ate it at noon. What about the fish bones? It's so delicious that I even ate all the fish bones. You know, my barbecue is really good." Emoi shrugged helplessly and did not say anything to expose it. After all, I came to him this time for business. Tactics coughed twice. Emoi looked serious and stepped into the topic. Uncle G. Clam. Do you want a daughter? As long as you open the mouth of Chrysostom, I will bring it to you right away. What the hell? Gildarts thought Emoi had taken the wrong medicine when Tulu said this. What does it mean to not want a daughter if you want one? Emoi scratched his head. Well, how should I explain it in detail? Let me tell you. A soft voice came from behind Emoi. Kana finally mustered up the courage to gradually lean out and look at Gildarts calmly. Emoi breathed a sigh of relief. She finally figured it out and was willing to confess. Gildarts looked at Kana with interest and pretended to be listening. Are you looking for something from me, little girl? Looking at Gildarts' weather-beaten face, Kana's lips trembled slightly, her eyes finally calmed down, and she said slowly, "Actually, the reason why I came to the guild is to find my father." Gildarts was slightly surprised, but did not connect these words with what Emoi said before, and said, "This is the first time I've heard of this. Does it mean that your father was once a member of Fairy Tale?" Disappointment quickly welled up in Kana's eyes, her fists clenched, and her lips almost bled from being bitten. For a long time, Kana finally raised his head again and revealed the secret that had been sealed in his heart for many years. "My mother told me before she died that my father's name is Gildarts, and that's you." Gildarts' expression froze. The brain is down. A few seconds later, looking at Kana's red cheeks, she finally woke up from a dream. This news was like thunder exploding in my ears, buzzing continuously. Gildarts' eyes suddenly widened, his jaw almost dropped to the ground, his eyes full of shock and disbelief. Kana explained, "Because a lot of things happened in the middle, so I didn't decide to tell you until now." Wait a minute. Gildarts covered his face and stretched out an arm to interrupt Kana. "You, who gave birth to you?" As soon as these words came out. Now it's Kana's turn to be restless. "What do you mean who gave birth to me?" Gildarts stared at Kana's face for a while, but still couldn't recognize her, so he could only ask one by one. I really can't guess who your mother is. Sarah? Naomi? Claire? Fina? Mary? Eliza? Oh no, your hair color doesn't look like Emma? Leela? Jenny? Sharia? Kate? Yoka? Francoise?" Seeing Gildarts counting his fingers, he eliminated them one by one. "Now 10 fingers are not enough." Emoi said quietly from the side, "Uncle, how many girlfriends have you had?" Kana was also awkward in place, with a rather unnatural expression on his face. "Oh, I know." Gildarts' eyes suddenly lit up, and he immediately said, "You must be Salupia's daughter. You are exactly the same, such as gender." Kana had a black hair, glanced at Gildarts with disgust, and said speechlessly, "I'm really pd off. I didn't expect my dad to be such a carefree man." Gildarts scratched his head in embarrassment. Kana snorted and turned his head angrily. "Anyway, that's what happened. I'm done. Emoi, let's go." Wait a minute. Gildarts shouted. "Kana's anger has not gone away, that's all I want to say. I don't have to become a family member with you. My life is very good now." The words have not yet finished. Kana suddenly felt a pair of strong arms, and without any explanation, he pulled her into his arms. At first she wanted to resist. But Gildarts' voice above him was particularly reassuring. "You are Cornelia's child, you can never be wrong. Let me go," Kana whispered. "Why, are you telling me this now?" I haven't been able to say it out loud, and it has been delayed until today for no reason." Fall into Gildarts' warm embrace. Kana finally opened up. Gildarts lost his impropriety and said word by word, "Cornelia is the only woman I have ever truly loved in my life, and I have only ever married her. It's just that she couldn't accept the various dangerous jobs I was involved in every day and left 18 years ago. A few years ago, I also learned about her death. I'm sorry, I never found out that you are our daughter, Kana." Kana smiled faintly and gently pushed Gildarts' arm away. "I came to you today not to ask you to take some responsibilities or anything. I just want to untie the knot in my heart." From now on, we can still get along with each other as before, right? However, I still want to tell you something. Nice to meet you, Dad. Kana looked relieved and looked at Emoi, who was watching the show next to him, as if to indicate that he could leave. Emoi did not respond, but quietly pointed his finger at Gildarts. Why? Kana then turned around and looked again. The 2-meter-tall man in front of me was bursting into tears at some point. In his eyes, remorse, regret, guilt, and doting were intertwined together, and tears flowed down. Gildarts could no longer control his emotions, hugged Kana into his arms again, and murmured, I won't let you be alone again. But this time, Kana finally did not refuse, hugged him calmly, and accepted the love that should have been hers. Emoi turned around unnaturally and walked slowly and quietly towards the distance. Hey, I'm too old to see these things, and it's easy to get crocodile in my eyes. It's so nice to be reunited. I did another great good deed today. I'll reward myself later by going to the Dream Demon Custom Museum. He didn't take a few steps. Kana called to himself. Emoi, thank you for what happened today. Looking at Kana's heartfelt sweet smile, Emoi suddenly felt that Jumenzi was quite cute sometimes. Although he often drinks and teases himself. There's no need to say thank you or anything. Just don't drink too much and collapse in front of my house again. Emoi said half-jokingly. No way. Gildarts looked at Kana dotingly, and then at Emoi who was about to leave, and seemed to know what was going on. He casually opened the satchel that was thrown aside on the ground and took out some drinks. He also threw a can to Emoi. Emoi took it in his hand and saw that there wasn't even a label on the drink can, so he had no idea what was inside. As two voices sounded, Kana and Gildarts had already opened the drinks, cheering and drinking. Emoi still asked cautiously, what kind of drink is this? Isn't it a bar again? Of course not, it's just oolong tea. Gildarts replied with a smile. Immediately, he took the drink from Emoi's hand and opened the tab for him. Come on. Thank you today for finding such a beautiful baby girl for me. Emoi looked at him with a strange expression and did not take the drink. Instead, he activated the fire tribute dragon-slaying crystal in his body, and his fingertips ignited with flames. An embarrassing scene occurred. The moment the index finger touched the top of the drink, the entire can immediately started to burn. Emoi asked expressionlessly, your oolong tea can catch fire, right? Seeing the lie exposed, Gildarts didn't feel any shame at all. He smiled and said with force, combustible oolong tea is also oolong tea. Emoi has a black line on his head, but looking at Kana and Gildarts who were toasting and drinking, they seemed to have a lot to say. It wouldn't be appropriate to bother me anymore. Emoi chuckled and shook his head, and the wings of the storm dragon reappeared. Just as he was about to return to Acnologia. In the brain, a strange magic wave suddenly came. Hey, what's going on? As the fluctuations stabilized, a picture seemed to appear in front of Emoi. In the picture, a pair of white-haired sisters seemed to have been seriously injured. In front of the two of them, there was a guy whose body was integrated with the trees and was constantly attacking them. Emoi's eyes widened suddenly. Two clusters of angry flames suddenly ignited in the pupils, and his hands clenched tightly into fists unconsciously, and the knuckles turned white from the exertion and trembled slightly. The source of this magic is the Haze Forest. Back to this morning. Lysina and Myra Jane went out together, preparing to go to the guild. Halfway, remembering that they were the only two sisters at home recently, Lysina couldn't help but ask, by the way, Sister Myra, I don't seem to have seen Brother Elfman recently. The day before yesterday, he was suddenly visited by Evergreen from the Thunder Gods, saying that he had to ask him to help with a commission. As a result, there is still no news. When Myra Jane said this, there was not only no concern for Elfman's safety in her tone. On the contrary, how much expectations are there? Myra Jane had long noticed that Evergreen seemed to have a crush on her steely brother. She said she was dragging Elfman to work, but maybe actually, she was the client. And from Miragina's smile, Lysina roughly guessed something. Okay, so, our brother Emoi and the others back. Myra Jane was startled when she heard this, then stopped, looked at Lysina meaningfully, tilted her head and smiled. What's the matter? You're calling me so affectionate. No, nothing, just asking. Realizing that her performance might be too obvious, Lysina blushed and immediately lowered her voice. Myra Jane then explained, Emoi and Urza Natsu are in the same team. They usually do tasks quite frequently. It is rare to see them in the guild hall all the time. Is this so? A flash of disappointment flashed in Lysina's beautiful eyes. What's the matter? What's wrong with him? Myra Jane asked. Lysina said sadly, Brother Emoi was afraid that I would not be comfortable with it when I first returned to Aslant. He said that when I wanted to go to work, I could ask him to go with me. I didn't expect him to be so busy. Do you want to go to work? It has been a few days since I returned from Edila's. During this time, Lysina has become familiar with the town of Acnologia and the Fairy Tale Guild again. She herself also wants to return to the normal pace of life in the past. Myra Jane thought for a while and then suggested softly, how about I work with you today? Sister Myra, aren't you usually very busy? Myra Jane smiled lightly and shook her head. After Laxus left the guild, I was afraid that the guild leader would be lonely, so I often asked him to help take care of little Mina. As for the front desk waiter's work, I asked Kana to help today. Lysina was overjoyed and gave Myra Jane a warm hug. / amazed face, / okay, thank you, Sister Myra. Okay, let's go to the guild first. And after the two arrived at the guild, Lysina quickly selected the commission from the bulletin board. B-level mission, obtain the water from the Yanyan spring in the Haze Forest that can cure miasma. No special requirements. The reward is 80,000 J. B-level tasks don't sound difficult. In addition, Myra Jane has already recovered her strength as an S-class mage, so it is almost easy to deal with such a request that does not require fighting. But the main purpose of this trip is to help Lysina adapt quickly. Myra Jane readily agreed, handed the order to Kana for registration, and then took her sister to the destination in a carriage. It's almost the same scene as when Emoi came here last time. The trees in the hazy forest are too lush, and their branches and leaves are layered on top of each other, intertwining into an airtight green dome. The sun tried its best to penetrate this thick barrier, but it could only shed a few faint rays of light on the edge and was unable to penetrate deep into the forest. The moment you step into the forest, a damp coolness hits your face, and darkness instantly envelops you. Myra Jane reminded softly, Lysina, follow me. Keep moving forward according to the route given on the order form. The deeper they went into the forest, a faint feeling of uneasiness emerged from the hearts of the two of them. It seems eerily quiet here. Lysina suddenly said, Sister Myra, do you smell something weird? After all, Lysina was practicing the magic of receiving animal souls. Even if magic is not used in normal times, the five senses are still sharper than normal humans. Only after her reminder did Myra Jane smell it. There was indeed a strange, vague smell permeating the area. Wait, the magic power in the body is gradually fading. After a few seconds, Myra Jane suddenly realized that even though she had not used any magic, her magic power began to slowly decay. Sister Myra, I am the same, the magic power seems to be fading. It's miasma? Go quickly, get out of here. Myra Jane shouted urgently, took Lysina's wrist and ran towards the original road. But the two of them just turned their heads. A sudden loud noise directly broke the silence of the entire forest, and a towering tree in front of him exploded in an instant. The thick tree trunk seemed to be torn from the inside by huge force, and countless wood chips and splinters shot out in all directions like bullets. Under its violent impact, the air seemed to be distorted, forming ripples visible to the naked eye. Myra Jane subconsciously protected Lysina behind her. However, Lysina stepped forward first and directly activated the magic power in her body. The magic circle appeared from under her feet and received light beams covering her whole body. Animal soul penguin. When the light dissipated, Lysina's body was covered with a thick layer of penguin down, which absorbed all the wood chips that bounced over. Until it comes down. Lysina breathed a sigh of relief and returned to her original appearance. Myra Jane stepped forward with concern, carefully checking Lysina's body for any injuries. You girl, you always take risks. But at this moment, Lysina's eyes were looking straight ahead. In the direction where the trees collapsed and exploded, a strong figure was walking towards them. Every time the opponent takes a step forward, the pressure of the magic power radiated became even stronger, exerting huge pressure invisibly, which made people feel heart-stopping. Sister Myra. His target seems to be us. Don't be afraid. Myra Jane gently held Lysina's hands and comforted her in a low voice. But in her heart, she still had a deep fear of the person in front of her. The other party's magic seems to be more powerful than her and Lysina combined. As the sturdy figure moved in front of him, this person has bronze skin, the color and shape of his hair are almost the same as those of tree branches, and he is wearing green and brown clothes. It's like a living tree man turned spirit. Myra Jane stood vigilantly in front of Lysina and asked, Who are you? Was the attack just caused by you? The other party looked indifferent and uttered a few words expressionlessly. Devil's Heart, Azuma. Devil's Heart. Marajana's beautiful eyes immediately flashed with a bit of surprise. She took a breath of cold air, and her face became a bit paler. One of the three giants of the Dark Guild Balam Alliance, the Devil's Heart. Lysina on the side has rarely heard news about the Dark Guild, but seeing Marajana's reaction and the terrifying magical aura on Azuma's body, he immediately took out the amulet he had brought from Edela's from his waist, gritted his teeth and poured a large amount of magic power into it. The amulet given by Sister Myra from another world. I hope it will come in handy. And faced with Azuma's powerful pressure, Myra Jane mobilized all her magic power without hesitation. As the magic circle emerged, it suddenly transformed into the form of a demonic Satan with dark wings. Receive the soul of Satan. Confronting Azuma in the air. Although negotiations have not yet taken place, the other party is a member of the Dark Guild that has always been hostile, and Myra Jane does not expect Azuma to simply let them go. Feel the surge of Marajana's magical aura. Azuma's eyes instantly filled with eager fighting spirit, and he said in a voice as deep as a bell. According to our guild's information, you should be Fairy Tale's S-class mage, Majin Myra Jane, right? Myra Jane didn't make a sound, staring straight ahead, always on guard against the other party's sudden attack. Azuma's eyes were calm, his gaze slowly swept over, and he suddenly raised his thick arm, pointing his palm directly at Lysina. Following the girl's scream, Myra Jane turned around in shock, only to discover the most despairing scene for her. The surrounding trees were controlled by Azuma and became intertwined. At this moment, Lysina was restrained and unable to move, but these trees were still shrinking. Lysina. Myra Jane rushed forward like crazy, tearing at the branches with her hands frantically, but the branches seemed to be welded together. Doesn't help at all. Lysina looked more and more painful. Azuma's voice without any emotion sounded again. I have been pursuing a battle with the strong, Majin Myra-Jane. As long as you can defeat me, you can all leave here safely. Mirajana's demonic hand gently touched Listena's forehead, whispered a few words of comfort, and then slowly turned her head. His eyes were filled with anger and cruelty. As the purple-black flame burned from the palm of his hand, the demonic power exploded. With the support of his wings, Mirajana's speed suddenly increased to its peak. Almost like a ghost, it disappeared from the spot and appeared next to Azuma. Dark spark. The palm claws with dark magic power continuously bombarded Azuma's body. Feel the magic power fluctuations emanating from Mirajana's body like a demon's breath. Azuma's eyes were filled with more fighting spirit, and he lightly jumped onto the trunk of the giant tree behind him, and his body followed him and escaped into the tree. However, Myra-Jane was already desperate at this moment. She didn't care about Azuma's intention at all, and directly shifted the attack target to the entire tree. Howling Bee. Just when Mirajana's surging satanic power was about to bombard the giant tree, Azuma has used the arc of the big tree to absorb part of the natural energy, and his magic power suddenly increased, and he freed his arms to instantly extend countless dense branches. And at the end of the tangled branches, a cluster of intense flames suddenly appeared, burning onto Mirajana's demonic claws. A severe burning sensation penetrated from her body into her heart. Myra-Jane still clenched her teeth and urged her magic power to attack. But the next moment, as Azuma mobilized his magic power again, a dangerous and extremely unstable energy was quietly spreading above the burning branches in front of him. Chain Blast. Under the control of the arc of the big tree, the magic power of the earth and trees was concentrated to the extreme, and suddenly exploded. Smoke and dust flew up, and Myra-Jane retreated violently, leaving traces of ravines on the ground. A devil's claw took the opportunity to dig into the ground, and then he stabilized his body slightly. Compared with the previous madness, Mirajana's face was obviously more fearful at this time. His magic power is stronger than any opponent I have ever seen. In the Devil's Heart Guild. Although Arusha is the head of the 7 familiars of Purgatory, her status depends to a certain extent on the powerful mechanism of the Arc of Time. The lost magic used by Azuma is the Arc of a Big Tree. This magic is almost entirely used for attack and defense in battle. If we just talk about the tyranny of combat power, Azuma is definitely not inferior to Arusha, who has the strength of the Holy 10. Myra-Jane looked back distressfully at Listener, who was still trapped in the prison of branches, and was planning to straighten up and attack again. However, he suddenly realized that his body was weak and his legs had become weak. Oops, it was the poisonous gas just now. The magic power in the body is still decreasing. For magicians, magic power is not only equal to the energy bar, but even half of the life bar. Once the magic power is exhausted, I am afraid that I will be weaker than a muggle who cannot use magic. This performance was naturally noticed by Azuma. Azuma glanced at Myra-Jane and said in a calm tone, "Have you inhaled the miasma poison?" Myra-Jane still didn't respond. She raised her head and glared at Azuma, her angry eyes almost bursting into flames. Azuma continued, "The miasma in the Haze Forest was accidentally caused by me during my practice here some time ago. Just inhaling a small amount like you are doing now has already caused temporary magic attenuation. However, it can be restored as long as you breathe normally for a period of time. But if a large amount is inhaled at one time, or if it is exposed to a miasma environment for a long time, the effects will soon be fatal." The purple-black light once again covered Myra-Jane, who fell to the ground. But this time, her satanic form was stripped away and she returned to her original weak appearance. Now, Myra-Jane used all the remaining strength in her body to finally stand up and slowly walked to the bound Listener. "Sister Myra." A pale smile appeared on Mirajana's pretty face, and she apologized, "I'm sorry, Listener. As my sister, I failed to protect you again." At the same time, Azuma also escaped from the trees and walked towards the two sisters step by step. The concentrated explosive magic power condensed in his hands, Azuma said, "Instead of letting you suffer and die in the miasma, why not let me end your pain with one blow?" Azuma raised his arm. Just when the magic power of the explosion was about to be concentrated and attacked, his expression suddenly changed drastically, and he had no time to retract his arm. Above the towering trees, a golden thunderbolt suddenly struck down with the force of breaking bamboos, and then exploded directly and violently bombarded Azuma's strong body. Faced with this sudden change, Azuma had no time to resist. He only felt a huge force coming and his body flew backwards involuntarily. Azuma, who was violently repulsed, smashed into giant trees all the way, and the thick trunks broke one after another, making a heavy cracking sound, until they finally stopped in front of a rock full of cracks. Myra-Jane and Listener stared blankly at the scene before them. As the smoke and dust dispersed, the figure of the Golden Thunder was clearly seen. Apart from disbelief, there was even more hope in the beautiful eyes. "Emoi. Sorry, I'm late." Emoi turned around with a forced smile and said softly. Myra-Jane seemed to suddenly remember something. Worry appeared on her face again, and she reminded, "Be careful, there is a poisonous gas in this forest that can directly affect the magic power in the body." Emoi had already smelled this unusual smell when he first entered the Hazy Forest. The last time he met the 3 Iridia people here, there was obviously no such smell. Emoi couldn't help but frown. Being in a miasmatic environment, his magic power was gradually weakening over time. Looking at the situation of Myra and Lysina, due to inhaling poisonous gas for too long, their spirits have begun to wane, and the situation is not optimistic. It seems that we need to use some special means. Otherwise, even if we defeat the tree man, it will probably be too late to take Myra and the others to Granny Porlyusica for treatment. Think of this. Emoi narrowed his eyes slightly, steadied his body slightly, and soon opened his mouth to the maximum, inhaling frantically into his body. With the corresponding activation of the storm dragon crystal, this suction force instantly caused a huge hurricane, and the branches and leaves of the surrounding trees swayed with the wind. And in the hurricane, a little purple breath slowly condensed, and was also sucked into Emoi's body along with the wind breath. Myra Jane immediately understood the intention of Emoi's move. A look of endless panic appeared on his face, and he yelled at the top of his lungs. "Stop it! You don't want your life." Lysina also stared blankly at the scene in front of her. "Brother Emoi, you." Far away. Azuma, who had just been knocked back dozens of meters away by Emoi, also rushed back at this moment, and was stunned in place watching Emoi's performance. In order to save those two women, does he want to absorb the miasma of the entire forest into his body? Just like Azuma said. At this time, Emoi was using all his energy to try to introduce the miasma in the forest into his body. No way. Since joining the guild, Myra's kindness to Emoi has been kept in mind. He didn't want the sisters to be hurt again. I remember that when we faced the gate of Hades, Laxus must have done something like this, absorbed all the magic particles, and he even had sequelae from this. The figure of the blonde young man wearing a black coat slowly emerged in Emoi's mind. And back to reality. Looking at Azuma, who was still shocked, Emoi grinned and inhaled the last breath of miasma poison into his body. A sharp pain suddenly shot through his abdomen, more painful than kidney stones. Emoi casually wiped the sweat on the tip of his nose and thought to himself, "It's a pity, it would be nice if there was a poisonous dragon magic crystal like Cobra. Inhaling so much poisonous gas at once will probably cause a lot of damage to my magic power. I have to kill the tree man before the poison spreads throughout my body." Steel skin. The dragon slaying power was activated, and the dragon scale steel armor was embedded in the skin everywhere on Emoi's body, thereby temporarily slowing the spread of the miasma in the body. Azuma finally changed his dull expression, looked at Emoi with a little more admiration, and said, "You are Emoi, the dragon slayer who knocked Zankro off the cliff before, right? Ever since I heard about your experience, I have always wanted to fight you." Emoi, on the other hand, brewed the violent thunder dragon power in his fists and looked at him coldly. In the past, Emoi would have had a bit of respect for such a war-loving mage who pursued great power. But since Azuma has already heard the two Myra Jane sisters, Emoi just wants to burn his dreams at this moment. When Azuma saw that Emoi was silent and still in a fighting posture, he was not angry. He also activated the strong magic power in his body and said, "There is a Yanyan spring at the deepest end of the Haze Forest. If you can defeat me, you can get rid of the miasma in your body by soaking in the spring water." Emoi licked his dry lips and responded coldly, "I understand." The figure immediately turned into golden lightning and disappeared, and once again mixed with the rapid attack, it rushed directly to Azuma's body. Thunder Dragon's collapse fist. Azuma was on guard and jumped under another big tree beside him, merging his body with it. Boom! The violent thunder and lightning instantly cut off the trees. Of course, this is just Azuma's cover, and his true body has long been hidden in other trees. The deep voice echoed in the forest. "Haha, what a powerful force. You deserve to be one of the top wizards of fairy tale. It's a pleasure to fight with you." As a dragon slayer, Emoi quickly relied on his keen senses to locate the opponent's specific location. At this time, Azuma is half hiding in the giant tree at the 1 o'clock direction, constantly absorbing and dominating the magic power from nature. This is the true power of the Ark of the Lost Magic Tree, rooted in the earth, integrated with nature, and constantly absorbing the power of nature for its own use. Emoi could clearly sense that the magical aura on Azuma's body was several times stronger than before, and was even getting stronger. However, if you convert the power of nature into your magic power so uncontrollably, you will soon suffer backlash, right? Emoi's voice floated through the forest. Azuma responded in a deep voice, "It doesn't matter, I must do my best to fight a powerful magician like you in my lifetime. Take the breath back into your body." Emoi has realized that Azuma is accumulating strength in this way, as if he wants to directly compete with each other in the next attack. It's just a quick victory, and after the fight, you can go to the Yanyan spring to take a bath. Looking around again, among the dense forests, the element that can be used the most here is the wood element. Emoi secretly made up his mind from the bottom of his heart, closed his eyes, and mobilized multiple dragon-slaying crystals at the same time. The most frequently used fire, thunder, wind, and there are the most wood attributes in the forest. As the emerald green fusiform crystal lit up in the consciousness space, 4 magic beams of different colors emerged from the magic circle under him, and Emoi's eyes suddenly opened. Pour all the magic power in the direction of Azuma. The secret of dragon destruction, Dragon K Wangxiang. The power of the wood dragon controls life. With the activation of the dragon-slaying mystery, the natural magic power that had been flowing into Azuma's body suddenly changed direction and gathered on Emoi. Behind Emoi, the projection of a green giant dragon with angry eyes appeared, and its aura was particularly terrifying. In the deep forest, Azuma's figure finally reappeared, already aware of the majestic offensive accumulated by Emoi. This next blow, regardless of victory or defeat, may be my last battle. But I will have no regrets if I lose my life in this kind of battle. There was no fear on Azuma's face, and there was even infinite fighting spirit in his eyes, and the magic power he had absorbed for a long time also burst out. The earth roars. As his arms penetrated the ground, the surrounding ground began to shake suddenly, and dozens of thick wooden vines broke through the cracks. It surrounds Emoi and the dragon projection behind him, like a cage. Under Azuma's control, they swarmed forward, instantly causing a violent roar. Emoi. The airwave generated by the explosion directly knocked the weak Myra Jane back a few points, her beautiful eyes filled with worry. Emoi's figure has been completely engulfed, making it impossible to see clearly what's going on. The next moment, Azuma drained the last ray of magic power from his body and devoted it all to the final blow to suppress Emoi. But within the originally intertwined and solid wooden vines, there are faint fluctuations of magic power, even giving people the illusion that they can be broken through at any time. Boom! A majestic aura suddenly rose inside the wooden vine prison, and the light rose, directly swallowing all the broken wooden vine branches. In the center of the light, Emoi has already accumulated the secret of dragon slaying. As the magic power is finally released, the dragon projection rushes forward, but Azuma has drained all his magic power and is unable to resist anymore. Under the gaze of multiple pairs of eyes, the four dragons' magic wave beams were powerful enough to pierce Azuma's chest. Is it over? Azuma had a smile on his face, and his body fell weakly like an old tree. At the same time, the branches that bound Listener also lost their magic power and withered instantly. It can be pushed open with a little force. Emoi stared ahead quietly without looking away immediately. Perhaps it was due to excessive use of the arc of the big tree to root into the ground and absorb magic power during his lifetime. Plant sprouts appeared on Azuma's body at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the skin slowly merged with the ground, gradually losing its original appearance. Like the last fallen leaf swept by the autumn wind, Azuma lay quietly in the embrace of the earth, with no regrets, and life returned to nature. Emoi then breathed a sigh of relief, and the steel scales and armor on his body gradually faded away. Just turned his head. Myra Jane and Listener quickly walked up to him and immediately took off their shirts without saying anything. Emoi subconsciously pulled his hand to block them. Hey, if you do this again, will I call you indecent? Myra Jane looked anxious. Take off your clothes quickly. Inhaling so much poisonous gas may have started to spread in your body. Yeah. Emoi had just been immersed in the battle with Azuma, and after Myra Jane reminded him, Emoi felt the severe pain in his stomach strike again. Take off your shirt. The situation shocked Emoi himself. Affected by the miasma, a large area of the body from the chest to the abdomen has turned into a strange purple. The purple area is like a stubborn devil. At this time, it is still extending tiny cracks around it, crazily eating away at the still intact skin on the body. Emoi scratched his head in shame. It seems that I was a little impulsive just now. I didn't pay attention and actually sucked in so much. Listener stretched out her arm tremblingly and gently touched Emoi's poisoned skin. After all, Emoi was inspired by his own amulet to rescue them. Unexpectedly, the sisters were safe, but Emoi suffered a lot. Listener's beautiful eyes showed distress and guilt, and she whispered, I'm sorry, brother Emoi. Emoi said helplessly, don't worry, I'm destined to die. Besides, didn't the tree man say that as long as you soak your body in the Yanyan spring, the miasma will be eliminated immediately? Myra Jane seemed to suddenly remember something, and quickly took out the order form for their trip from her backpack. The terrain of the Haze Forest is painted on the back, and the deepest position indicates the location of the Yanyan spring. As if seeing a glimmer of light in the darkness, Myra Jane immediately put Emoi's right arm on her shoulder and whispered, we're going to Yanyankan now. If you hold on a little longer, don't fall asleep. Emoi suddenly became even more speechless. No, that's what you said. Why do you feel like I'm about to die? Apart from pain and weakened magic power, Emoi really didn't feel any other abnormalities in his body at this time. But he is a dragon mage after all. No matter how lacking in magic power he can just pull some tree bark and eat wine to replenish it. Emoi was about to say that she didn't need to be so aggressive, but Listener next to her was very cooperative and stubbornly raised her left arm. The two sisters helped themselves forward, one on the left and the other on the right. It's quite comfortable to be taken care of by these sisters. Walking is effortless. Emoi's eyes rolled slightly, and he suddenly had evil intentions. Didn't go far. Yawn. Emoi's upper and lower eyelids began to fight, and he said feebly, Mila, I feel a little sleepy, let's sleep for a while. Call me when you get there. Myra Jane and Listener immediately panicked. For people who are highly poisonous, once they fall asleep, wouldn't it be difficult to wake up again? Listener immediately shook Emoi's arm desperately and shouted anxiously, Brother Emoi, you must not sleep. Chat with me quickly and stay awake. The sound reaches my ears. Emoi narrowed his eyes with difficulty and looked at Listener. But before Listener could be happy, the next second, Emoi's head actually dropped. Of course, this is pretending. Myra. Hearing Emoi's hoarse call, Myra Jane immediately put her ear towards it. I'm listening, you said. Emoi was still half dead and said intermittently, Myra, I seemed to see a bunch of villains passing in front of me, lining up to jump down. Where is the villain? Before Myra Jane could ask clearly, Emoi suddenly coughed violently and then said, I seem to have seen my uncle again. Uncle? Aren't you an orphan? Uncle said to me, said. What did he say? He said what you love is your life. Myra Jane didn't understand what these words meant, so she thought he was too poisoned and had started talking nonsense. After Emoi finished speaking, his head dropped weakly again, as if he had fainted, and his breath was like a thread. Wake up, Emoi. Can't sleep. Myra Jane suddenly became even more panicked, and quickly stopped and asked Listener to lay Emoi down on the ground. He immediately leaned down and rubbed Emoi's face, trying to wake him up. Emoi, can you hear me? Get up and look at me. But after all, no one can wake up a person who is pretending to sleep. Myra Jane became more and more anxious, and out of desperation, she pinched Emoi's thigh directly. Ouch! Emoi immediately let out a scream of pain, and his upper body almost bounced off the ground. The instant pain caused by that blow just now is not even much lighter than the miasma. This beauty looks gentle, but she is really cruel when she strikes. Sober now. Emoi glanced at Myra Jane resentfully, and was about to say something. However, Marajana's eyes were full of worry, and she actually stepped forward and hugged Emoi's head into her warm and soft arms. Promise me you won't let me worry anymore, okay? Speaking of which, Emoi was really embarrassed to pretend to be dead to tease them anymore, so he could only nod it obediently. With the deepening of the Haze Forest, following the direction indicated on the order form, at the end of the green sea, I finally saw a gurgling clear spring. Pure and light magic flow emerges from it. For a magician, even if there are no toxins on his body, just taking a dip in it can calm his mind. Listener's eyes immediately showed a bit of hope and joy, and said, Brother Emoi, why don't you go in and give it a try? Good. Emoi took off his shirt directly. Compared with just now, the color of the poisoned purple area on the body has deepened a bit again. Looking from a distance, it looks as terrifying as being possessed by a devil. Emoi slowly stepped into the hot spring pool, closed his eyes lightly, and the clear water instantly enveloped his whole body, and he immediately felt a more severe pain in his chest and abdomen than before. However, the pain at this time is different from the previous torture. This feeling is like scraping, removing the toxins from the body bit by bit. Painful and happy. Cool? It wasn't until the pain subsided that Emoi noticed Myra Jane and Listener on the shore, still looking at him eagerly. Being stared at by two little girls like this, Emoi couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed and asked casually, do you want to come together? No, no need. The two sisters waved their hands in unison and refused, as if they had a clear understanding of each other. It's not because of shyness or anything. But seeing that Emoi was too poisoned, he was worried that even the Yanyan spring could not heal him, so he chose to give as much spring water to Emoi as possible. They didn't inhale much poisonous gas, even though they seemed to have some difficulty in the battle before. However, after Emoi took action to create a non-toxic environment, the magic power in their bodies began to slowly recover, resisting the miasma bit by bit and eliminating them from the body. That's okay. Seeing that their faces had improved and were no longer as pale as before, Emoi stopped trying to evade. He closed his eyes again and felt the three-way intertwining resistance of the spring water, the miasma, and his own magic power. Thinking gradually jumps into the conscious space. Dark. Emoi is placed in the center, surrounded by 8 spindle-shaped dragon-slaying crystals of different colors, each suspended on one side, exuding a bit of magic. Ever since I used the 4 dragons mystery when I faced Sister Lei for the first time, I always felt that there was a strange energy in my body that started to stir. Are there other sources of magic power in this space? Think of this experience. Inhaling so much miasma poison at one time, there seemed to be no obvious damage except a slight stomachache. The more Emoi thought about it, the more something was wrong. Did I miss something when I activated the Dragon Slayer crystal? Or is there still a poisonous crystal like Cobra in my body? This idea was quickly eliminated by Emoi himself. If there really is any poisonous dragon-slaying crystal, I am afraid that the poison will be directly converted into one's own magic power the moment it is inhaled into the body. Naturally, there is no need to go to such trouble and soak the body in spring water to detoxify. Try to activate the magic first. Looking across the Dragon Slayer crystal, Emoi gradually released the power he controlled one by one, seeking the magic resonance in the consciousness space. As the 8-fold magic power is activated from the crystal, the beams converged, displaying their youthfulness in the air, hovering and then rushing straight ahead. Over there. Emoi was immediately overjoyed and ran quickly towards the beam. But before they had gone far, the originally brilliant magic light wave suddenly seemed to hit something and disappeared without a trace the moment it came into contact with it. The space of consciousness once again fell into darkness. Emoi's pupils shrank, and the flames rekindled in his palms, illuminating the road ahead. Through the firelight, I could see the situation in front of me clearly. At eye level with his own eyes, there was also a fusiform crystal floating in the air. The beam of 8-fold magic just now was completely swallowed up by it. Emoi stared at the crystal blankly. Even under firelight, the crystal is still completely black, unable to transmit a trace of light. Is this the thing that absorbed all my magic power? In order to verify the conjecture, Emoi reactivated the magic power in his body. The original 8 crystals in the dark space were mobilized by it, flying past from a distance and hovering above the dark crystal. As the eightfold magic power erupted again, light beams were transmitted straight through the crystal from different directions, shining on the surface of the dark crystal almost simultaneously. Emoi stared intently at the black crystal's reaction, but still didn't release any force in his hand. Time passed by minute, but there was no movement on this black crystal. Even if the 8 levels of dragon-slaying power were instilled into it, it would still be like a smelly and hard toilet stone, not getting any response at all. Emoi couldn't help scratching his head in surprise. What the hell is this? It's basically certain that part of the miasma poison was absorbed by it, so it won't kill me. But why can't I feel any resonance even though I poured so much magic into it? And at the time of doubt, Marajana's anxious call suddenly sounded in his ears again. Emoi, can you hear me? Consciousness returns to reality. Emoi slowly opened his eyes, and then saw Myra Jane and Lysina with worried faces, still standing on the shore. What's wrong, Myra? Faced with the question, Mirage just pointed to the spring water where he was soaking. Emoi then looked down. The originally crystal clear Yunyan spring was now completely dyed purple, with a whole layer of miasmatic mist covering it. What the hell? What the hell? Emoi jumped out of the spring immediately. Although the purple toxin on the body has been alleviated and the color has become lighter, the area has not decreased. Emoi couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, "It seems that the poisoning is too deep, even this spring water can't save me." And for fear that the two sisters could not control their emotions, Emoi quickly added, "Don't worry, I will definitely not die. When we get out of this forest, we will go directly to Granny Porlyusica. She will definitely have a way." Granny Porlyusica has been a friend of the president for many years. Despite her eccentric personality, everyone in Fairy Tale has always tried their best to help treat her, and everyone in the guild also respects her. Myra Jane nodded slightly. He took the coat from Lysina. Emoi was about to put it on his body, but his arm suddenly stopped in midair, and the corners of his mouth gradually revealed a curve. "Brother Emoi, what's wrong? There is a familiar smell, it seems to be some of my old friends. Just wait there for a while. It just so happens that I have the opportunity to introduce them to you. Then what to do with your injury?" Emoi smiled lightly and responded, "It's even better to talk about miasma poison. Among these friends, one of them happens to be a master of poison." As the other party's aura got closer and closer, Myra Jane and Lysina also began to sense it. It wasn't until a pair of hands pushed aside the leaves of the bush that the old friend in Emoi's mouth finally appeared. And when Myra Jane saw the 5 of them, she suddenly became speechless. 6 demon generals. Although Myra Jane did not personally participate in the original confrontation between the guild coalition and the 6 demon generals, it can be seen that she is well informed and can still identify at a glance that the people in front of her are the wanted criminals on the run in the kingdom of Fiori. The 6 demon generals Cobra, Angel, Otai, Lisa, Midnight, except for Brian who was killed in the beginning, they are all here. Cobra, the leader of the 5, could not help but frown, glanced at Emoi, and teased, "Yo, you are so beautiful, Mr. President. When you come out to do a commission, you have to bring 2 beauties with you." Myra Jane and Lysina both widened their eyes and said in disbelief, "President." When Emoi heard this, he walked straight forward and stood between the 2 parties, and immediately introduced to Myra Jane and the others. Ahem. The 6 demon generals have been destroyed. Now, they belong to an independent guild called Witch's Sin, and I am the president. It's a long story. In short, I was the one who brought them out of prison. Now they have changed their ways and are busy annihilating the Dark Guild every day. The look of shock echoed in their eyes again. Emoi immediately turned around and asked Cobra, "By the way, why are you here?" Cobra said, "I heard that there is a guy in the Devil's Heart who is one of the 7 descendants of Purgatory practicing alone here, so we wanted to take the opportunity to mess with him. I just didn't expect you to move so fast. I heard the sound of you killing him as early as the outskirts of the forest." Emoi smiled and punched Cobra on the shoulder. Since the establishment of the Witch's Sin Guild, he has never contacted these 5 people, and occasionally worries about whether they have really changed. But now the answer has apparently been obtained. Under the leadership of Cobra, this group of people has already embarked on the road to annihilate the Dark Guild. Cobra paused and suddenly asked, "By the way, I quietly went to Magnolia some time ago. I have heard about Kana. How is she lately?" Emoi replied casually, "Kana, except for being a little fatter, everything else is fine. I can see that you fed her very diligently before." Cobra was immediately angry. "Hundan, don't think that because you are the president, I won't dare to hit you." After simple greetings, Cobra then made a disgusted expression and reluctantly said, "No need to cover up. I saw you were poisoned by the miasma when we first met. Lie down and take off your clothes. What a troublesome guy. If you die, who can I count on to help me restore my innocence?" Emoi rolled his eyes and did as he was told. Although Cobra's mouth was unforgiving, his body was still very honest, and he concentrated on activating the poisonous Dragon Slayer crystal in his body. Take advantage of this opportunity. Angel sneaked up to Myra Jane, pushed her gently with his elbow, and said with a wicked smile, "Hey, do you think they will kiss each other directly later?" Myra Jane suddenly blushed and whispered, Can this be said?" As Cobra placed his palms on Emoi's chest and abdomen. As the magic power circulates, the purple toxin on the skin instantly begins to dissipate at a speed visible to the naked eye, flowing along the arm and into Cobra's body. The pain is greatly relieved. After only half a minute, the poisoned skin returned to normal. Okay, Cobra said expressionlessly. Emoi stood up gently and twisted his body. He felt much more relaxed. He couldn't help but give a thumbs up and praised sincerely. A wonderful rejuvenation, Dr. K. Cut. Cobra curled his lips disdainfully and said, I'm just helping you remove the existing poisonous gas. As for whether there will be any sequelae, that's not up to me. Emoi smiled lightly and said, okay, let's go find Granny Porlyusica to solve the rest. But you guys, be careful not to be caught by the council one day. I won't go fishing for you. You don't need to fish it out. Cobra rolled his eyes at him, and then asked, by the way, I still don't understand why our guild is called Witch's Sin? Who is the witch? Emoi scratched his head and couldn't help but think of Urutaya, the tearful sister. Although Arusha is still in the devil's heart, she has longed for freedom in her heart and is waiting for the opportunity to escape. The Witch's Sin is naturally named after her experience. Now, it's better to wait. Although we have met with Demon Heart, after all, their 7 descendants of Purgatory only lost 2 people, Zangkro and Azuma. Besides, we are in the light and they are in the dark. Wait until the day when the Devil's Heart is completely eliminated, and then arrange for Sister Lei to go find Cobra and the others. Thinking of this, Emoi failed again like he did that night. You will know later. Cobra cursed and turned around. He waved to the remaining 4 people of Witch's Sin and told them to leave. Except for Cobra himself, the other 4 people formally said goodbye, President, to Emoi. They still look forward to the fact that this seemingly unreliable president can really lead them back to freedom one day. Looking at the backs of several people leaving, Emoi smiled and turned his head to look at Myra Jane and Lysina beside him again. Let's go to Granny Porlyusica's place too. Go back a few decades. At that time, 6 magicians in their prime formed a team and were in their prime, but now they have changed. These people include Makarov, the current president of Fairy Tail, Bob, the current president of Cyan Pegasus. The 4-headed hounds are the current president Goldmine, the former member of the Senate Azuma, and Porlyusica who chose to live in seclusion and not care about the world. As for the last person among the 6, it was Rob who sacrificed his life to protect the young Urza at the Tower of Paradise. After the Paradise Tower was completely destroyed, Emoi returned alone once as a tribute and gratitude to Grandpa Rob. At this moment, Emoi is going to visit the only female member of Makarov's team, Granny Porlyusica. After holding the hands of the 2 sisters and flying for a long time, Emoi finally folded the wings of the storm dragon and stopped in front of a forest cabin. Myra Jane walked forward slowly and knocked on the door gently. Who? The old woman's voice came from inside the house. It's me, mother-in-law. Myra Jane from Fairy Tail. The kid from Fairy Tail. Crunch. The door opened. What came into view was an old lady wearing a red robe decorated with dragon teeth, which was exactly the same as the one Emoi had seen Sister Lei pretending to be before. Granny Porlyusica said straight to the point, what do you want from me? Myra Jane replied, that's right, we inhaled some miasma poison over there in the Haze Forest, and the Yanyan spring has been polluted, so we can only come to you. Granny Porlyusica's face became increasingly ugly. That old guy Makarov is really asking you to carry out such dangerous tasks every day. You all come in. If the miasma is not cleared away, it will easily lead to the sequelae of weakened magic power. Emoi smiled and saluted her deeply. Thank you so much, mother-in-law. Granny Porlyusica waved her hand casually, pushed the wooden door open as wide as possible, and turned sideways to make way for the 3 of them. Just walked into the room. The strong medicinal fragrance poured into the nose. Emoi sat quietly in the living room, waiting for Granny Porlyusica in the inner room next to her to check Myra Jane and Lysina. After a while, when the door was opened, Emoi immediately stood up and asked, mother-in-law, how are they doing? Fortunately, although they have not undergone any detoxification treatment, the poisonous gas they inhaled is not much after all. They can rest here for a few days and they will be fine. Emoi breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this. But Granny Porlyusica then glared at him and her tone became sharp. I heard from those 2 little girls that you directly attracted the miasma of the entire forest into your body? Are you really not afraid of death? Emoi shrugged and smiled helplessly, non-committal. I can't help it. I was still more afraid of them both dying in that situation. Granny Porlyusica waved her hands impatiently and then said, okay, come with me. Your situation is probably much more serious. Even if you ask a poisonous dragon slayer to remove it, it will be useless. The miasma will remain directly in your magic power. Emoi was stunned. He didn't expect this. Originally, after Cobra sucked away the miasma poison, he didn't feel any discomfort, so he thought he was almost healed. I didn't expect it to be quite troublesome. This time I came to the right place. Following Porlyusica into the inner room, Myra Jane and Lysina had already put on their clothes neatly and cast worried glances. As Emoi took off all his clothes, Porlyusica's dry palms passed across his skin and examined him carefully. For a long time, Porlyusica sighed and said solemnly, you have ingested too much miasma poison, and it has begun to invade your whole body's magic power. Ah, Emoi said in surprise. You don't need to be excited. Since you are a dragon slayer, the most important thing you need is magic power, so you only realize it later. If you don't treat it as soon as possible, it will definitely be a huge hidden danger. Porlyusica explained word for word. Well, okay, then just listen to my mother-in-law. Emoi did not hide his illness or avoid medical treatment. Even though the S-class mage examination and the devil's heart attack are just around the corner, after all, the body is the capital of revolution. It's better to deal with your own situation first. Just when Emoi thought the examination was over and was about to get up, Porlyusica gently shook her head and motioned for him to lie down again. The fingertips with healing magic touch the skin of Emoi's chest and abdomen again, and the fatigue in the muscles is immediately relieved. Emoi was about to close his eyes and enjoy it, but Porlyusica's fingers suddenly shrank back as if they were electrocuted. Myra Jane and the two next to them were also startled. Mother-in-law, what's wrong? Granny Porlyusica panted heavily, her pupils filled with disbelief, and asked Emoi in surprise. Besides the Dragon Slayer crystal, is there anything more terrifying hidden in your body? This. Looking at the worried eyes of the three people, Emoi smiled bitterly and told all about the dark crystal he saw in the consciousness space. This is probably what happened. Mother-in-law, I think the thing you are talking about is that strange crystal that can absorb all magic power. But the strange thing is that although it has the same shape as the other 8 dragon-slaying crystals in my body, I can't feel the magic resonance on it at all. It's as if this thing doesn't belong to me. Porlyusica sighed after hearing this, and then slowly told the truth. This is indeed a dragon-slaying crystal, but it is of a very special type. Ordinary dragon-slaying crystals are generally made from the heart of a dragon, and contain the most essence of dragon-slaying attributes. As for the last dark crystal in your body, I suspect that it may be made from other body parts of the dragon, probably the head. Emoi couldn't help but ask, Mother-in-law, is there any difference between the crystals made of the heart and the head? Porlyusica's face became more serious and she said, we can't draw a direct conclusion yet. It's made of dragon heads. Ordinary dragon-slaying crystals can give magicians the ability to use dragon-slaying magic for a long time. But this one of yours consumes all the magic power in the crystal at once, greatly increasing your magic power in a short period of time, and fully controlling the power of the dragon during its lifetime, and even transforming into a dragon for a short time. The words fell. Emoi finally realized it. No wonder I couldn't feel its resonance every time I fought before. It turned out to be just a one-time consumable. It's gone when it's used up. But judging from the previous performance in the consciousness space, the dark crystal can silently absorb all the other 8 levels of magic. This black dragon must have been a very powerful dragon before it was alive. Doesn't this mean that if you encounter a strong enemy that is difficult to deal with in the future, you will have an additional life-saving equipment? You can switch forms at any time and directly fight back? Just when Emoi was feeling complacent, Granny Porlyusica poured a basin of cold water on her. Don't be too happy yet. The power of the dark crystal is too violent. You must not use it now. Huh? Why? Porlyusica then explained, the power of this dragon during its lifetime was too great. Once the crystal is activated, your body may not be able to withstand the magic power at all. If you die by explosion, even the gods can't save you. Okay. Emoi could only agree reluctantly. It's getting late. After Porlyusica warned Emoi again, she said, you all stay here today. Later I will ask the mechanical bird to send a message to Makarov and tell him about your situation. Emoi was about to express his thanks, but Porlyusica waved her hand impatiently and walked out of the room. Emoi and Mirajlasana looked at each other with helplessness in their eyes. There's nothing I can do about it. This arrogant old lady has this kind of character. He keeps saying that he hates everyone and refuses all interactions, but he still cares about each of them. Midnight. Lying on the bed, Myra Jane tossed and turned and still couldn't sleep well. Taking advantage of the moonlight to look at Lysina, who was lying next to her pillow and breathing evenly, Myra Jane sighed briefly and stood up gently. Sister Myra, where are you going? As soon as her body sat up, Lysina's light voice immediately sounded. Myra Jane turned her head, covered Lysina with the quilt again, and asked softly, are you still asleep? It's so late, where do you want to go? No, nothing. I can't sleep and go for a walk. Lysina's eyes flashed with a hint of cunning. She sat up directly and said expectantly, before going to bed, I saw Brother Emoi going out. He probably hasn't come back yet. Are you going to find him? Seeing the purpose was revealed, Myra Jane suddenly felt at a loss. I don't know whether I should go out or lie back down at this moment. Lysina thought for a while, then suddenly stretched out her arms to hug Myra Jane, lay down in her ear and whispered, Sister Myra, actually, it's okay to let Brother Emoi be my brother-in-law? In this way, we will be a family in the future. Mirajana's face suddenly turned red, feeling embarrassed and annoyed. I never thought that Lysina would say such bold words. Smelly girl, what nonsense are you talking about? Shaking a corner of the quilt, Myra Jane pretended to be angry and ran out of the room quickly. Lysina lay back down again, wrapped in the quilt and snickered. Sister Myra is really, she obviously likes her, but she just keeps it in her heart and refuses to say it. Ugh. Field. Starry sky. On the edge of the cliff not far from the cabin, Emoi sat cross-legged on the grass alone, letting the breeze blow by, and quietly watching the distance. Both Zankro and Azuma are dead. Now, apart from President Hades, there are still 5 members of the 7 families of Purgatory and 1 vice president in the Demon Heart. But their whereabouts are too strange. Sister Lei has not conveyed any news to me for so long. It is probably impossible to take the initiative to attack. Thinking of this, Emoi couldn't help clenching his fists again. If the entire combat power of the guild is included, it is more than enough to destroy the devil's heart. But what he is most worried about is not the opponent's strongest combat power, President Hades. But once the powerful dragon-slaying magic is used, it is likely to attract that extremely terrifying guy, Acnologia. Perhaps, we need to find a way to deal with President Hades in the near future using other means, and we must avoid using dragon-slaying magic. But for a while, Emoi really didn't have a pig. Lying on the grass. After thinking to no avail, Emoi's spirit jumped into the consciousness space again. In addition to the 8 original crystals in front of him, there is also a pitch-black crystal, the edge of which can be vaguely revealed under the surrounding light. Emoi rubbed his chin and thought, dark crystal, black dragon. Speaking of which, Acnologia is also called the black dragon. Is there any relationship between these two black dragons? Maybe they are brothers? Or, couldn't the one inside me be Acnologia? This is too nonsense. And when I was thinking wildly, Emoi suddenly felt a familiar breath nearby, and his consciousness returned to reality. Not far behind him, a beautiful figure was slowly walking towards him. Myra. Under the bright moonlight, Miragina's delicate cheeks looked even more beautiful, like a moon fairy, and noticed Emoi's gaze. Myra Jane unknowingly quickened her pace again and quickly came to him, smiling shyly. Why don't you go back so late? Emoi smiled and said jokingly, you haven't had any rest yet? Come out and enjoy the moon. That's not the case. I'm here specifically to find you. Emoi was stunned. This time, this occasion, her unnatural expression. Wait, doesn't she want to confess? Under Emoi's confused gaze, Myra Jane pondered for a moment, and then slowly said, Emoi, from the time in Gluck village to this time when you saved Lysina and me in the Haze Forest. Without you, we might not have been able to come out alive this time. I really don't know how to thank you. Emoi waved his hand and replied casually, hey, it's nothing. We are all partners of the guild. And you also help me a lot when I receive commissions in the guild. You often treat me to cakes. Myra Jane bit her red lips lightly, and made a vague response from her throat. Emoi raised his eyebrows. He sat directly on the grass and asked tentatively, is there anything else you want to say? Myra Jane hesitated to speak, and finally plucked up the courage to say, can you sing a song to me? Emoi couldn't help but rolled his eyes. The atmosphere has reached this point. I thought I was going to confess. Singing? This is too difficult for you. Others cost money to sing, but singing costs me my life. But when he saw Myra Jane sitting next to him, his arms wrapped around his legs, his eyes were filled with anticipation. Emoi sighed silently in his heart and turned his gaze to the night sky. A song that had been buried deep in his mind suddenly gradually emerged. Emoi sang softly. The dark sky hangs low, accompanied by bright stars. Kongerfei, who are you missing? The stars in the sky weep, the roses on the earth wither dash. The cold wind blows, as long as I have you by my side. Myra Jane listened quietly, with a satisfied smile on her face, but a sense of loss and sadness in her heart. After all, I still don't have the courage to express my feelings. Myra Jane comforted herself and said, just wait, sooner or later he will know. The next morning, just had breakfast. A burst of hurried footsteps came from the forest. It was Makarov and Wendy. In yesterday's letter, Porlyusica directly scolded Makarov and told all about Emoi's serious situation. The old man was so anxious that he didn't even eat in the morning, so he hurried over with Wendy, who was good at using healing magic. Outside the house, he happened to meet Myra Jane and Lysina, who were about to leave. Makarov hurriedly stopped them and asked straight to the point, have you met the person with the devil's heart? Are you okay? Where is that boy Emoi? Myra Jane said softly, the degree of Emoi's poisoning is more serious than ours. Granny Porlyusica insists on keeping him here to recuperate for a while. Originally, Mirage planned to stay and take care of Emoi. However, according to Porlyusica's opinion, it is better to let Emoi stay here alone to rest during this period. She and Lysina were about to leave. Walk slowly. Makarov hurriedly waved to them, pulled up Wendy, and kicked open the wooden door of Porlyusica's house. Emoi's name hasn't been spoken yet. A broom flew directly over and hit Makarov hard on the head. Makarov's vision went dark, and Porlyusica's angry voice sounded in his ears. This is my home. Don't kick the door. Makarov curled his lips, put the broom aside, and asked, where is Emoi? Where did you take him? Porlyusica said angrily, he just drank the decoction and is still running magic power in the room to fight against the toxins that are difficult to remove from the body. Please restrain yourself. Makarov was still worried. Until you get closer. Through the window, he saw Emoi sitting cross-legged in the inner room, with the magical aura surrounding him, and then he put his heart back into his stomach. I asked you, as a parent, can you take some responsibility? If he hadn't been lucky enough to meet a dragon slayer wizard with a poison attribute, he might have died before he could have persisted here. Faced with Porlyusica's accusation, Makarov was speechless. To be honest, when Myra Jane and Lysina accepted the commission, he paid special attention to them. There is almost no danger if you make sure. Besides, Myra Jane is still an S-class mage, and the mission is just a B-class request. But they never expected that they would meet someone from the Dark Guild's demonic heart. If Lysina hadn't used the amulet to ask Emoi for help in time, the consequences would have been disastrous. While the two were arguing, a familiar voice suddenly came from the room. I can't blame the president for this. I was also hot-headed at the time, so I sucked in all the miasma poison. 3 pairs of eyes looked at each other. Emoi stood at the door, looking at them with a smile. On his body, the magic aura was strengthened again, which was obviously due to the resistance to the miasma. A drop of muddy old tears fell from the corner of Makarov's eyes, and his voice trembled. Are you already okay? Emoi spread his hands and said, maybe my physical fitness is good. Coupled with Granny Porlyusica's treatment, I feel that most of the miasma should be forced out. That's good, that's good. Porlyusica snorted with a straight face, I don't think you can recover so quickly. It's best to lie down for a few more days. Emoi smiled helplessly and walked forward slowly. He had already noticed Wendy who was here with him, and gently put his palm on her little head and stroked her. Wendy is here too, thank you for your concern. Wendy lowered her head in embarrassment. No, it's okay. Didn't Carla come with you? No, the president was very anxious at the time. Before I could call Carla, he pulled me over. Okay. Emoi finished speaking. Only then did Wendy turn her attention to Porlyusica. Even though it was the first time we met. From the moment she entered the house, the Dragon Slayer mage's keen sense of smell told her that the old lady in front of her was no ordinary person. Grandma Porlyusica. I smell a particularly kind scent on you. It seems to be the mother who raised me, Tianlong Grandin. Porlyusica stared at Wendy for a few seconds, and a rare kind smile appeared on her face. I wonder if you have heard of the story about Edela's, another world. Wendy was startled and nodded repeatedly. That's a parallel world. Almost everyone here can correspond to that one-to-one. When Emoi returned from Edela's previously, he had told everyone in the guild all the stories about that place. Wendy remembered it clearly. Porlyusica then said, the reason why you smell a similar smell on me is, I am the heavenly dragon Grandin in the world of Edela's. However, I am just an ordinary human being. Is that so? There was a trace of frustration in Wendy's big watery eyes, but she still held on to the last glimmer of hope and asked, Mother-in-law, do you know any clues about Grandin? I haven't seen her for a long time. Porlyusica shook her head slightly. Seeing that the clues about the dragon were lost again, Wendy lowered her head sadly and remained silent. But Porlyusica immediately changed the subject, took down 2 magic scrolls from the top of the bookshelf beside her, and handed them to Wendy. Many years ago, after I came to this world, the dragon who raised you came to me personally and left these 2 dragon-slaying secrets. She told me at that time that due to some reasons, she could no longer teach you these magics in person, so she could only ask me to pass them on to you. Accept it, Wendy. He took the 2 scrolls with both hands. Wendy's eyes were filled with excitement again, and she bowed deeply to Porlyusica. Thank you, mother-in-law. Porlyusica waved her hands nonchalantly and glanced at Makarov, who was also happy for Wendy. Wendy and Emoi will stay with me during this period. You can leave. Makarov looked confused and pointed his index finger at himself in disbelief. I just came and you asked me to leave? Then why are you so anxious to let me come? Porlyusica became angry when she saw this bad old man, and snorted coldly. I can't protect the children in my own guild well. Even asking you to run away is an understatement. Get out quickly. Makarov looked pitiful, and Emoi originally wanted to beg for mercy on his behalf. However, after being gouged out by Granny Porlyusica, she finally stood aside silently and watched the president being blasted out with a broom. Broomsticks greeted Makarov on the Mediterranean Sea. It wasn't until he was some distance away from the hut that Makarov grabbed him dissatisfied and shouted, Okay, it's far enough. Didn't you kick me out because you had something to say to me? After decades of tacit understanding, Makarov could indeed see through her thoughts at a glance. Porlyusica looked back, sighed, put the broom aside, and asked, where did Emoi get so many dragon-slaying crystals in his body? Makarov scratched his head. I asked him about it, and he said it was born with it. Natural. Porlyusica looked surprised and continued. About the dark crystal in Emoi's body, I hid part of it from him. Makarov was startled. Hide it? Is there something wrong with that crystal? Porlyusica paused and said slowly, because I come from another world, Edela's, and I am naturally sensitive to everything about Aslant. But when I checked Emoi, I found some strange fluctuations. I clearly feel that the dragon corresponding to the dark crystal during his lifetime is definitely not Aslant, nor Edela's, but more like a dragon from other worlds. Makarov seemed to understand. What do you mean? What do I need to pay attention to? Porlyusica looked solemn. Not only is the origin of the dark crystal unknown, the magic power contained in it is also extremely terrifying. At least it is not weaker than the ultimate magic weapon of the council that can destroy the world, and it is even much stronger. After you go back, you must take good care of Emoi. You must not let him use this magic power. Otherwise, I suspect it will probably attract the attention of some powerful beings that we can't imagine. Over the years, Makarov had not seen Porlyusica so serious for a long time, and immediately nodded. I understand. But there was one thing that apparently both of them overlooked. Emoi has 8 dragon-slaying magic crystals activated in his body, and his 5 senses are extremely sharp, far more than Wendy beside him. Emoi pricked up his ears slightly and eavesdropped on the conversation between the two. Emoi murmured in his heart, is the unimaginably powerful existence talking about the black dragon Acnologia, or does it come from other worlds besides Aslant and Edela's? At the same time, over a certain town, a dark airship sped past. Inside the airship, Hades, the president of Devil's Heart, sat in the center with an indifferent expression, his right eye covered by a dark eye patch. The left eye flashes with a sharp and cold light, like an eagle's eye, which seems to be able to penetrate everything. Even though his beard and hair have turned white and he is over 100 years old, the magical aura on his body has not weakened at all, but is particularly weird and terrifying. Dong dong. There was a knock on the door. Come in. After receiving Hades's permission, Arusha pushed the door open and entered. Before she could speak, Hades frowned and asked, Azuma hasn't come back from practice yet. Arusha looked embarrassed and said, President, Melty and I have already gone to the Haze Forest to search. There was a fierce battle there. Azuma may have. I know. Hades said calmly. An imperceptible light flashed in Arusha's beautiful eyes, and he said tentatively, President, after the three of us failed to assassinate Emoi of Fairy Tale last time, our whereabouts were exposed to a certain extent. Besides, Azuma's death this time is probably related to him. There are only 5 of the 7 families of Purgatory left. Does Fairy Tale's attack plan need to be postponed? Hades raised his head, his tone mixed with undeniable majesty. No need, the plan remains as usual. As for Emoi, I will send Bluenote to assassinate him again in the near future. He will not survive until the day when we officially start war with Fairy Tale. Arusha's heart suddenly tightened. As the vice president of Devil's Heart, Bluenote's strength is even far greater than her own. I don't know if that kid can turn the bad luck this time. No, I have to find an opportunity to inform Fairy Tale of the news of Bluenote's assassination. Although he was already planning how to help Emoi, Arusha still showed respect to Hades on the surface. I am worrying too much, President. Upon hearing this, Hades waved his hand casually, signaling her to leave. In a huge room, only Hades was left alone again. The cold light in his left eye could no longer be concealed at this moment, and the monstrous dark magic burst out instantly. Since this period of time, many affairs have repeatedly encountered difficulties. Although I don't want to believe it, it's hard to deny that there is a traitor in the Devil's Heart. Moreover, this traitor must play a very important role. I will only reveal the news about Bluenote's operation to you, Arusha. If he really kills Emoi, that would be for the best. But if anything happens to him, GG, I just need to control you. With Emoi's character, he will only become my puppet and be at my mercy. I have to admit, Emoi is indeed a young man with very good qualifications. As long as he obeys my orders, it will be easy to annihilate Fairy Tale. A few days later, an open space on the edge of the cliff. Wendy's porcelain doll-like delicate cheeks gradually became firm, her fingers danced gracefully in the air, and the surrounding air began to undergo subtle changes. At first, there was just a faint breeze blowing quietly through the grass, and the grass blades were swaying gently. Gradually, the wind became stronger and stronger, roaring and sweeping over. The strong wind swirled around Wendy and gradually formed a large wind barrier, involving Wendy and Emoi. The secret of dragon slaying, Zhaopo sky penetration. After chanting, the wind barrier suddenly erupted with even more majestic dragon-slaying magic power. It gradually compressed to form 2 huge wind blades, which suddenly slashed towards Emoi with the wave of Wendy's arms. At the same time, Emoi also activated the wind dragon crystal in his body, and the magic power accumulated in his chest and was about to burst out. The roar of the storm dragon. 2 different types of wind magic power collided fiercely and tore at each other, making a particularly harsh sound, and a hurricane suddenly set off on the edge of the mountain cliff. Wendy sucked in the fresh air and continued to increase her magic output, trying to break through the storm spit out by Emoi. However, under the suppression of the strong wind, he became increasingly powerless, and his body's center of gravity began to slowly shift. At the moment when the power of Dragon Slayer mystery was completely dissipated, Emoi gathered his magic power back into his body in time to prevent any harm to Wendy. However, being affected, Wendy still staggered back a few steps and fell onto the grass. Not bad, Wendy. I have made great progress. In just a few days, I have basically mastered the secret of dragon slaying. Emoi walked forward with a smile and praised, stretched out his arm to Wendy and pulled her up. Wendy smiled shyly and stuck out her tongue sheepishly, thanks to Mr. Emoi for helping me practice. Although Emoi has told Wendy many times not to be so polite, she still likes to use honorifics when speaking. It always sounds a little reserved. It's already great. Emoi encouraged. Although I have completed my training by shining through the sky, I have not made any progress on the other volume of Dragon Slayer Mystery Galaxy. Having said this, Wendy's face once again showed a little sadness. The Milky Way. Emoi thought carefully. Yinhe's dragon-slaying secret is quite special. It is not a move used for fighting, but a special secret method, and the method of understanding it is also unusual. But Wendy chose to ask him this question, so she just happened to ask the right person. Wendy, have you noticed that you have been practicing in the battle with me recently to master the ability to penetrate the sky? Wendy nodded. I found it. Emoi paused and explained in a deep voice. Maybe there is a possibility that the other dragon-slaying mystery galaxy is not a combat move. It's like auxiliary magic, like healing magic. Perhaps the Milky Way is also a secret method used for special occasions. Emoi naturally knows that the Milky Way, as an extremely special secret of dragon slaying, deliberately gives the caster the ability to talk to dead souls. However, these still need to be understood by Wendy in practice. Revealing everything in advance might affect Wendy's practice. Wendy nodded in understanding, but still failed to get the point of Emoi, and asked, "Then what should I do next?" "Let's do this. I'll look for commissions in the guild after a while and see if there's anything suitable for you. Then let's try it together. Maybe you'll be able to understand the Milky Way." An excited smile immediately appeared on Wendy's face. "Thank you, Mr. Emoi. I've told you so many times, just call me by my name, no need to be so polite." Count the days. He has been recuperating here for 10 days. With the nourishment of Granny Porlyusica's carefully prepared magic soup, the magic power in his body has long been restored to its original state. It's time to go back to the guild. On the second day, it was just dawn. After saying goodbye to Granny Porlyusica, Emoi took Wendy's little hand and flew all the way back to Acnologia using the wings of the storm dragon, returning to the fairy tale guild after a long absence. After a few days, the door was replaced with a new one. But Emoi can't control this. Bang! As long as Urza, the disciplinary committee member, is not around, the door will always be kicked open. "We are back. You can cast your sight indoors." Only then did Emoi and Wendy realize that the huge guild hall was empty except for Myra Jane and Urza, who were eating breakfast at the counter. The moment she saw Emoi, Mirajana's face immediately showed a bright smile. "Welcome back. You haven't had breakfast yet? The morning cake has just been baked, and I left one for you." When Myra Jane turned and walked into the kitchen, Emoi sat next to Urza. "How are you lately?" Urza smiled sweetly. "It's good. I originally planned to go there to visit you, but I heard from the president that you need to rest, so I didn't go there. It's all minor injuries, it's okay." During the conversation, Myra had already walked out, bringing several plates of freshly baked cream cakes and hot tea in her hands, and handed them to Emoi and Wendy. "Thank you, Myra." Emoi was also not polite. When entering the cake, it still had the familiar shape and taste. Looking across the empty hall again, Emoi asked, "By the way, where has everyone in the guild gone? Why is it so quiet today?" The unnaturalness in Mirajana's eyes disappeared fleetingly, and she chuckled. "There seems to be some event in the town today. The president asked everyone to participate, and everyone left early in the morning." Activity. Emoi took Wendy straight through from Acnologia. Generally speaking, places with guild wizards must be extremely noisy. But today's town was obviously the same as usual, and there were no lively activities. Just when Emoi was about to ask one more question, Myra Jane had already changed the topic and looked at Urza next to her. "Speaking of which, Urza, do you still remember when you wanted to learn cooking from me?" Urza nodded without thinking. "Of course I remember. At that time, I also promised you that as long as you teach me how to cook, I will promise you something you can't refuse." Emoi listened quietly while eating. No wonder Urza cooked so deliciously last time. It turned out to be Myra's true inheritance. Mirajana's eyebrows showed a hint of cunning. "Yeah, I never mentioned that matter. But today, I think it's time to use this opportunity." Urza swallowed the last bite of cake and elegantly picked up the napkin to wipe her mouth. "No problem, Myra. Since I promised you, I will never refuse no matter what you say." Myra Jane smiled and said, "Actually, it's not a big deal. Can you give Emoi to me? Can you give me Emoi?" As soon as these words came out, before Urza could react, Emoi, who was drinking tea next to her, spat it out and looked at Myra Jane in disbelief. How did Myra, who was usually gentle and quiet, say such bold words today? Wendy next to her was also blushing with embarrassment, silently leaning her body into the corner, pretending not to understand. But what Urza said next shocked the two of them even more. "No problem." Emoi turned his head to look at Urza with a question mark on his face. "No? Your house was robbed? How do you accept this apparently NTR thing?" Urza smiled lightly and seemed not to care. "Didn't we make an agreement before? Our relationship is more than just friends but lovers. If you want to be with Myra, of course I won't stop you." That being said, but judging from the experience of Emoi and Urza having been together for so long, he always felt that Urza was a little strange today, and even her smile felt like a fake smile, as if she was a different person. Out of 10 or even 9 out of 10 is wrong. And took advantage of Emoi's hesitation. Myra Jane had already walked out of the front desk, and gently put her jade hands together with Emoi, with a little shyness in her affectionate eyes. "Come with me? Since Urza agrees, you will be mine from now on." Emoi complained feebly. "No, why do I feel like I'm not a human being, but more like an object that you trade back and forth?" Myra Jane pursed her lips slightly, showing a bit of disappointment. "So you don't want to?" Emoi quickly said, "It's not that I don't want to, it's just that this feels too strange, like a FG dream." At this moment, Emoi seriously doubted whether he had drunk too much of Kath's magic potion and was lost in a dream. Myra Jane confessed to her in front of Urza, and then Urza agreed very openly. "What happened today? Is this reasonable?" But the words have already been said. "No way. How about, just follow her?" Myra Jane smiled and took Emoi's hand to walk out of the guild. Before going out, she did not forget to say, "Then let's go on a date now? I'll ask you to cover for me as a waiter at the guild today." "Good." Urza readily agreed immediately. "Receive, Satan's soul." As the magic aura surged from Mirajana's body, the magic circle appeared, and after the light dissipated, it turned into a demonic Satan costume. The two people's hands were still intertwined and pulled together. Mirajana's hands had turned into devil's claws, pinching Emoi painfully. Emoi was puzzled. "Well, didn't you say we were going on a date?" Why did it suddenly become like this? Myra Jane said calmly, in the past, you always took care of me and prevented me from overusing my receiving magic and consuming my magic power. Today, let me take you flying. The words just fell. The wings of the dark demon behind him fluttered in the wind. Myra Jane casually put her arm around Emmoi's shoulders and pulled him into her arms, fluttering her wings and rushing out of the guild gate, heading into the distance. Inside the fairy tale guild. At this time, only Wendy and Urza were left. After a while, Wendy couldn't help but asked, Miss Urza, I still don't understand why you agreed just now. Logically speaking, shouldn't you be very angry? Urza smiled mysteriously, but did not answer directly. Instead, she patted her palms 3 times. Huh. The sound sounded, and Wendy was surprised to sense a powerful magic power coming from the ground. Bang! There was a noise on the floor of the hall, and a deep pit opened directly from the center. Wow, I figured it out. It's so stuffy inside, I'll suffocate if I stay here any longer. It has to be Gildarts. He broke the barrier hiding the magic power underground with one punch. The question is how to fill this hole. Gray, put your clothes on before you talk. In Wendy's stunned eyes, familiar faces from the old guild were noisily jumping out of the pit one by one. Including President Makarov, almost everyone was present. Wendy subconsciously looked at Urza next to her. What is going on? It all started with a secret letter Gray received yesterday. At that time, you and Emoi hadn't come back yet. Urza said as she called Gray, who had already put on his shirt, to her side. Gray took out the envelope from his trouser pocket and handed it to Wendy, explaining seriously. When I arrived at the guild yesterday morning, Myra said that a letter from me had been sent to the guild. At first I was still surprised who would write to me, until I saw the signature, called Yuryutia. She is the daughter of my master Yuaryu. Yuryutia said that she is now in the heart of the Dark Guild demon. She was the one who disguised herself as Granny Porlyusica and deceived Emoi into the Haze Forest to assassinate her. Wendy took the letter and it was exactly what Gray said. Arusha wrote down all the things between her and Emoi in the Haze Forest, and her words were sincere and not like falsehood. Gray then analyzed. At the end of the letter, Arusha also mentioned that today the Devil's Heart will directly send Vice President Bluenote to assassinate Emoi. That is a very scary guy. I think the reason why she didn't send the letter directly to Emoi was because she was worried that the undercover identity would be exposed. Wendy thoughtfully read the letter and handed it back to Gray, so that's it. At this moment, Makarov also stepped forward and continued to add. Yesterday, after Gray received the letter, he immediately came to me to discuss countermeasures. I'm thinking, Emoi has already paid so much for the guild, and besides, he's just recovering from his injury. Let him and Myra go out and relax today. This time, let us protect Emoi. After Makarov finished speaking, he glanced at Urza with a wry smile. Originally, considering the relationship between Urza and Emoi, we planned to let her accompany Emoi, but with her personality, even if she goes out to play, she will probably still be thinking about the battle here, and clues will inevitably show up, so we finally decided to let Myra go. Urza waved her hand indifferently. It doesn't matter, the situation is special after all. As long as it can protect Emoi's safety, I won't mind. Wendy suddenly realized. It turned out that from the moment she and Emoi stepped into the guild gate, they had already fallen into everyone's arrangement. Thinking of this, a trace of courage appeared on Wendy's face. President, let me join this plan. Of course. Makarov smiled heartily, jumped onto the table, and glanced at the high-spirited people one by one. Now, as the president, I officially release today's special task. S-Class Commission, annihilate the enemy and protect Emoi's safety at all costs. The executioner is all members of the Fairy Tale Guild. Gently raising his hand to calm down the enthusiastic crowd, Makarov analyzed in a deep voice. Although I don't know how the assassin Bruno will come, but according to Arusha's speculation in the letter, the final destination must be nothing more than the guild and Emoi's house. In the next time, I will plan the course of action later. Gajeel, Levi, Juvia, Elfman, and the Thunder Gods, please go to the east of the city together. There is a path on the outskirts that leads directly to Emoi's house. Receive. Urza, your team should go to Harujun Port. Maybe Bluenote will land from there. Urza solemnly promised. Understood. I will take Natsu and the others there right away. Makarov nodded and then looked at Gildarts. According to Arusha's description, when it comes to fighting alone, you are the person closest to Bluenote in terms of strength, Gildarts. I will leave it to you to guard the area near Emoi's house. Good. Lark. Makarov's eyes swept through the crowd, and he subconsciously wanted to call out one more person's name, but suddenly realized that he was no longer in the guild. A bit of disappointment flashed through his eyes. Makarov sighed lightly and continued. As for the others, just stay here with me. We have more people and more strength. Even if the other party wants to attack the guild directly, we can still fight. Action. As Makarov's order was issued, the crowd that had just calmed down became enthusiastic again. Although this is a mission that does not comply with the regulations, it is the first S-Class commission that many people have encountered in their lives, not to mention that it was commissioned by President Makarov himself. Everyone has only one goal at this time. Fight against the enemy at all costs and protect Emoi's safety. At the same time, the sky above the outskirts of Magnolia. Myra Jane maintains the form of Satan, soars in the sky with demon wings, and also performs her mission. Take Emoi out of town and return after everything calms down. A long flight. Emoi finally couldn't help but asked, ahem. Myra, you can take me flying if you want, but can you change the position? What's wrong? Are you feeling uncomfortable? That's not, I mean, how can a girl hug a boy like a princess? Even though Myra Jane was very saucy after receiving the magic, she could pick herself up effortlessly. Besides, it was soft and comfortable lying in her arms. But no matter how I think about it, I feel a little awkward. I always feel like a weakling. Myra Jane shook her head slightly. I think this is good. Just relax. Emoi is ashamed. So where do you want to take me? I heard that the nearby town of Axel recently opened an amusement park. Can I take you to see it? Amusement park. I have lived in a small county on the 18th tier since I was a child. Coupled with family reasons, Emoi rarely went to amusement parks in the past. It was not until he grew up that he occasionally went to experience some projects alone. This was his first time going with a girl. I didn't expect there is an amusement park in the Kingdom of Fiori. Let's go there. Thank you, Myra. Seeing Emoi's agreement, a smile appeared on Marajana's face, and she speeded up her flight unconsciously. Axel, a town not far from Magnolia, was bustling with activity. In the popular amusement park, there was an endless stream of people coming and going, with happy smiles on their faces. Myra Jane stopped at the door, then put Emoi down, and then returned to her usual gentle and lovely white-haired angel appearance. Reluctantly, Myra Jane gently let go of the hand holding Emoi's hand, and smiled sweetly. Wait for me here for a while, I'll buy a ticket. 2 couple tickets, thank you. Emoi stared blankly at the scene in front of him, feeling a little lost for a moment. When he was with Urza before, because she had been insecure since she was a child, Emoi was used to taking care of her emotions and taking care of everything for her most of the time. Myra is different. As the eldest sister, she has raised her younger siblings at home since childhood. Even after falling in love, she has taken care of Emoi by default. This kind of girl seems to be very suitable to take home as a wife. Hey, why are you still stunned? Until Myra Jane returned to her side with a smile on her face and took her arm. Emoi finally came to his senses. No, let's go in. The attractions in Magic World are not much different from Emoi's impression. Carousel, roller coaster, Ferris wheel. It's just that it doesn't rely on electricity, but relies on magic power. Emoi was still thinking about which one to play first. A little girl with braids suddenly jumped in front of him, raising her head and smiling at herself. Brother, the sister next to you is so beautiful. Emoi smiled silently and looked at Myra Jane beside him. Marajana's face also had a little blush. The little loli is quite good at talking. However, the two of them had already caught a glimpse of the large bundle of flowers hidden behind the little loli's back, and immediately guessed that she wanted to sell flowers. Emoi is thinking about taking care of her business. Myra Jane had already leaned down and said softly, Kid, can you sell me a bouquet of flowers? Sister, do you want to buy it yourself? Yes, I want to buy it for the big brother next to you. Hearing Marajana's words, the little loli's big eyes were full of disbelief. I have been selling flowers at the playground for a few days. Even though she is a kid, she has already figured out the rules. As long as she finds a young couple to be with and talks sweetly, the boys will usually pay for it. But today, why do we meet 2 people who are against Tiangang? Girls are rushing to pay for it? When Emoi heard this, he also didn't react for a while. Myra, if you like flowers, I will buy them. No, I told you, I bought it for you. Myra Jane shook her head resolutely, and immediately paid the money directly to the little loli, took a large bouquet of flowers from her hand, stood up and handed it to Emoi. Seeing that Emoi was still at a loss, Myra Jane couldn't help covering her mouth and laughed softly. Hurry up and accept it. Isn't it normal for couples to send flowers? Emoi stuck out his tongue, then stretched out his hands stiffly to take it solemnly. His words were a bit mechanical. Thank you, Myra. I like this bouquet of flowers very much. Mileage smiled and took Emoi's arm again. Let's go. Today is our first date. No matter where you want to go or what you want to do, I will accompany you. Other side. Harujun Port. The 5 members of the team were in ambush from morning to afternoon, paying close attention to the tourists on each passenger ship. But still no suspicious signs were found. Natsu rubbed his hungry belly and muttered, Why did we come to the port? Are you sure the people in the Dark Guild will take normal transportation? Urza, on the other hand, was always on alert, her eyes still fixed on the ships that were about to arrive at the port. I heard from the president that assassinating Emoi is only a small part of the Devil's Heart plan. Their real purpose may be to target our entire guild. So before they completely reveal their plan, even if they want to assassinate, they will probably choose some way to hide it from others. Wait a little longer, don't let your guard down. Natsu still looked reluctant and was about to complain, but Gray next to him punched him in the face with a fist. It's about Emoi's life and safety. Please be more serious, you fire-breathing waste. Natsu's emotions were instantly ignited, and he was about to fight back with a punch, but suddenly he smelled a strange smell of magic. He couldn't help but froze in place. Smell carefully again a few times. Urza immediately asked, Natsu, did you find anything? Natsu's eyes had left Gray, and he glanced at the people who had just disembarked from the cruise ship not far away, and said slowly, I felt a very special magic wave among this group of people, which is different from most of the magic we use. Wendy next to her also echoed, I smell it too. This magic seems to have an ancient atmosphere. The expressions of several people suddenly became solemn. Through Iridia's previous secret message, they had learned that all members of the Devil's Heart were good at using lost ancient magic. As the vice president, Bluenote not only has terrifying strength, but also masters a lost magic that can manipulate gravity at will, which is extremely difficult to deal with. Natsu and Wendy's eyes converged on each other, and finally fell on the middle-aged man in a white coat at the end of the team. The middle-aged man has a long braid, and the sideburns of his hair have grown to his cheeks, and he exudes a vague evil aura. Reminiscent of the appearance described in the letter, the physical features correspond to him one-to-one. Several people have confirmed at this moment that the person in front of them is Bluenote, the vice president of the demonic heart who came to assassinate Emoi. Lucy asked slightly nervously, "What should I do? This is a port after all, and it's the peak period. There are too many people coming and going, so it's not convenient to take action. Don't worry so much. I'm on fire." Natsu immediately wiped away his previous depression, and the aura of fire filled with fighting spirit came out. He kicked his feet hard and appeared directly from the back of the alley. He happened to meet Bruno, who was passing by. The two looked at each other, only a dozen steps away. People from Fairy Tale? Has their whereabouts been exposed? Bluenote glanced at the crest on Natsu's right arm and frowned. Natsu grinned, and flames emerged from his fists. "Hey, are you some kind of vice president sent by Devil's Heart? If you want to take action against Fairy Tale's friends, you must have already made up your mind." Fire Dragon's Iron Fist. The dragon-slaying power suddenly erupted, and Natsu raised his fire fist and charged forward, about to attack Bluenote. A sudden pressure suddenly hit him, and Natsu's whole body fell directly to the ground without any warning, causing cracks to form. Hateful. The fight between the two soon caused a commotion in the port. Passers-by shouted that there was a dispute between magicians, and then they fled in panic. Even though Natsu gritted his teeth and used all his strength, he was still unable to lift an inch. Bluenote stepped on Natsu's head and said sarcastically, "I don't know how the plan was leaked, but with rubbish like you, Emoi must not be much better." At this moment, Gray, who was hiding in the dark, could no longer hold back, and his hands formed the power of magic. Ice-style Lancer. Dozens of ice spears suddenly flew past the side of his body. Bruno saw this, but his body remained in place. The next moment, wherever he looked, ice spears fell to the ground and shattered as if they had lost control. Gray's face darkened. Looking into Bruno's cold eyes, he was about to think of other strategies to defeat the enemy. Urza, Lucy, and Wendy no longer hid, and appeared beside him, with 3 magical auras erupting at the same time. Open the door of Taurus. Talos. Change your clothes. Black feather armor. Support magic. Galloping wind. Standing together with his teammates from the same guild, Gray's confidence in fighting suddenly rekindled. "Let Natsu go," Lucy shouted forward. Bluenote smiled solemnly, and as his pupils suddenly shrank, the gravity magic was released again. At this time, the bodies of the 4 Greys, together with the summoned star spirit Talos, fell straight down like Natsu just now, being out of breath by gravity. If it were a pure competition for magic power, a few people together might still be able to fight. But Bluenote is still a mechanical monster. The special nature of magic alone can give you no chance to attack. Natsu was exposed too hastily, and he didn't have time to think about countermeasures in detail. In an instant, he fell into the painful situation of being suppressed by one side. Bluenote suddenly became more aggressive, stomping hard on Natsu, who was under his feet, and looked at him contemptuously. "Boy, let me give you a chance to live. Tell me, where is the shining super magic fairy in your guild? Also, the whereabouts of the dragon slayer named Emoi?" Natsu said decisively, "I don't know." A flash of displeasure flashed across Bruno's face. "In this case, I have to let you suffer some more." As the majestic magic power gathered in Bluenote's hands, Natsu felt more and more suffocated, but still gritted his teeth. Bluenote became even more angry and raised his fist to punch him down. Boom! The originally clear sky suddenly heard the sound of thunder, and Bluenote was stunned subconsciously. Then he saw a golden thunder in the distance running toward him with extremely violent magic power. Bang! Before Bluenote could release the gravity magic again, the golden thunder had already come straight and bombarded him. He no longer cared about Natsu at his feet and retreated instantly. A faint cold voice came from the thunder radiance. "Hello. Kneel down and beg for mercy now. I'm not sure whether I will kill you directly with the next attack." And the other side lost the shackles of gravity magic. Natsu and the others finally stood up and stared blankly at the golden figure who came to support them. The power of thunder and lightning? Emoi. But Emoi has obviously gone to the outside of the town with Myra. This aura is just a single thunder, and it doesn't seem to have 8 attributes of dragon-slaying magic. Wait, could it be Laxus? The town of Axel. The sun shines freely on the colorful playground, and laughter float in the air like beautiful melodies. Emoi and Mirage rode the couple's seat of the roller coaster together. Although both of them had already adapted to flying at high altitudes, they still suppressed their magic power and screamed loudly while holding hands. "Emoi, if you are scared, you can hold my hand." "You're kidding? I don't." After being at the mercy of a roller coaster and a pirate ship, Master Emoi, who was still hard except for his mouth, finally silently accepted the ice cream cone from Myra Jane and got on the merry-go-round. At the same time, Harujun Port. Laxus turned around and looked at Urza and the others. Compared with when he started the civil war, the eyes he looked at his companions at this moment were obviously a little softer. Natsu screamed excitedly, "It's really you. I was just passing by the port and came over to take a look when I heard the movement of magicians. I didn't expect it to be you. Also, Natsu, it's been so long since I last saw you, and your strength doesn't seem to have improved at all." Natsu was so angry that he immediately retorted, "I was just not ready just now. This time, just stand aside and don't move. Let's see how I beat that guy away. Don't underestimate the enemy. His gravity magic is very strong," Lucy reminded from the side. Not far away, Bluenote's eyes became more gloomy. "It's so ridiculous that the ants actually started to resist. When I step on you again later, don't cry and beg me again." Gravity suppression. As Bluenote's pupils narrowed, the surrounding space was once again subject to changes in the gravity field. Although several people had prepared in advance, they were still suppressed and unable to move. Lucy, whose magic power was slightly weaker, had already convulsed. Laxus's face showed a trace of solemnity, and he quickly shouted behind him, "I'm going to find a chance to control him, you guys follow me." Thundersuit. As soon as the words fell, Laxus turned into golden thunder again and rushed forward quickly. His figure continued to enlarge in Bruno's sight, gradually adapting to the pressure of gravity, gritting his teeth and swinging a heavy punch with the power of thunder. Thunder Fist. Bluenote sneered, raised his arm and gently took it. "A weak attack, does it mean you haven't eaten?" The majestic magic power immediately swallowed up Laxus's strength. Without the protection of magic power, Laxus's body was unable to fall down. Ridiculous. Bluenote was about to humiliate him again, but suddenly he was shocked to find that, although Laxus fell to the ground, there was no trace of regret for failure on his face, and he even cracked the corners of his mouth, as if he was laughing at himself. "You were fooled. Is it just missing the body?" When, boom, Laxus' body of thoughts suddenly exploded. While Bruno's vision was blurred again, Laxus himself finally appeared behind him, and the dragon-slaying power exploded. Thunder Dragon's Collapse Fist. Bluenote suddenly woke up and immediately activated his magic power in front of him. A purple supergravity ball was gradually moved, and Bluenote laughed wildly. "Is this the only level of fairy tale? Prepare to face despair. All your magic power will be swallowed up in this collapsing black hole." GG. Laxus is a master of thunder. The explosive power in a short period of time is astonishing, and can even confront opponents whose magic power is greater than theirs. But once it gets caught in a tug of war, it will become even more difficult. At this time, Thunder Dragon Bang Fist had obviously invested all his remaining magic power, but he still failed to shake Bluenote's hypergravity ball. Bluenote's magic is about to take shape. Just when he thought he was sure of victory, 3 figures rushed out from beside him. The Secret of Dragon Slayer, Red Lotus Exploding Flame Blade. The Secret of Dragon Slaying, Xiaopo Sky Penetration. Heavenly Wheel Sword of Chaos. Thanks to the dispersion of Laxus' fire power, Wendy used all the support magic on herself and Natsu Urza. Finally freed from the constraints of the gravity field, the 3 figures shot out and launched their killing moves one after another. Magic meets. Bluenote was still trying to use the black hole to suppress their magic, but was shocked to find that cracks have actually appeared on the originally exquisite purple supergravity ball. "Impossible, I am the vice president of Devil's Heart. You are just a bunch of useless magicians from a rubbish guild. I will not lose." A meaningful smile finally appeared on the corner of Laxus's mouth, and he spoke proudly. "Hey, when one day your verbal output can be stronger than your strength, it won't be too late to say this again. Besides, you are not qualified to judge how Fairy Tale Guild is. Go to hell." 5 powerful magic powers collided, and Lucy and others outside the battlefield also felt unusual pressure. Waves were already surging by the Harujun port, the ships were overturning, and the surrounding ground had been shaken to pieces. And when the hypergravity ball finally shattered, there was no more power to stop Natsu and the others' attacks, and 4 majestic magic powers smashed into Bluenote's head and face. Boom. Bluenote's body was repelled at a high speed as if he could not control it. After hitting several houses one after another, the walls shattered, and then he stopped and already lost consciousness. The smoke cleared. Looking at his embarrassed appearance, several people finally breathed a sigh of relief. Laxus' eyes swept over the messy scene and joked, "You are really still the same as before. No matter what kind of battle you are, you will always destroy the town to a great extent." Natsu immediately said that he would not take the blame. "Hey, you did a lot of damage just now, right?" Laxus didn't buy it at all. He turned around and left as if nothing happened. "Then it's out of my control. Anyway, you have a guild, and the old man will compensate you according to the price. There is indeed nothing wrong with this." Looking at the retreating figure in the black coat, Urza suddenly remembered something and shouted, "Laxus, aren't you going to come back to the guild with us?" Laxus didn't look back, but simply waved his hand. "I'm not going. I'm annoyed when I see that old man. It's best if you don't tell him that I've been here." And next, no matter how many people tried to persuade him to stay, Laxus never responded. Gray couldn't help but said depressedly, "What's going on? He obviously came to Harujun Port just to go back to Magnolia, right? Now he's not going? I really can't understand." That's right. Even though he was kicked out by the guild leader, everyone still regards him as a companion. What's more, the Thunder Gods are still in the guild. Sigh, maybe he just wanted to take a look at the guild and the president from a distance and leave. The sunset is setting. The back of Laxus's departure was very long. Natsu suddenly said, I suddenly have a hunch that Laxus will definitely return to the guild one day. Night falls. The lanterns are on. Emoi and Myra Jane had already sat on the Ferris wheel in the amusement park, rotating to the highest point and taking in the entire night view of Axel Town. So beautiful. Pulling his gaze back to his side, Emoi suddenly realized that Myra Jane, who was leaning on his shoulder, seemed to be in something wrong. There seemed to be some embarrassment on his face. Myra, what's wrong with you? Yes. I'm sorry. Emoi, I lied to you. Emoi is still kept in the dark. Myra Jane bit her red lips with her teeth, then hesitantly explained the truth. Actually, before you came back yesterday, we received a secret letter saying that Bluenote, the vice president of Devil's Heart, was coming to kill you. The sender's name is Arusha. Emoi was startled. Sure enough, Sister Lei's prediction was correct. If President Hades fails once, he will definitely come out to kill him a second time. Fortunately, Sister Lei delivered the news. Then what? So you brought me out actually to avoid assassination? Not entirely. After considering this matter, the president decided to temporarily detain you, and then they set up an ambush in Acnologia to stop Bruno. Emoi was shocked and couldn't sit still. No, why do you want to hide such a big thing from me? Myra Jane looked embarrassed. Don't worry. The president said that you have paid too much for the guild, and it's time for everyone to protect you today. Well, Emoi's eyes were full of helplessness. As the second person in the Devil's Heart besides President Hades, Bluenote is extremely powerful. Apart from him, the only two people Fairy Tail can face off against are Gildarts and Makarov. One can imagine how risky their plan is this time. Myra Jane said softly, if Bluenote really arrives at the time mentioned in the letter, the battle should be over by now. Whether it's over or not, Myra, let's go back right now. Storm Dragon Wings. Emoi's eyes flashed with unquestionable decisiveness, and he kicked open the iron door of the Ferris wheel. Dangerous actions, minors should not imitate, adults should not imitate either. With his wings spread, Emoi stretched out his arms to pick up Myra Jane, jumped out of the cabin in the air, and sailed into the night sky. There seemed to be shouts and screams from the staff at my feet. But don't worry about these details. At this moment, Emoi just wanted to return to Acnologia as soon as possible to see if everyone could withstand Bruno's attack. And saw Emoi's serious look. Myra Jane also lowered her head quietly in self-reproach, not daring to say anything to disturb her. My mission is finally completed. I hope everyone will be okay. Harujun Port. At this time, there were already crowds of people joining in the fun. And in the center of the crowd, the ombudsman's smile froze, and he wrote something on the book with trembling fingers. Finally, he couldn't help but raise his head and ask again. You mean that all the damage to the ships, the collapse of the ground, and the demolition of the houses were all done by Bruno lying on the ground alone, right? Natsu immediately gave an affirmative answer. Of course. People like them from the Dark Guild can do anything. Gray followed and said, that's right. If we hadn't arrived in time, I'm afraid the consequences would have been even more serious. The two of them sang and harmonized, and their cooperation was quite tacit at this time. There was no tension at all when they usually quarreled. Lucy and the others next to her could only stay with their smiling faces and did not expose them. When the inspector heard this, he turned his head to prevent his men from seeing his face twitching. When will it be my first day at the Senate? Who doesn't know that Fairy Tail destroys half the town every time you do a small commission? There are so many people gathered now, and the entire port is about to be blown up. Are you telling me that it is all caused by the Dark Guild? But look at Bluenote's miserable state. You'll be lucky to be alive and breathing by the time you take it to the Senate. And when they fought, because the destructive power was too strong, there was no witness nearby. Forget it, let's just assume that these goblins are telling the truth this time. The inspector reluctantly saluted Urza and the others and said, we are all aware of the situation. Thank you all the magicians for your contribution to maintaining peace in the town. You're welcome, these are what we should do. The officials of the Senate took the dying Bruno away by his feet. Makarov then rushed over with the rest of the group. Seeing the leaving team of the Senate, Makarov walked forward quickly and couldn't help but be surprised. Bruno has been defeated by you. Urza nodded lightly. I have to say, he is really a very powerful opponent. If Laxus hadn't arrived in time to help us, it would have been really difficult to win. Laxus. Makarov's pupils instantly dilated and became excited, even though he personally gave the order to expel Laxus from the guild. However, during this period of lost contact, this naughty grandson still came to his dreams from time to time, as if he had never left. When the magicians behind Makarov heard this name, their emotions were aroused, and they gathered around to ask. Especially the three members of the Thunder Gods. Laxus is back? Where is he now? Did he say anything? I'm sorry everyone, Laxus is gone and we couldn't keep him, Urza said regretfully. A bit of disappointment flashed in Makarov's eyes, and then disappeared quickly, and he waved his hands openly and said, just leave, I don't want to see him. Huh. Fried sighed softly. Although he had regrets in his heart, he could only slowly let go. Laxus. I hope that the next time we meet, it won't be too long. This commission is coming to an end and will soon come to an end. Makarov was about to take everyone back to the Fairy Tail Guild when a figure quickly passed by under the night sky, immediately stopped in the middle of the crowd. Emoi and Myra. Under the gaze of everyone, Emoi gently put Myra down from his arms, put away the wings of the storm dragon, and said with a wry smile, "I've really worked hard on you all today. Everyone in the guild is hiding such an important matter from me. You know everything. I know everything. If Myra hadn't told me, I would still be kept in the dark until now." After Emoi finished speaking, Myra Jane looked at everyone apologetically, and was about to say something when he was interrupted by Makarov without mercy. "You BD? You've got an advantage and you're still good, right? You already have Urza, and you asked Myra to go out with you for a day today. We also stopped your killers for you. What else are you dissatisfied with? Maybe it was due to the disappointment of Laxus leaving just now." Makarov was so speechless that he vented all his emotions on Emoi. Emoi could only say helplessly, "Ahem, then, thank you, President, thank you Myra, and, thank you everyone. After all, this kind of treatment is indeed considered the top crown enjoyment in the guild." Emoi. Myra suddenly called softly from the side. Emoi tilted his head, "What's wrong? According to the president's plan, my task today was just to take you out of the town. But the words I said to you were all sincere." Myra's face flushed, and her voice became lower and lower. "If you are willing, I also want to take the relationship to a further level with you." Before Emoi responded, a group of people following Makarov immediately stopped in Bengbu. "Myra, so what did you say to him? What does a closer relationship mean? Tell me Myra, that's not what you meant, right? You smile at me every time I accept a commission. Don't you always pretend to be me in your heart? You are a bit outrageous. Let me wake you up with urine." Oh, originally when Myra came back with the child, I thought something was wrong between them. Unexpectedly, the last goddess in the apartment was still taken away. How about we throw Emoi into the sea? Just say it was Bluenote who did it. Great idea. Emoi looked at the people in the guild who were walking toward him with ill intentions. I really didn't know what to say for a moment, but suddenly I felt someone tapping me on the shoulder. Urza. Obviously, everything Myra Jane said just now has been heard by Urza. Urza smiled helplessly. "Today, you can make as much trouble as you want." "Huh? You mean? You've been staying with Granny Porlyusica for a long time, and I miss you very much." "Well, it just so happens that my armor hasn't been updated for a long time. Come with me to buy new armor tomorrow." Emoi immediately agreed. "Okay, no problem." Marajana's eyes also showed joy, and her white jade hands quietly pulled Emoi together again, biting Emoi's ear and said, "In the evening, why don't you go to my house? My cat can do backflips." Emoi was ashamed. "The cat you are talking about cannot be Lysina, who has absorbed the soul of animals." Myra Jane smiled mysteriously. A purple aura suddenly appeared on his body, and he turned into the Devil Satan again. He took Emoi's arm and flew directly into the night sky. The painful wails of the guild men could be heard from below. First came the fairy queen Urza, and then the poster girl Myra Jane. Two of the most beautiful beauties in the guild were snatched away by that BD Emoi? It seems a bit inaccurate. Judging from the situation just now, it seems that the waiter took Emoi away. You must be happy. Unlike most girls in the guild, Myra Jane does not live in a girl's apartment, but in a two-story loft in the suburbs. Since this time, with the addition of Mina and the return of Lysina, the small building became much livelier than before, and she and her brother Elfman were no longer the only ones. Myra Jane gently pushed the door open and said with a smile, "Come in, my room is upstairs." "Oh, okay." There was no light in the room, so Myra Jane took Emoi's arm and walked slowly forward. Before turning on the light and going upstairs, he also took out 2 pieces of delicate cream cake from the refrigerator. Myra Jane suddenly said, "By the way, I told Lysina and Elfman yesterday that they won't be back tonight. I'll also trouble them to take little Mina. So it's just the 2 of us tonight." Emoi secretly guessed. When arriving at the port of Harujan, Myra Jane kept leaning on her side and had almost no chance to talk to other people in the guild. So there is only one possibility left. Myra had already planned to bring her back tonight yesterday, and then informed Lysina and Elfman. This girl thinks a lot, is far-reaching and meticulous. Walk through the stairs. $1G at carat. Myra Jane opened the bedroom door gently, with a shy smile on her face, and turned to look at Emoi behind her. "Come in." Within the room, it was filled with a faint fragrance of flowers, and the moonlight cast a soft light through the pink curtains. Emoi was pushed halfway by Milage's hand. Before he had time to see the furnishings in the room, he was gently pushed to the edge of the bed and sat down. "Myra." Marajana's face turned crimson. He sat directly on Emoi's lap and put his arms around his neck. "Actually, that night when I was recuperating at my mother-in-law's house, I wanted to tell you this. In my heart, you already occupy the same weight as Lysina Elfman. I can no longer live without you." Emoi's heart was filled with confusion. The disgusting words stuck in my mouth, but I couldn't say them. In the end, I only spit out a few words. "Don't worry, I will always be by your side." Marajana's beautiful eyes flashed, and she finally smiled. The index finger of her right hand slightly touched the cake on the table, smeared it with some white cream, applied it directly to her red lips, and whispered shyly, "I remember you said before that you really liked the cream cake I made. Do you want to try it again now?" Looking at the expectant eyes of the beautiful lady in front of him, Emoi just planned to make some move. Marajana's eyes suddenly flashed with a hint of cunning, and she directly kissed her on the cheek. Seeing Emoi's surprised and deflated look, Marajana's smile became even brighter. The beauty of the world seems to be frozen here. The assessment time is getting closer. There are only 2 days left to prepare. In order to cope with this assessment, starting a month ago, some magicians who were hopeful of being shortlisted began to receive a large number of commissions or improve their magic level, just to pass the exam and become a respected S-class mage, except Emoi. Since the Bluenote incident ended, Sister Tears has not sent a message for a long time. Perhaps it's because the Devil's Heart suffered too many losses from several losses, so I don't expect to have any thoughts about Fairy Tail in the near future. Natsu and Gray also began to accept commissions on their own, and got involved crazily before the assessment. The team rarely worked together anymore. Emoi is getting more and more leisurely. Today I'll be with Urza, tomorrow I'll be with Myra Jane, and occasionally I'll go fishing with Gildarts, and then I'll bully Natsu who makes a fuss about challenging him. The days are getting more comfortable day by day. Okay, little brats, it's time to stop what you are doing. In the guild hall, Makarov jumped on the counter and shouted. Everyone's eyes immediately focused here. Makarov cleared his throat and said loudly, everyone has been working very actively during this period, and I know what your purpose is. Next, it's time to announce the list of S-class wizards for this assessment. Good. There was a roar of people. Makarov raised his hand slightly to calm down. Turning his head and looking down, Urza, Myra Jane and Gildarts, the 3 S-class wizards in the guild, walked up to him. The location of this assessment has finally been determined to be Tianlang Island, our guild's holy land. Over the past year, I have seen the progress of everyone here. In the end, a total of 10 people were selected to participate in this assessment. Speaking of which, the hearts of everyone in Natsu's field couldn't help but speed up. Natsu Dragneel. Gray for pasta. As soon as the words fell, the 2 enemies who usually fought every day looked at each other, with fighting intent igniting in their eyes. They have been waiting for this moment for a long time. Makarov continued to announce, Juvia rocks. Juvia couldn't help but be startled when she heard this. Juvia can also. Elfman Strauss. A man should become S-class. Kana Aropelona. When Kana's name was read, Gildas looked towards the audience with a loving face and silently gave her a thumbs up. Kana smiled slightly. Dad, please don't give me any trouble then. Next, Wendy Mabel. Wendy's little face was suddenly filled with surprise, and then she became seriously unconfident about herself. How could I have the strength of an S-class mage? Carla beside her side and said helplessly, you should be more confident in yourself. But Wendy still doubted herself a little. Didn't Emoi teach you how to use the galaxy a few days ago? Now you have mastered 2 secrets of dragon slaying. You are already very strong. Okay. Only then did Wendy's eyes show some determination. Makarov continued to announce, number 7, Free Josting. 8th, Levi Makungadan. 9th place, Mest Glade. As for the last one, I think everyone can guess it. Everyone present nodded silently, all looking at a certain newcomer who had joined the guild for half a year. Yes, it is happy, warm. Everyone in the stands looked full of questions, and Makarov immediately changed the subject. Hey, just kidding, the 10th S-class mage candidate, Emoi. Emoi couldn't help but rolled his eyes, full of resentment. President, do you think you are very humorous? Makarov glanced at Emoi quickly. He just pretended not to hear and continued to give instructions. Due to the large number of participants this time, the assessment mechanism from the last time will be partially continued this year. Each candidate will still compete independently. There are still 2 days left. I hope everyone can prepare well. 2 days later in the afternoon, we will board the ship on time at Haruhian Port and head to Tenro Island. Natsu was so excited that he jumped on the table and breathed fire and cheered. Okay, I'm on fire. Emoi reminded in a low voice from the side. Natsu, you seem to have forgotten one thing. Huh? What's the matter? We need to take transportation to get to Tenro Island. The smile on Natsu's face instantly froze. The whole person suddenly froze, like an eggplant beaten by frost, and his expression changed drastically. After a long time, he begged with a trembling voice, well, can I apply to take the assessment in Magnolia? Makarov rolled his eyes at him. What do you think? Naz immediately expressed his dissatisfaction and turned to look at Emoi and asked, no, why don't you and Wendy get sick of transportation since we are both dragon slayers? Emoi spread his hands. Maybe it's because our dragon power hasn't awakened yet. This. Natsu seemed to understand. Speaking of which, old man, why don't we go there in the morning instead of waiting until the afternoon? Nonsense. I don't know which group of blind souls almost destroyed Harujun Port last time. It's great if they are willing to lend us a boat. Forward. Midnight. Emoi was lying on the big bed in the villa, tilting his head and looking out the window, just enough to catch a glimpse of the dark night sky. The day after tomorrow is the day of assessment. I hope Devil's Heart will really give up this attack due to heavy losses. I also plan to get the title of S-class mage. Consciousness gradually blurred. Emoi's mind came to the dark space where the Dragon Slayer crystal was stored. The space is as usual. In the center of 8 colorful crystals, a jet black crystal stands suspended, giving people a sense of mystery that is elusive and out of reach. During this period of time, Emoi has been doing a lot of research on this thing. No matter how much magic power you use to stimulate it, this crystal remains unmoved, absorbing all the magic power and is unfathomable. Emoi couldn't help but think, absorb everything. I remember that the black dragon Acnologia has a similar ability. It even swallowed up the cracks in time and space. Grandma Porlyusica also seemed to have said. The magic power of this crystal will at least not be weaker than the ultimate weapon of the Magic Council. It will only be stronger. Maybe it can really be compared to the power of the black dragon. While thinking, Emoi suddenly felt a chill. His consciousness returned to reality, and he instantly noticed the magic that was about to move outside the house. It also seemed hostile. Emoi remained calm. His figure instantly transformed into thunder and rushed downstairs. The other party's breath disappeared strangely, as if it had never been there before. Only a letter was left at the door. Emoi couldn't help but frown, leaned over to pick up the envelope and opened it. Let me see who is such a dedicated postman who delivers letters in the middle of the night. In a town, in a house somewhere. Under the soft light, the bathroom is filled with white mist. K-emoji, so comfortable. Lucy slowly sat into the large bathtub. Her face began to turn red, and she soaked her whole body in the hot water bath. Lying back relaxedly, the fatigue caused by a day's work is gradually washed away. It's better to go home and rest comfortably, Lucy murmured in her mouth. Just as she was about to close her eyes, she sat up directly as if it was a subconscious reaction and looked around cautiously. In the past, whenever I took a shower, there will always be a few heads and 2 arms appearing at home at inappropriate times, treating this place as their own home, not only eating and drinking, but sometimes even breaking into the bathroom. Sometimes it was Natsu alone, sometimes even Gray and Urza would come with him. Think of this. Lucy felt her scalp numb and her face was filled with bitterness. Why is it that every time I feel like I can relax alone for a while, I get disrupted? Lucy has long been trained to develop a habit. Whenever she relaxes and feels at peace, the brain will send signals to remind itself not to relax its vigilance. Natsu? Happy? Lucy shouted tentatively. No one answered. It seems that they have been preparing for the S-level assessment recently. They shouldn't come again, right? You can take a shower and get some beauty sleep. Lucy couldn't help but breathed a sigh of relief, with a reassuring smile on her face. He was about to soak his body back into the bathtub. Boom. As the loud noise reached her ears, Lucy looked towards the bathroom door in horror. But all he saw was a wooden door flying towards him. If he hadn't turned sideways out of physical stress, he might have opened his head directly. What's going on? Lucy turned her head stiffly. Only then did I realize it was more than just a door. From the door of the house to the entire living room, everything was blown away in the loud noise just now. Looking forward, your line of sight can be cast directly onto the street without any obstruction. In other words, if you pass a passerby and glance to the side, you can clearly see the whole scene of her bathing. What evil have I done? Lucy wanted to cry but had no tears left. Just when he was about to find a place to hide first, he felt a powerful magic coming next to him. It was full of pressure and stopped directly in front of him. Emoi. Seeing the appearance of the visitor, Lucy immediately realized that she was still being frank and hurriedly wanted to find something to cover her up. But Emoi's body was directly in front of him. Lucy, do you still have the key to the Zodiac with you? I need Loki's help to summon him. Lucy looked confused. For the Protoss mage, things like Protoss keys are naturally the most important. She always carried it with her. Even when taking a shower, be sure to keep it within reach. But Emoi suddenly visited me in this terrorist-like way, asking for the key. Lucy couldn't help but become suspicious for a moment. What are you looking for Loki for? Emoi was still a little excited. Go to the Star Spirit realm? I will tell you in detail when we get there. It's better to hurry up now. All right. Lucy hesitated for a moment. He curled up into the bathtub, took out the stored Star Spirit keys from the corner, and selected one of the golden keys. Swinging into the air. Open, Leo's door? Loki. As the door connecting a slant and the celestial spirit world was opened, Loki, the guardian spirit of Leo, gracefully walks through it. Loki stepped on the ground, pushed up his glasses, turned his head and said softly to Lucy, "Hey, Lucy, you're calling me out so late. Why are you giving out benefits again?" Lucy's ears turned red with embarrassment and she shrank her body again. He pointed at Emoi next to him with an aggrieved look. Lucy had summoned Loki many times to join the battle when they were working together on a previous mission. Rocky is no stranger to Emoi either. Oh, Emoi, are you looking for me? Emoi stared at Loki for 3 full seconds and still didn't speak. 3 seconds later, he roughly reached out his hand and grabbed Loki's collar, and started to pull at his clothes. Loki suddenly panicked. Hey, I'm a serious person. Oh no, a serious star, not a prostitute? And Lucy is here too. Why do you think of me again? I have no idea about you. Give me your clothes and take me to the Star Spirit world. Claim. The Star Spirit world does have relevant rules. As long as humans can wear clothes from the world of stars, they can go to the world of stars under certain conditions. While Loki was confused, Emoi had completely taken off his coat and put it on himself randomly. No, why are you going to the Star Spirit realm? Loki couldn't help but ask. Emoi looked back warily and lowered his voice. I don't know if I'm being monitored right now. Anyway, take me there first. It's very urgent. Loki looked at Emoi with a slightly nervous look, but it didn't look like he was playing a prank. Although the Star Spirit realm also has relevant regulations, humans cannot be taken in and out at will. But after all, Emoi said, there is something very urgent. It shouldn't be a big deal to make exceptions for your partners now and then. Loki let out a long sigh, and there was some determination in his eyes. Let's go. His hands grabbed Emoi and Lucy's arms and pulled them into the Star Spirit Gate together. Lucy screamed immediately. Hey, why are you pulling me? I'm not even dressed yet. The vast and boundless space of stars. It is vast and the stars are within reach. If it were placed in Blue Star, it would definitely be the only tourist attraction that exists. However, Emoi and the others were not in the mood to see the scenery at this time. After landing safely in the Star Spirit world, Loki got some clothes from somewhere and temporarily covered Lucy up so that she would not go around giving out benefits in the Star world. Okay, now can you tell me why you must come to the Star Spirit realm? Loki said. Emoi nodded slowly. He took out a letter with a blood-red cover from his trouser pocket, which was exactly the letter he had just received at his doorstep. What's this? Emoi said expressionlessly. This is from President Hades of the Devil's Heart. He has controlled the life of a friend of mine and wants me to do things for him, otherwise I will break up. What? Lucy and Rocky were immediately surprised and quickly opened the letter to check its contents. Emoi paused and continued. The girl who previously sent Gray a message saying that Bluenote was coming to assassinate me is called Uridia. Since I met her in the Haze Forest, I have incited her to rebel. She has always wanted to leave the Dark Guild, but she was just waiting for the moment when the Devil's Heart would be completely destroyed. Actually, I should have thought of it a long time ago. President Hades's government would definitely realize that there was an undercover agent inside. Sure enough, something happened to Arusha. In the letter, Hades asked me to destroy the Sirius tree during the S-class magician assessment, and at the same time assist the Devil's Heart to hunt down the guild's partners one by one. Also, Hades will secretly monitor my every move. If I do anything unusual on Sirius Island, he will kill Arusha immediately. Rocky and Lucy read the letter in panic. Indeed, as Emoi said, what awaits him will be a huge conspiracy. Once he becomes Hades's puppet and wields the butcher knife towards his guild companions, he will completely move towards darkness. And if he disobeys Hades' wishes, Arusha's life will immediately be under great threat. This multiple-choice question, no matter how you do it, seems to lead Emoi into the abyss. Loki put away the cynicism on his face and asked in a deep voice. So you asked to come to the Star Spirit realm to avoid Hades' surveillance, right? Do you have any plans? Emoi nodded slightly. Lucy, if I remember correctly, Jiminy, the Gemini Star Spirit, should have signed a contract with you, right? Yes, Jiminy has been my Star Spirit partner for some time. Jiminy is the guardian spirit of Gemini, the zodiac sign, and originally signed a contract with Angel, the 6 demon generals. During the previous battle with the 6 demon generals, Angel was defeated and captured by the Senate, and Jiminy regained his freedom. Later, he took the initiative to find Lucy and became her Star Spirit. Emoi then asked, since this is the Star Spirit world, with the bond between you and the Star Spirits, it should be no problem to find it, right? I'll try. Lucy hesitated slightly. After all, it was her first time doing this kind of thing in the Star Spirit world. Jiminy. Feeling the fluctuation of magic power in her body, Lucy kept calling Jiminy's name in her heart. After a while, Billy. A familiar cry came to her ears, and Lucy opened her eyes suddenly. The twin Smurfs who were still in front of them suddenly transformed into different forms and became exactly like themselves. Standing tall and naked, Lucy hurriedly stood in front of Jiminy to prevent Rocky and Emoi from seeing her. Although I have seen it. But Jiminy didn't care and asked enthusiastically, Lucy, why did you come to the Star Spirit world? It's a long story. This is my guildmate Emoi, you may have met him. Anyway, he has something very important to discuss with you now, which involves the life of a certain girl. Jiminy took the coat handed over by Loki and barely covered himself. Looked at Emoi seriously. What's wrong? How can I help you? Emoi felt at ease immediately. Although Jiminy is not a fighting star, he has powerful transformation magic. Can change its own form into the person it comes into contact with in a short period of time. After the transformation, you can even possess this person's abilities and thoughts for a short time. Although it didn't last long. Emoi then recounted everything about Hades. Jiminy, for the assessment in 2 days, I need you to transform into me and use your tactics to pretend to destroy the Sirius tree. At that time, I will quietly hide my presence, find the location of Hades, and rescue Arusha before you reveal your identity. Jiminy immediately agreed. No problem, as long as you give me the route, I guarantee that they won't discover it in advance. Lucy looked embarrassed and questioned, the plan is good, but we almost lost when we met Vice President Bluenote. This time, you have to face President Hades alone. How much do you know about him? Are you sure about it? Rocky and Jiminy looked at Emoi with equal concern. Although Emoi's magical aura is far beyond that of ordinary magicians, he still has to face a terrifying guy whose strength is still unknown. Emoi's eyes flashed with sharpness, and he said slowly, Hades, this is just a pseudonym. The true identity of President Devil Heart is Fairy Tail's long-retired second-generation president, Prisito. What? He is, formerly the president of Fairy Tail. A look of disbelief instantly appeared on Lucy's face. The second-generation president. The current Makarov is only the third generation. In other words, Prisito had already become the president before Makarov, who possessed the strength of the Holy Ten, had yet to grow up. Regardless of the factor of age, if you could practice magic until now, what kind of terrifying strength would you have? Emoi had already seen Lucy's confusion and immediately explained. As far as I know, President Presato used some secret methods to stop his age. His actual age is already over 100 years old. In terms of strength, it can at least be comparable to the 4 heavenly kings of Ishgard. As soon as this statement came out, even Loki and Jiminy next to them couldn't help but twitch on their faces. The top 4 of the Holy 10 Magicians are called the 4 heavenly kings of Ishgard. They have occupied the top 4 positions for many years, and almost no one can shake them. The strength that rivals the 4 heavenly kings of Ishgard is completely beyond their imagination. After a while, Lucy then asked hoarsely, "How sure are you of rescuing Arusha?" 90%. So high. Loki couldn't help but add. But looking at Emoi's determined expression at this time, it doesn't look like he's pretending. You really have a way to defeat that Hades? Yes. However, there are some reasons involved, which I cannot disclose to you yet. Emoi apologized. After these days of fighting, Emoi now has a deeper and deeper understanding of his growing magical power. If it's a head-on collision, Presato, who possesses the strength of the 4 heavenly kings of Ishgard, may not be his opponent. Emoi has already thought about it carefully. Tianro Island is the holy land of the guild, where the soul of the first guild leader Mavis lives. There is a mysterious dark crystal in my body. Even if the dragon-slaying power breaks out and attracts the black dragon Acnologia, I should be able to compete. But, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, I would like to avoid attracting the black dragon if possible. It would be bad if it affects other people in the guild. If I can't use the dragon-slaying power, when I arrive at Tenro Island, I have to go find the ghost body of President Mavis first, ask her to lend me power, and then use this power to fight against President Hades. Determine this action plan from your heart. Emoi smiled slightly, then turned around and said, "Jiminy, you can board the ship with us tomorrow and go to Sirius Island. When the assessment officially begins, you can transform into me and go to the Sirius tree." "No problem." Lucy's face still showed worry. "Emoi, do you really not want to tell the president and others about this matter?" Emoi shook his head firmly. "Once the news is spread, everyone will reveal it to some extent. At that time, it is difficult to guarantee whether President Hades will harm Arusha. Okay, then, be more careful." Early in the morning, Emoi had already returned home, but did not fall asleep. As the magic power in the body interacts with each other and gradually takes shape, Emoi injects a ray of thought from his mind into it. Suddenly a golden light flashed before my eyes, lighting up the whole house. The light faded. What appeared in front of me was a person who was exactly the same as Emoi. Emoi nodded with satisfaction and took the magic breath back into his body. "It's finally completed. With my current ability, I can indeed create a missing body. It will be much easier to deal with President Hades then." 2 days later, Port Makarov, Gildarts and others stood happily on the deck, watching the 10 S-class mage candidates they selected boarding the ship one after another. Among 10 people, some people are full of pride, some people are anxious, some people look like they are dead when they get on the boat, and some people go there with completely different purposes. On the shore stood other members of the Fairy Tale Guild, giving them parting encouragement. Lysina put her hands to her mouth and shouted, "Brother Emoi, come on. Brother Elfman, come on. Lysina, there is only one spot for an S-class mage. Which one of them do you hope will make it to the end?" I don't know. Brother Emoi must be fine. If Brother Elfman is right, just try your best. Fried must withstand the pressure, you are the hope of our thunder gods." "Understood. With Lax's faith on my back, I will definitely go to the end. Just try your best, Levi-chan, be careful not to get hurt, our Shadow Gear team still needs you to lead." "Okay, I know. Hey, didn't Gajeel come with you? By the way, Gray seemed to have said it was too hot before boarding the boat, so he took off his kukazi and forgot to put them on." "Emoi, you must come back alive." Hearing this inexplicable sentence, everyone couldn't help but focus on Lucy, who was full of worry. "I'm just going to take an exam. Do I have to risk my life? And no one here knows. Emoi can even go head-to-head with the hot blue man Gildarts. This time, he will most likely take away the S-class mage's spot. Who can hurt him?" Macau couldn't help but ask, "Lucy, what did you mean by what you just said?" It made it seem like Emoi was going to participate in a life-and-death duel. "No, nothing." Lucy quickly changed the topic. She promised Emoi that this matter would never be made public. Before setting off, she had summoned Jiminy and hid him on the ship. "At this moment, I can only pray that Arusha can be rescued according to the plan." As the whistle sounded again, everyone who boarded the ship stood beside the ship's rail and waved goodbye to their companions. Except Natsu was kneeling on the deck. His face was pale and he was dying. It took a lot of effort to squeeze out a few words from his throat to ask for help. Wendy, give me the magic to prevent motion sickness." Coming. Wendy hurried over in small steps, leaned over and activated the Troya magic that heals the sense of balance. Following the pale blue light of her hands, Natsu's expression did not improve at all, he was still pale. "Wendy, what's going on?" "I'm sorry, maybe it was used too many times when we were executing the commission together, and now it's hard to have any effect on you." Except for Nez, the others behaved more naturally. Gildarts hugged Kana into his arms, kept rubbing his stubble on her body, and said in an extremely inappropriate voice, Kana, if you call me daddy, I will put some water on you during the assessment. Go away, you're annoying me being so clingy. Okay. A man must get the title of S-class mage. Gray, can you stop walking around with birds? If you do that again, I'll cut it for you. I didn't want to either. Have any of you seen my cookazi? The ship moved forward amidst the noise. Only Emoi has been standing alone on the bow of the ship since he boarded the ship, with a meaningful light flashing in his eyes. The closer they are to Tenro Island, the more everyone will enter the surveillance range of the Devil's Heart. Zankro and Azuma are dead, Bruno is detained by the Senate, and there are 5 remaining members of the 7 families of Purgatory. Once Sister Lei is controlled, the little girl Melty she raised will inevitably suffer, right? Many years ago, Demon Heart destroyed many towns in search of the key to revive Ziraf. And in a certain village that had been reduced to a sea of fire, Arusha discovered a surviving little girl, Melty, and for a moment seemed to see herself in the past, and actually felt compassion. Then he took her back to the Devil's Heart. After several years of growth, Melty also mastered the sinful feelings of lost magic and became one of the 7 familiars of Purgatory. Although he was nominally obeying the president's orders, in Melty's heart, the person he trusted the most was Arusha. According to Emoi's speculation, since Hades wants to use Arusha as a hostage, he will definitely not let Melty go. While Emoi was thinking, suddenly I heard an old teasing voice next to me. What's wrong today? I've never seen you so serious before. President. Emoi turned around and smiled lightly. Makarov looked into the distance, still seeing the vast sea, and quickly turned his gaze back. What? Are you worried? No. President, I want to ask you a question. Oh? Tell me. Emoi's pupils retracted slightly and asked slowly, in your impression, what kind of person was the previous president? Makarov narrowed his eyes and fell into memories. President Presato. He passed on the position of president to me when I was 40 years old. I have never seen him again for so many years. I don't know how he is doing now. Alas. Makarov let out a long sigh, with great regret in his eyes. He is a very kind old man, and he is also a magician who is talented in magic and loves to study. He has taught me a lot. By the way, why are you asking about this? No, I'm just curious. Emoi shrugged and smiled casually, indicating not to take it too seriously. Regarding everything about the Devil's Heart, we still have to find a suitable time to explain it clearly to Makarov. But at least not now. Time passed by, and the ship kept moving. At the end of the blue ocean, one can finally see a tall and lush tree, like a giant spirit guarding this area. The wrinkles on Makarov's face suddenly opened with joy, and he immediately called everyone to come and watch. It's the Sirius tree, it's coming soon. The holy land of Fairy Tale Guild, Sirius Island. The tall Sirius tree reaches into the sky. The lush branches and leaves are intertwined to form a huge green umbrella, shielding the island from the blazing sun. Under Makarov's orders, Urza, Myra Jane, and Gildarts have already entered the island in advance and are on standby at their respective positions. The 10 candidates continue to stay on the shore. Makarov glanced at everyone one by one. Are you all here? Raise your hand if you're not here. Ahem, it seems that everyone is here. Let me announce the relevant rules for this assessment. The first is the first item of the assessment. This is a test of your combat ability and luck. There are many forked roads behind me, but the end of the forked roads leads to the front part of the Sirius tree, where we will meet. During the journey, 3 candidates will encounter the 3 current S-class wizards and must pass their assessment to pass. In addition, 6 candidates will meet in pairs during the assessment process, and only one will pass. Gray raised his hand and asked, Old man, aren't there only 9 people? Then where is the remaining one? Makarov smiled slightly. Hehe. I have said that the assessment is also a test of luck. Therefore, the last person does not need to go through any battles. As long as he reaches the stronghold, he can advance directly with a buy. Ah, is this okay? Be content. I originally thought that the last unlucky guy was going to have a fight with the president. Hopefully I get a buy. Makarov coughed twice, and then said seriously, now that everyone is ready, I announce that this Fairy Tale S-level assessment has officially begun. Okay, I'm on fire. Don't let me have a buy. I must meet Gildarts or Emoi and beat him away. Natsu was so excited that he rushed straight to the center road like a wild boar that escaped from its stall. A meaningful light flashed in Makarov's eyes. Of course he knew who Natsu would meet on his way. Everyone, I won't wait for you anymore, take the first step. And with Natsu leaving first, Emoi chose the most inconspicuous path and activated the wings of the storm dragon to fly close to the ground. Let's go to. I choose this side. Emoi did not move forward in a hurry, but got into a bush. After confirming that there were no obvious magic fluctuations nearby, he loosened the large satchel he was carrying, allowing the pair of Smurfs inside to breathe fresh air. Phew, I'm really bored to death. Have you finally started? Emoi nodded. Jiminy, it's up to you later. Okay. Jiminy jumped out of the backpack. He transformed into Emoi and jumped out of the bushes and ran forward, singing a civet cat for a prince. Emoi himself was not in a hurry to leave, and continued to hide, slowly activating the magic power in his body to take shape. About half a minute later, the gathered magic power gradually took on a form, and under the shroud of the light beam, a body of thoughts that was exactly the same as the original figure appeared. If you miss the body, go find the soul of the first generation. Hide the aura as much as possible to avoid being discovered, and at the same time, borrow the power of the first generation. Devil Heart's airship should have arrived at Tianro Island by now. I must take advantage of this time to find them. The two Emoi nodded knowingly. Then he left in two completely opposite directions. At the same time, over Tianro Island, through the magical crystal ball, Hades had a panoramic view of most of Tianlang Island. When he saw Emoi heading towards the Sirius tree according to his plan, intending to destroy it, he couldn't help but smile evilly. Sure enough, the result is the same as I expected. That boy has now completely become my puppet. This is all thanks to you, Arusha. Hades turned his head solemnly. In his sight, there were Arusha and Melty who were firmly bound by shackles and could no longer move. Arusha raised his head feebly, his former grace now pale. Originally she thought she was doing things secretly enough, but she didn't expect that Hades would catch her and become a bargaining chip to blackmail Emoi. You are you. Melty beside him called softly. Arusha smiled palely and comforted in a low voice, don't be afraid, it will be fine. There was a knock on the door. In front of Hades, the remaining 3 members of the 7 families of Purgatory walked into the room and saluted respectfully. President, we are all ready. As long as the Sirius tree falls, we can attack directly at any time. Hades shook his head. No need, you can go down now. Emoi has met Lasteros, just convey my message and let him help you destroy Fairy Tail. The fear in Rastalos's eyes was fleeting. Previously in the Haze Forest, the image of Emoi killing Zankuro with one punch still lingers in his mind. Yes. As the 3 people left the airship, there was a little more worry in Erudia's beautiful eyes. At this moment, she could only pray secretly in her heart that Emoi must not become a minion of Hades and attack his friends. As early as when he first chose the fork in the assessment, Emoi took a fancy to this trail, which was deep and long and best suited for hiding one's breath. With Jiminy as a cover, Emoi's missing body flew like lightning, cutting off all the trees and vines beside him, and moved straight forward. Pushing aside the last bush, light came into view. Right in front, the grave of Mavis, the first president. Thick old trees cast shadows, and in the middle of the shadows, a tombstone stood quietly. And in the center of the tombstone, there was a faint light group flickering. It adds a bit of mystery. Emoi immediately became happy and ran forward quickly. He gently reached out his hand, closed his eyes and felt the aura of the first president remaining here. Hello, first generation president, I am Emoi, a new member who just joined Fairy Tail this year. I am participating in the annual S-Class Wizard assessment. But something went wrong now. A girl is in danger. I have to give up this test and go to save her. That's why I came here, hoping to get your power. First generation, the situation is urgent, can you hear my voice? Emoi suddenly felt that the coat of arms on his chest felt hot, as if it had a magical resonance. Opening his eyes, before he could check, an ethereal girl's voice suddenly came from behind. Are you calling me? Fairy Tail Kid. Kid? Emoi couldn't care less about this inexplicable title at this time. Looking back, I saw the first president Mavis in front of me. Mavis has bare white feet, is wearing a white dress, and has long wavy golden hair hanging down like a waterfall. She is a very cute little loli. Did you call me in front of the grave just now? Want to save a friend? Mavis asked softly again. Emoi nodded heavily immediately. That's right, I want to borrow your super magical fairy sparkle. Fairy's Shine is a highly offensive super magic, and together with Fairy's Law and Fairy Ball, it is known as the 3 major magics of Fairy Tail. Despite its amazing power, the Fairy's Sparkle also relies on the strength of the caster's own magic. If the person who performs the magic has a low level of magic power, he will not be able to exert the maximum power. But for Emoi, the magic power is naturally extremely sufficient. The Fairy's Shining was exactly the purpose of his trip. The only way to defeat Prisito without using dragon-slaying magic to attract the Black Dragon is to find the first president. Borrow her the right to use the super magical Fairy's Sparkle? Looking at Emoi's fiery eyes, Mavis tilted her head and thought for a while, then asked softly, is the girl you want to save also a member of our guild? No. After Emoi hesitated briefly, he told the truth. Her name is Arusha, and she was a member of the Dark Guild not long ago. However, the reason why she was controlled was also to convey to us the news that the Devil's Heart was about to attack, so she was helping us. Emoi's expression became more solemn. Mavis suddenly smiled. Okay, give me your hand and relax. First generation, do you agree? Of course. Our guild was founded to help everyone, not to mention that girl is still your friend. Mavis chuckled and put her little hand in Emoi's palm, which immediately sparked a dazzling light. Emoi watched as several delicate golden lines were engraved on his right arm, filled with the essence of magic power. This arm is as heavy as 1,000 pounds. Mavis stood up on tiptoes and patted Emoi on the shoulder with trust. Okay, I have lent you my power. You must rescue that girl. Thank you, first generation. Emoi's eyes were full of joy and gratitude, but he did not turn around and leave immediately. What's wrong? Is there anything else? First generation, if it's convenient, can you come with me? Is there anyone else you need my help with? Emoi shook his head, then put away his expression, and slowly explained. The person holding Arusha hostage is Hades, the president of the Dark Guild Demon Heart. You may not have heard of this name, but a few years ago, Hades had another identity, the second generation Fairy Tail president after you, Prisito. Disbelief suddenly appeared in Mavis's eyes. You know, Prisito was one of the first 3 people who founded the Fairy Tail Guild with her? A long while. Mavis gradually recovered from the shock, looked at Emoi intently, and asked, "You mean, Presato has gone down a dark path?" Emoi's tone was equally heavy. "Yes. How about we go there first? I'll tell you the details on the way." At the same time, Emoi's body retreated into the sky forest, looking up to the sky from time to time, looking for traces of the Devil's Heart airship. "I have completely sensed everything that happened in my body of thoughts. Have you borrowed the fairy's shine? Next, all that's left is to find President Hades." The Hanging Heart was slightly relieved. Emoi was about to continue searching when a familiar scent hit him directly, giving him the greatest hint. Lasteros? The guy with the Arc of Manifestation. Wait a minute, there seems to be 2 more magic powers around him. They should be the remaining 2 members of the 7 families of the Devil's Heart Purgatory. Have they started taking action yet? Emoi once again restrained the magic aura around him to prevent being discovered, until the auras of the 3 enemies gradually moved away. Only then did he lean out from the bushes, follow the gaps between the branches and leaves of the lush trees above, and look in the direction where Rastylos and others came from. Above the blue sky, the airship of the Devil's Heart stood there like a dark patch, exuding an uneasy atmosphere. Emoi narrowed his eyes slightly. Arusha and Hades must still be on this airship? Inside the airship, the veins on Hades's old face were prominent, and the calmness he had just lost was replaced by an extremely angry look. Inside the crystal ball in front of him, the original Emoi figure has long since disappeared, and there are only 2 Smurfs wandering inside. It is the Gemini star spirit Jiminy who has shown his original shape. Jiminy occasionally made a face, as if he was mocking Hades for being fooled. Clang! The crystal ball shattered out of thin air almost without warning. Hades smiled sinisterly and slowly stood up from his seat. A cold light suddenly appeared in his left eye. "Good boy, dare to use star spirit magic to transform and cheat under my nose. Don't you just want to save Arusha? Now, I will link her life with the body device of the Devil's Heart." GG. After a while, after finding the specific location of the Devil's Heart, Emoi rushed into the sky with sparks and lightning, and punched the ship's door until it deformed and flew away. Boom. Finally boarded the airship. The wind roared behind and below me. There were a bunch of soldiers under Hades in front of him. The moment they saw Emoi, their eyes suddenly showed surprise, and they all picked up the weapons in their hands and became alert. "Who? Don't you know this is the headquarters of Devil's Heart? Aren't we still in the sky? How did he get up here? Master Hades is still directing the battle. If you disturb him, I guarantee that you won't even have a whole corpse left. What nonsense are you talking about? Stop that kid. No time to deal with these minions anymore." Emoi's eyes were burning. Taking a deep breath, he finally no longer suppressed the magic aura. The fire dragon crystal activates. As the huge flames ignited behind the scene, the scorching wind suddenly swept across, mercilessly scorching everything in the room. "Damn it, why is it so hot all of a sudden? Team, Captain, look at that kid. He's on fire? There's something weird about him. Idiot. That's fire attribute magic? Let's go together and take that kid down immediately, life or death." Just as the soldiers with weapons were preparing to swarm, Emoi suddenly raised his head, and as his figure surged forward, his fire fist continued to wave in the air. He punched a child directly, knocking all the blockers to the sides, and the screams could not be heard. A few unlucky ones even smashed the glass and were thrown directly from the air. "Where is Arusha?" Emoi grabbed the last soldier, put his fire fist close to his head, and asked coldly. The soldier suddenly shivered, not daring to raise his eyes to see Emoi's face, and responded in a low voice. "In the control room at the back." Emoi squinted his eyes and looked at the iron gate in front of him. Is Sister Lei being locked up here? But counting the time, Jiminy's transformation may have expired long ago. Maybe Hades has realized something. But no matter what, this door must still be passed. Bang! Punch out again. The iron door was ripped open directly from the center by the strong impact and flames. His gaze cast forward. Emoi saw at a glance that Arusha and Melty were shackles of magic, their faces were pale and they had lost consciousness. And on the wall beside the 2 of them, there was actually a huge purple heart fixed on it, which was still beating rhythmically at this moment. Chairman Hades's energy supply device. Chairman Hades' energy supply device. Emoi was startled. Hades is over 100 years old, but he can still maintain the peak of his magic power. The reason is this purple heart that continuously supplies energy. Once it is destroyed, Hades will be severely damaged immediately. Isn't this an excellent opportunity? As long as you launch an attack, you can not only weaken Hades' power to the greatest extent by destroying the heart, but also save Arusha. The unexpected success made Emoi feel happy and he was about to activate his magic power. But suddenly he noticed a few tiny red dotted lines floating out from the purple heart. The endpoint of the red dotted line happens to be connected to Arusha's body. Melty's cold and slightly childish voice suddenly sounded in her ears. When Emoi broke in, she had gradually woken up. President Hades used life connection magic, and your life has been connected to this heart. As long as you destroy the heart, you will also die together. Life connection. When Emoi heard this, his expression became more solemn. The lost magic used by Melty is sinful love, which can make the person he loves feel the same as the other person, even life or death. And Hades, who taught her this magic, is naturally more proficient. It can actually directly connect Uridia and the body of the Devil's Heart. Sure enough, Hades has guessed that I will come here. The Devil's Heart is a power supply device. Once I destroy it, Arusha will die. But if it is not destroyed, Hades's magic power will continue to flow, and it will always be at its peak to deal with me. In this case, my situation will be very passive no matter what. I am indeed an old fox. The light in Emoi eyes became increasingly fiery. Since there is no way to defeat Hades's weakness, we can only fight head-on. Let's feel what the second-generation president, whose strength is comparable to the 4 heavenly kings of Ishgar, will be like in his prime. Now, Arusha also slowly opened his eyes, and immediately saw the young man standing in front of the purple heart, and immediately screamed. Go quickly. Emoi heard this. But he walked to her side slowly, smiled lightly, and leaned down. Woke up. Arusha's beautiful eyes were full of anxiety and worry. Listen to me, President Hades will be here soon. His strength is very terrifying. Do you see this purple heart next to me? This is the source of magic power in the Devil's Heart. As long as this device is not destroyed, Hades' magic power will never run out. Also, my life is already in Hades's hands and can be taken away at any time. You don't need to come again. Emoi waved his hand gently and interrupted half-jokingly. Okay, I know everything. And you've already come here. Wouldn't it be very shameful to just run away with your tail between your legs? Arusha's eyebrows suddenly stood up, and he turned his head to the side with a cold snort. I really can't explain it to you. If you want to die, just stay here. Emoi glanced at her helplessly and silently put his hand on the magic shackles. Why, this damn arrogant woman, everything about her body is tough except her mouth. I'll help you take this thing off now. It may hurt a little, so bear with it. Emoi then said in a deep voice. After looking carefully, this magic shackle is different from the Senate. The Senate only temporarily seals up the magic power of the bound person. Hades' methods are even more sinister, and the shackles are still extracting magic power from Arusha and Melty's bodies to supply the purple hearts. Their fair wrists had been bruised. I'll count 3 numbers, so be mentally prepared. 1, 2, boom. Sudden severe pain hit the 2 women, and they immediately collapsed on the ground helplessly. But when Melty and Arusha bowed their heads again, the originally dark magic shackles had been shattered by Emoi's dragon-killing power. There are just some scratches on my wrists. Arusha raised his head and gave Emoi a hard look. Didn't you say count to 3? Is mathematics taught by a physical education teacher? Emoi chuckled. You don't understand this, right? In fact, on the count of 2, surprise can relieve the pain to the greatest extent. There's really no formality. Arusha looked away from him with a speechless expression. Although Emoi was able to come here despite the pressure, I was very touched. However, the reality of these inappropriate actions also opened her eyes. Looking at the iron gate that had been destroyed by Emoi, worry appeared in Arusha's beautiful eyes again. Can he really defeat Hades? Suddenly, the sound of heavy and slow footsteps came closer and closer. The look on Emoi's face immediately became alert, and he stood up firmly and looked forward. Didn't see anyone coming. An old and rich voice as loud as a bell has already reached my ears. You are here after all, Emoi. Just as I expected, you will risk everything for this woman, and you even dare to challenge me directly. Hades was wearing armor, and his deep eye sockets were shining with a strange light, and he finally appeared in front of a few people. The terrifying magical aura emanating from his body can't help but make people tremble with fear. Full of oppression, Emoi looked at him coldly, clenching his fists involuntarily, and the dragon-slaying pressure also erupted from his body. Hades is indeed a super wizard who can rival the 4 heavenly kings of Ishgar. He is much stronger than any opponent he has faced before. However, I still have to delay for a while. President Mavis and the Fairy Shine have not arrived yet. Hades stared at Emoi, having already discovered that Arusha and Melty's magic shackles had been removed by him. Not only was his face not angry, but there was a rare arc on his face, and he spoke again. I admire your strength very much. You are young, and your magic power is even higher than that of our guild's vice president Bluenote, although it has caused a lot of trouble. However, I still want to give you one last chance. As long as you join the Devil's Heart and listen to me, I will keep Arusha and Melty alive. Before he finished speaking, he was interrupted by a cold snort from Arusha. Dream. Hades suddenly frowned slightly, showing a bit of displeasure. A ball of purple-black magic light gradually emerged on his left hand, revealing murderous intent. Dark wave. The black light group condensed and shot towards Iridia quickly, causing her pupils to instantly enlarge. About to hit. Emoi immediately stretched out one arm and reached out to catch the light ball in his palm, extinguishing the dark magic within it. Makes a disturbing sizzling sound. Hades's face darkened and he turned his attention to Emoi again. Have you thought it through? Let's do it, President Presato. Emoi responded lightly. Then he waved his hands to Arusha and Melty behind him, signaling them to stay away from here for the time being. And when Hades heard this, his eyes suddenly flashed with excitement, as if he was reminiscing about the past. Presato, no one has called this name for many years. Even I almost forgot. Emoi's eyes were still fixed on Hades' movements and he said calmly, although I hate to admit it, you are a senior after all. Even President Makarov respects you very much. There's something I still can't figure out. Is the allure of magic that great? Can it even make you give up your former guild partners and follow Zeref's path? The words fell. Hades suddenly burst into laughter. Emoi, although you are very powerful, your knowledge of magic is still too shallow after all. Over the years, the more I have devoted myself to studying magic, the more I realize how great the power of Ziraf, the ancestor of the black magicians. Looking at Hades, who was almost possessed, Emoi narrowed his eyes and snorted, for the so-called powerful power, do you even hesitate to take action against your guild companions? It's been a few months since I entered Fairy Tale. Emoi has already fallen in love with this warm and family-like guild. Although his strength ranks among the best in the entire kingdom of Fiori, Emoi still repeats his past practice of magic and continues to make himself stronger. His purpose is just to use powerful power to protect himself and the people he loves. Naturally, I cannot agree with the idea of falling into the abyss of darkness in pursuit of strength. Hades did not answer Emoi directly. He was obviously becoming agitated, and the magic power gradually accumulated from his body. The advent of the magic age can be said to be a mighty one, and everyone is in the midst of it. During this period, many people stood on the forefront of the trend through their own efforts, or luck. Being on top of the tide, the scenery is endless, the temptation is endless, and the risks are endless. It all depends on how well you understand magic. The last word came out. Hades suddenly crossed his palms in front of his chest. The majestic magic power immediately seeped out from Emoi's feet, and the leaking light directly surrounded his whole body. Amaterasu 28 styles. A huge explosion suddenly occurred. Not far away, Arusha and Melty stared blankly at what was happening in front of them, feeling increasingly anxious and worried. You, President Hades's magic power is much stronger than I expected. This is just a tentative blow from him. I don't know how Emoi is doing. Can he hold on for a while? Wait, you, what are you going to do? Melty noticed something was wrong and hurriedly stood up and stopped in front of him. Arusha's eyes flashed with certainty. He looked directly at the huge purple demon heart next to him and spoke in a stern voice. If Emoi falls into a disadvantage in the subsequent battle, I will destroy this device immediately. But you have already made a life connection. Once this heart is damaged, you will also follow it. Arusha sighed and smiled palely. There's no way, at least we can't all die here. If I can let you leave alive in this way, it's worth it. Melty didn't wait for anything to say. A slight coughing sound came from inside the beam of light that originally restrained Emoi. Hey, can you stop talking nonsense? The battle is already very troublesome, and I can't spare the energy to persuade you anymore. The next moment, in the shocked eyes of Arusha and Melty, Amaterasu 28 styles was torn directly from the middle, and the magic power was instantly lost. Emoi was still standing where he was. It's just different from before. At this time, he was covered with a layer of jet black armored dragon scales to resist Hades' attack. Emoi turned back and rolled his eyes at Arusha. Hey, if you really want to harm yourself, I won't stop you, but don't say it's because of me. I won't take the blame. You. Arusha choked back the words he said as soon as they reached his mouth, and glared forward hatefully. At least I won't think about sacrificing myself for a short time. Emoi then calmly turned his head and continued to engage in the battle with Hades. At the same time, there was even more exciting news for him. His missing body is coming with the sparkle of a super magical fairy and the first President Mavis. At this moment, we have arrived directly below the airship. In the midst of lightning and flint, Emoi has been fighting Hades for dozens of rounds with his fists of thunder and fire. The two magic powers overlap and collide, trying to tear the surrounding space apart. Dark chains. As Hades suddenly shouted loudly, more than a dozen magical flying chains suddenly flew out from under the cloak, and instantly surrounded Emoi and suddenly shrank. The magic power that was originally surging violently in Emoi's body was now as slow as a turtle crawling. Obviously, this weird magic is similar to the chains that tortured Arusha. As time goes by, the magic power can be gradually extracted from the wizard's body until he dies. Do you still want to resist? Hades asked coldly. Emoi stood opposite him, not showing any panic on his face, but looking towards the passage outside the room from time to time. It seems to be waiting for something. Since you don't want to cooperate, then just die like everyone else in Fairy Tale. Hades's patience had run out. Even more terrifying magic energy burst out of the body in an instant, and a huge spell formation appeared from under the feet. Amaterasu Hakushiki. Compared to the previous temptation, Hades was obviously murderous at this moment. 7 layers of curse seals enveloped Emoi, and the burst of dark energy wailed at his feet like a demon, ready to pounce on him at any time and tear him to pieces. Gradually, even the armored dragon scales on his body are starting to show signs of cracking. Emoi's eyes were still looking forward, suddenly showing joy. Finally here. End of sight. A missing person who looked exactly like him spread his wings and flew past, arriving at his side in an instant. And beside the missing body, there was a barefoot girl on his arm. First generation. Mavis also showed a bit of worry on his face. The fairy's shine has been brought. You have to deal with Presato first. No problem. Emoi grinned, and as the magic power circulated in his missing body immediately turned into a beam of light and returned to his body. And at the same time, his armored dragon scales have been completely torn, and his right arm is exposed, with several strange light patterns engraved on it, mysterious and unpredictable. It's time. Emoi's eyes were determined. Standing still, he raised his right arm high and poured his maximum magical power into it. Fairy's shine. The light rises, and the curse mark under your feet suddenly dies in the light, completely annihilated in the shining light. The 7-layer talisman formation, which was poured with huge dark magic power, reversed in 2 levels in an instant, and seemed to be collapsing. Hades' face was instantly swallowed up by shock and horror. It was obvious that Emoi's defense was immediately penetrated by him. But now, his attack was able to resolve all difficulties with the force of breaking the bamboo, and the fairy's shining light was shot straight towards him. The moment the magic bursts, the light shrouded the entire airship, and even Arusha and Melty, who were far away from each other, subconsciously covered their eyes, completely losing their sight. It gradually recovered after a few seconds. Is it over? Several people looked at the place where Hades was standing. The vigilance in Emoi's eyes did not decrease at all. He could clearly feel that there was still life in that direction. The light and smoke dissipated. Under the gaze of several people, Hades stood up in ragged clothes. But at this moment, the black eye patch that had been covering his right eye had been removed, and it turned out to be a purple-black devil's eye. That move you just used was the fairy's sparkle, right? It is indeed one of Fairy Tail's 3 major super magics. If I hadn't liberated the power of the devil at the last moment, I might not have been able to resist it. As the 2nd-generation president of Fairy Tail who is known for his knowledge of magic, Hades recognized this move at a glance. While he was speaking awkwardly, the devil's eye on the right side of his cheek continued to exude a terrifying aura. Emoi looked slightly solemn. Sure enough, it is still difficult to solve Hades, which has a powerful energy supply device, with one blow. Presto. Mavis's eyes suddenly showed sadness. The partners who established the guild with him in the past have now become slaves of dark magic. The memories of the past are still fresh in my mind. Recalling the time when I got along with Presto, at that time he was completely a partner worth trusting with my life. Even if they were separated for some reasons, Mavis still knew that Presto was a qualified 2nd-generation president. But no matter what, she never imagined that when they meet again, it will be in this way. Presto has completely transformed into someone she doesn't recognize. Hades's face suddenly showed some waves, and his eyes were hesitant for a moment. I seem to feel a familiar magic power right next to you, but I can't see her. Emoi nodded slightly. It's the 1st generation. She is next to me. Hades was startled. Mavis? She's here too. She has been by my side since I released the fairy's shine just now. Emoi responded in a low voice. He also felt a little regretful for no reason. Mavis is now in a ghost state, and only people with the fairy tale crest can see her. But at this time, Hades was no longer the Presto he once was. He had lost his faith in fairy tale, and naturally he could no longer see the original figure. President Presto, if Senior Warrod and the others could see you like this, how sad they would be. Emoi's calm words were like a cold sharp knife, stabbing Hades' heart hard enough to bleed. Hades had a sad smile on his face, as if he was mocking himself, and when he wanted to say something else, the devil's eye on the right suddenly shot out a cold light. A magic circle emerged under his feet, and even more terrifying magic power erupted from Hades' body without any warning. Heaven's executioner, Heaven's punishment. Different from the previous magic, this method is the forbidden magic in Chapter 4, Paragraph 12 of the Book of Ziraph, recreating the power of the devil in the hands of Hades. As the floor beneath your feet is swallowed up by purple-black magic, more and more unstable spells gradually emerge from it. Immediately, demons with teeth and claws appeared. Even Mavis's face was filled with astonishment. You can directly create demonic life. Hades's solemn face was emotionless, like a killing machine. He is still infusing magic power into the cursed seal on the ground, creating demons, and surrounding Emoi and Mavis beside him. Emoi sighed secretly. Hades has fallen too deep, and it is probably impossible to turn back before he is completely defeated. Emoi looked down. The light streaks on my arms have disappeared. In a short period of time, even if President Mavis is around, he will not be able to activate the 2nd fairy shine immediately. In the end, I still have to rely on my own strength to fight. But Emoi also knows, once the dragon-slaying power breaks out at this point in time, even if Hades is defeated, it is likely to attract an enemy more terrifying than him. Black Dragon, Acnologia. When soldiers come, they will block it, and when water comes, the soil will cover it up. The current situation does not allow for any further hesitation. If we don't use the power of Dragon Slayer, let alone save Arusha, I'm afraid even my life will be at stake here. The infinite fighting spirit emerged in Emoi's eyes again. The dragon-slaying pressure finally broke out, and his aura was no weaker than that of Presto in front of him. At this moment, he still holds the last trump card in his hand, which is the most mysterious dark crystal in the consciousness space. Once launched, you can transform into a dragon in a short time and inherit all the power of this dragon during its lifetime. But Emoi didn't plan to use the dark crystal to deal with Hades, but kept it as a layer of protection. If the next battle really attracts the black dragon Acnologia, the dark crystal is the last magic weapon to deal with it. Grandma Porlyusica said that the dark crystal is even more dangerous than the Senate's ultimate weapon. I wonder if it is really that powerful. But if Acnologia really comes to Tenro Island, leave everything to me. Feel the fluctuations of energy in the body. Since entering this world, after hundreds of battles, large and small, Emoi has already gained control of the Dragon Slayer crystal. As the final magic power surged out, 6 dragon-slaying crystals activated simultaneously in Mingzaoi's conscious space. At the same time, a few rays of light filtered through the broken windows of the airship. At sunset, the sun and moon shined together. Emoi's eyes were as bright as fire, and his arms were already wrapped by beams of 6 different colors. As the demons in front of them swarmed forward, the majestic dragon-slaying power suddenly broke out. The secret of dragon-slaying, dragon, Zhao Sun, and moon. The secret of dragon-slaying, dragon, Zhao Sun, and moon. The demons opened their mouths wide, and their ferocious figures surrounded them from all directions. Their roars were like thunder, and they rushed forward crazily. The dragon-killing power was suddenly released. The black dragon projection appeared from behind Emoi, charging with overwhelming force and a brilliant magic beam sweeping across the world. Ouch! Wherever the giant dragon passed, it was as if it was destroyed, and in an instant, the demon was wiped out in ashes. After the wailing, the desperate minions stretched out and returned to the darkness at their feet, with their numbers declining sharply. How is it possible? Hades looked horrified as he saw the dragon shadow in front of him swallowing the demon he had created with all his last magic power. There was a sudden feeling in my heart that the situation was over. As Emoi crossed his arms again and swung out, the dragon's body directly merged with the magic beam, and suddenly flew forward, instantly piercing Hades' body. Hades' eyes widened. There was still endless unwillingness in his eyes, and his body fell straight down. At the same time, the dotted line connecting Arusha and the purple heart lost its magical support and quietly disappeared. Boom! Taking so many hard hits, the airship was already riddled with holes, gradually lost control, and was about to fall to the ground. Walk! Emoi immediately took the magic power back into his body. He ran backwards quickly, grabbed the hands of Arusha and Melty next to him, looked at an exposed wall somewhere, and jumped directly down. There is no need to worry about the first-generation Mavis being in ghost state. But at this time, both of them didn't even have a trace of magic power on their bodies, and they were no different from ordinary people. Jump off the airship. Storm Dragon Wings. The fall is getting faster and faster. Fortunately, Emoi opened his wings in time and stopped in midair. Looking back, at this time, the airship in Devil's Heart had lost control and collapsed, smoking and falling into the sea. In midair, Mavis, who was suspended in the sky, stared blankly at the scene in front of him and couldn't help but ask, "Prisito, will he die?" Emoi shook his head gently. If it were an ordinary person, he would have died long ago. But after all, President Prisito relies on that heart to maintain his life. Whether he is alive or dead, I don't know. Mavis lowered her eyes, unable to conceal her disappointment. It's probably hard to survive anymore. The last blow you just gave was much stronger than the fairy's shine. Arusha was also immersed in shock at this moment. The little magician she was once ordered to assassinate, today actually forcibly defeated the president who was comparable to the 4 heavenly kings of Ishgar without destroying the Devil's Heart itself. She was even a little lucky to have met Emoi in the Haze Forest. Emoi also promised her that he would help her find her mother again. Judging from the current situation, Emoi is really not trying to make a fool of himself. He does have that ability. Arusha raised his head and stared at it quietly with his beautiful eyes, not knowing what to say for a moment. It would seem too perfunctory to simply say thank you. A long while. Mavis gradually came back to his senses and said softly, "Shall we go find everyone in the guild now? There is too much noise in the fighting here, and they may have noticed it." "You go ahead, Shode. I plan to stay here." Mavis couldn't help but feel a little confused. "Why are you still here when the battle is over?" "Shode, have you heard about Acnologia?" Mavis was stunned. Acnologia, the black dragon that no one could match 400 years ago. Emoi nodded bitterly. "If nothing else happens, the secret of dragon slaying just now will definitely attract the black dragon. If I go back, I'm afraid it will only affect other people." "Wait, how did you know the black dragon would come?" "This is very complicated to explain. First generation, in short, you go there by yourself first. I have to stay here." Emoi looked solemn, without any intention of joking. Slowly landed on the ground. Emoi turned to Arusha and said, "I originally planned to take you to find the other people involved in the witch's sin, but now you can only rely on yourself. Can you really face that black dragon again?" Arusha's eyes showed concern again. Although she has never seen a dragon, but through the dialogue between Emoi and the invisible first-generation president, one can also hear the deep fear. To make Emoi so cautious, that black dragon has probably reached a level of terror that she can't even imagine? You have to try to know whether you can face it or not. Emoi smiled helplessly and was about to use the wings of the storm dragon to return to the sky again. Mavis suddenly stretched out his arms and stood directly in front of him. "Come back with me. I also have a super magical fairy ball, which will definitely protect you." Fairy ball is the top defensive magic among the 3 magics of fairy tale. In a sense, it can indeed withstand the black dragon's blow. However, Mavis is in a ghost state. Even if she releases the fairy ball, the time and space in it will be completely frozen to prevent external attacks. If you want to unravel it again, I'm afraid it will take a full 7 years. Emoi doesn't want the tragedy of 7 years to happen again. When they returned to the guild, everything had changed. The other guild partners had suffered humiliation in the past 7 years, but they were still waiting. "No need, first generation. I attracted the black dragon, and I will face it alone." But what else did Mavis want to say? But a strange look suddenly flashed across Emoi's face. It's too late. The black dragon is coming soon. At the same time, The center of Tenro Island, the base of Fairy Tale. The candidates who participated in the assessment, the 3 S-class magicians and Makarov were gathering in the stronghold to rest. Many people were injured. Really, I was doing well in the assessment, but suddenly 3 inexplicable guys came in, saying they were from the Devil's Heart Guild and wanted to annihilate our guild. Yes, they are all talking nonsense. And they said that Emoi will switch sides and join them soon? Only a ghost can believe it. Speaking of which, have any of you seen Emoi? Damn it, that kid wouldn't take advantage of the fact that we were fighting the Devil's Heart to take the test secretly, right? So cunning. Makarov waved his hand irritably. Okay, this assessment has been suspended. Emoi probably encountered some strong opponent, so wait for him slowly. The commotion gradually stopped. As for the 3 members of the 7 families of Purgatory who were attacked by the Devil's Heart, they had been defeated by everyone before. Except for Emoi who has not yet returned, everyone else arrived at the stronghold safely, although they were injured. Natsu, what's wrong with you? Seeing that Natsu looked a little strange, Gildarts beside him suddenly asked. Natsu stood up and cast his gaze to the sky in the distance. I always have an uneasy feeling, as if something is about to happen. Me too. Wendy echoed in a low voice. The Dragon Slayer's perception is naturally stronger. Others couldn't help but become alert. It seems the wind is blowing. No, something terrible is flying over here. Everyone, get ready. Gildas suddenly shouted loudly and immediately stood up and got into a fighting stance. The strong wind swept over instantly. A huge shadow fell from midair. Everyone raised their heads, with infinite shock on their faces, and their eyes froze. What was in front of them was a huge black dragon that covered the sky and the sun. The dragon is really a dragon. This was the first time for many people to see this creature, and they were immediately shocked by its terrifying coercion, unable to move their bodies. Gildarts shouted to the side, Natsu, this is the dragon I mentioned to you, who forced me to give up my century-old mission. Will it know the whereabouts of Igneal? Even if it knows, it won't tell you? This black dragon is full of hostility to us, please protect yourself. Makarov looked the most nervous, always watching every move of the black dragon flying in the air, ready to grow in size at any time to resist. But the black dragon just passed by. It's like not seeing them. After a few seconds, he looked into the air again and saw that the black dragon had already flown into the distance. Everyone suddenly felt like they were surviving a disaster. I said, does this black dragon have bad eyesight? Just ignore us. Ignoring it is the best result, right? Obviously, even if we add up, we cannot be the opponent of this dragon. I didn't expect creatures like dragons to really exist. It feels so oppressive. Hey, I've told you before, I was raised by a dragon, and my father Igneal is stronger and more handsome than this black dragon. Gildas said nothing, silently watching the black dragon's back. The scene of meeting the black dragon for the first time is still fresh in my mind. In the 3rd year of his century-old mission, he encountered the black dragon. Almost in an instant, 1 arm and 1 leg were destroyed by the black dragon, and he was seriously injured. Gildas deeply realized that even he was just like an ant in front of this evil dragon, with no ability to resist. And now in the air, the direction the black dragon flies to is exactly where Emoi is. I can feel an extremely powerful dragon-slaying power from this direction. It can even threaten me. It must be completely destroyed. The southernmost part of Tenro Island. After stuffing a lot of food into his mouth, the magic power in Emoi's body began to gradually recover, although it is still far from the peak state. The wind howled. A look of panic suddenly appeared on Mavis's face, and her voice became trembling. I can feel that there is a very huge force approaching in this direction. As the first president of Fairy Tale, Mavis's consciousness has existed for more than 100 years, but she is extremely palpitating when she comes into contact with this terrifying magical atmosphere. There is no doubt that the only person in the entire world who can reach this level of power is the legendary Black Dragon, Acnologia. Emoi raised his head confidently, and the wings of the Storm Dragon appeared behind him. First generation, when I fight the Black Dragon later, I will try to stay as far away as possible to prevent it from spreading to Tianlang Island. You should be more careful. The last word came out. Under the watchful eyes of Arusha and others, Emoi jumped up, spread his wings and flew into the sky. The rise was just above the surrounding trees. Looking away, at a glance, Emoi saw the huge beast rushing towards him in the distance, a huge dragon that was completely black with strange blue stripes, and his pupils kept dilating. Just stay in midair. I felt tremendous pressure from Black Dragon, which was completely different from Presato. Emoi couldn't help but smacked his lips, and quickly flew away from Tianlang Island. This evil dragon is so menacing. It's better to keep some distance from it first. And the other side. The Black Dragon has obviously noticed Emoi as well. Through the breath just released, it has completely locked the target. The magician with wings in front of him is exactly the person it is looking for with the powerful power to destroy dragons. Roar. The roaring sound stopped the clouds. Acnologia flaps its black wings that cover the sky and speeds forward, unstoppable. Emoi felt the pressure coming from behind him getting heavier and heavier. As expected, it is the final boss, but now we are far away from Tenro Island, right? Just prepare to fight here. In the space of consciousness, the dark crystal seemed to be full of wisdom, and it began to become restless after hearing the roar of the Black Dragon. The 8 dragon-slaying crystals of different colors around it are rotating around, and each of them emits an energy beam to connect with it, delivering the final magic power. The dark crystal unknowingly accelerated its trembling frequency. Emoi looked down at his arms. It is completely different from the previous battles. The dragon-slaying power at this time has taken shape and no longer has the violent surge feeling before. On the contrary, it was ethereal and exceptionally quiet. A little black mist slowly seeped out from his body, indicating the activation of crystal magic. What a weird power, didn't I say I could transform into a dragon? Why haven't I changed physically yet? But the next moment, Emoi was about to deepen his consciousness to explore reality again, but he felt severe pain all over his body without any warning. The sudden tearing feeling seemed to swallow up every inch of skin on his body. Cold sweat broke out from his forehead. Emoi gritted his teeth and used his last strength to put his right arm against his chest, trying to find the location of the dark crystal in his body. This unusual behavior was naturally noticed by Heilong. Seeing Emoi suddenly stagnated in midair, his expression was painful. Although Acnologia had doubts in his heart, he never forgot his original goal when he arrived. He opened his bloody mouth and began to accumulate magic power. No matter what tricks this human wizard is playing, since his burst of dragon-slaying power once made him feel threatened, he must die. As the energy of the black hole in the black dragon's mouth continues to accumulate, under the black light, all living things seem to be extinguished at this moment. The dragon's breath suddenly shoots out forward, penetrating everything with a devastating force like a destructive death ray, destroying the world in an instant. In contrast, Emoi's human body looked extremely small and fragile in front of the black dragon's roar. It can be swallowed up in an instant, and not even the body will be left. Everyone who stayed on Tianlang Island also felt great pressure at this moment. Gildarts' face suddenly showed an unprecedented seriousness. It's the roar of the black dragon? Everyone use your magic power to protect yourself, be careful not to be affected. Arusha and others were closer, looking at Emoi's thin figure in the distance. Their beauty had already faded. I didn't even dare to look up again. Boom. The moment the dark magic wave touched Emoi's body, it set off thousands of layers of black mist, and the explosion shook the sky. Under the setting sun, as the black mist gradually dissipated, the arrogant look on Acnologia's dragon's head solidified at this moment, and his eyes flashed with confusion and shock. What? Follow the line of sight and look forward. The original location where Emoi stagnated. At this moment, there is another giant dragon that is completely black, and its size is exactly the same as Acnologia. The only different feature is that the black dragon transformed by Emoi does not have any blue stripes. Instead, it is on the chest and abdomen below the neck. A huge golden fairy tale coat of arms is engraved on it, shining brightly. The black dragon transformed by Emoi let out a long sigh of relief and looked at Acnologia with playful eyes. It was such a close call, but luckily I managed it at the last moment. Acnologia's ferocious dragon eyes were fixed on Emoi, and he showed a little fear like never before. Starting hundreds of years ago, he began to hunt dragons across the world, and his hands were stained with countless blood. But the dragon in front of him was the only opponent that he felt threatened 100 years ago. Is it the black dragon Yakut? Didn't I already swallow all the flesh and blood from its body? How could it still be alive? There is a difference in the breath. Yakut is indeed dead. I don't know where this kid learned the tricks to change it into what it looked like in life. After confirming again and again, a long while, Acnologia finally opened his mouth and made a low sound. I don't remember when this continent had a dragon slayer wizard of this level who could transform into a dragon. Who are you? The sound reaches my ears. Emoi was stunned at first. I almost forgot that Acnologia can actually talk, but he just doesn't bother talking to weak humans. Now he actually takes the initiative to ask about his identity? Before Emoi could respond, Acnologia's eyes suddenly surged with murderous intent, and he shot directly in front of him. Your existence has threatened the order of this world. Therefore, it is better to die in my hands. The nest is tender and stacked. Acnologia didn't say hello when he came up, but started attacking at 0 frame. Emoi scolded him fiercely. Who told this guy not to respect martial ethics in the first place? As the sharp claws of the black dragon danced through the air, Emoi was also not to be outdone, and swung his iron fist heavily, confronting him head-on. The clash between the two dragons swept across the world, fists and claws collided, the sky changed dramatically, and the sea beneath our feet stirred up waves. Roar. Acnologia let out an angry roar from his throat. If an ordinary human being approached like Emoi now, he would probably be heartbroken on the spot. Seeing that the head-on confrontation failed to gain any advantage, a strange black mist suddenly filled the mouth of the black dragon. He seized the opportunity and bit Emoi's neck. The sharp dragon's teeth shone coldly in the setting sun. At the critical moment, Emoi quickly turned his body half a circle to dodge. After avoiding the attack, he stretched out his heavy feet and kicked the black dragon hard on the face. AFKU. Normally, Emoi still takes personal qualities into consideration, but the current situation is special. Although he transformed into a dragon and briefly gained strength, his consciousness could not immediately adapt to such an intense battle. After all, the opponent is the top boss in the world. Emoi put all his energy into the battle, never slacking off for a second, and his emotions had been suppressed for a long time. Besides, no one heard me, so what happened if I cursed a few words? After the blow, Acnologia's figure instantly fell a lot in the air, shaking his head, and seemed to be a little confused. Have a bad day. Emoi was overjoyed. Before the opponent could react, he immediately activated his magic power again and dived forward and downwards like an arrow from a string. Emoi understands that it is better to cut off one finger than to hurt 10 of them. His target was very clear, it was Acnologia's right arm. As long as one arm is broken, even if it cannot be destroyed this time, its power will be greatly weakened to a certain extent. On the other hand, Acnologia's eyes became more sinister at this time, staring closely at Emoi who was shooting from ahead. On the palms, black magic light groups emerged. It also has a target. Then for you human magicians, this pattern on your chest should have a very important meaning, right? At the moment when Emoi rushed down like a broken bamboo, Acnologia exerted force at the same time, and the dragon's claws suddenly erupted with terrifying magic power, exploding directly in front of Emoi's chest. Boom! Emoi's figure rushed out of the smoke and dust of the explosion. And in his mouth, he was holding a bloody dragon claw at the moment, which was Acnologia's right arm. Acnologia suddenly let out a shrill roar, and for a moment, his body still vaguely lost balance and tilted to one side. But there was no joy of victory in Emoi's eyes. He looked down at himself. The golden fairy tale emblem, which was still shining on the chest, was hit by Acnologia's blow in the firefight just now. It was already shattered and eclipsed. For a moment, Emoi was silent. Obviously, the emblem can still appear on the body after transforming into a dragon, which is influenced by the human body. But now the coat of arms was damaged along with his chest and abdomen. Even if he regains his human form, he will probably leave permanent scars on his body and lose the glory of his original coat of arms. Did you destroy the fairy tale crest? Emoi's eyes suddenly flashed back to the scene of the first day he joined Fairy Tale, when he arrived at this noisy guild under the guidance of Makarov. Still under Mirajana's guidance, he printed the Fairy Tale logo on his chest. But at this moment, the coat of arms was completely destroyed. A long while, Emoi raised his head coldly and threw his mouth and broken arms into the sea like trash. Looking at Acnologia who was still hovering in the air, endless murderous intent suddenly surged in his eyes. The dragon has reverse scales, which will kill you if you touch it. If a phoenix has a weak neck, the offender will perish. The light of the sun and moon meet again on the body. The furious Emoi, in the black dragon form, once again activated the 6 crystals in his body, and a beam of light emerged at this moment, pouring out the final magic power. The secret of dragon slaying, dragon, Zhao Sun, and moon. Under the black dragon form, all magic spells are enhanced to the greatest extent. At this moment, the power that Emoi unleashed when he used the 6 dragon mysteries was countless times greater than when he faced Hades. Acnologia even smelled the breath of death for a moment. It is impossible for ordinary magic to cause harm to him, but the other party is a genuine dragon slayer, and the magic power in his hands is not inferior to his own at all. Roar. After a hoarse roar, Acnologia also exploded with magic power, forming a black barrier around himself to resist the impact of the dragon slaying secret. The two forces of magic collided offensively and defensively, and a huge wave was set off beneath their feet. The wave even threatened to completely engulf Tianro Island. Go to hell. The black barrier suddenly shattered. Although Acnologia has little ability to resist at this moment, Emoi's physique has also reached its limit and can no longer squeeze out a trace of magic power. 6 dragon-slaying light pillars fell. What followed was Emoi's body swooping down, and the sharp dragon claw slapped Acnologia's neck hard, venting the anger in his heart. Black mist spread from the wound. Just as he was about to continue attacking one blow after another, a strange aura suddenly poured into his mind. Subconsciously, he raised his head and suddenly discovered that there seemed to be a fiery red storm surging beside the sunset in the distance. What is that? The storm was filled with extremely violent and strange energy, but it was extremely fast. He arrived at his side in an instant, wrapping Emoi and Acnologia in his arms. Acnologia Adam cursed under him. Idiot! This is a time and space storm? Your attack just now was too powerful and it has torn open the time rift that originally existed in the world. Time crack. Emoi suddenly remembered. When she first met Sister Lei in the Haze Forest, she mentioned it to herself. Due to his appearance, a new space-time rift has been added to the world. As long as there is no human intervention, it will generally not have any impact. But in the current battle with Acnologia, it was clear that an unimaginable amount of magic had erupted, and the cracks in space and time were also affected, causing an energy storm. Emoi looked down at the black dragon. If I remember correctly, this guy eats everything, and can convert most magic into magic power and eat it into his body, even including time cracks and time and space storms. Although the black dragon was seriously injured at this time, he no longer had the strength to kill it completely. Available immediately. Acnologia, who didn't want to sit still and wait for death, opened his bloody mouth and began to crazily swallow the power of the time and space storm. I am the king of dragons, there is no way I will die here. Roar. In this way, Acnologia avoids the danger of being caught in the storm, and at the same time can recover a large amount of magic power. This is not the way to go. We can't let this guy recover. Although Emoi himself turned into a black dragon without attributes, the 8 dragon-slaying magics that he uses most easily are his. Although Time Storm can be eaten to replenish magic power, it is obviously not as fast as Acnologia's recovery speed. Emoi raised his head. fly in the direction of the spacetime storm. Above the orange-red sky, a black crack was faintly cut, just above Tianlang Island. A bad idea immediately popped into my head. Is that a spacetime rift? I wonder what wonderful chemical reactions will happen if these storms are forced back. At the same time, two extremely violent energies are superimposed together. Even if you can eat Acnologia, you will probably have to burst a layer of belly. Think of this. Emoi suddenly grinned and opened his mouth to inhale a large amount of the power of the spacetime storm into his body. After a brief recovery of strength, he suddenly stretched out his arms to hug Acnologia, who was eating like crazy, and then waved his wings and soared into the sky. The power of the spacetime storm surged around the two dragons, and the direction he was flying to was the mysterious crack in time. Acnologia immediately realized Emoi's dangerous move, struggled hard and shouted, "You lunatic! You actually want to fly directly into the crack with the spacetime storm? Let me go. Save your energy. Otherwise, be careful if you get in or out later." Emoi smiled slightly. Use the last of your strength to send Acnologia's huge body, himself and the raging energy storm into the time rift. He lowered his head and looked at the Tenro Island below him. At some point, everyone from the guild had gathered here. Guild leader Makarov, Urza, Myra Jane, the rest of the guild, the first-generation Mavis, and Uridia. Perhaps they had already seen it when he transformed into a dragon. Emoi thought to himself. Catch the scarf, Emoi, we must come back alive. A white scarf floated through the air and landed directly on his dragon's claws, making it look particularly small. Natsu. Seeing Naz flying towards him not far away, being led by Happy, Emoi couldn't help but be startled. This white scarf was the most precious thing given to Natsu by the fire dragon Igneel, and he always wore it at all times. At this moment, it was thrown directly over. Natsu put his hands to his mouth and continued to shout loudly, "Hey, do you hear that? I have to come back alive? I will beat you up until you tell me the whereabouts of Igneel." Emoi smiled faintly, and the belief in living towards death suddenly ignited in his heart. It's true, I can't die either. Cobra's innocence has not been restored, Arusha's mother is still waiting for me to save her, and Natsu's scarf must be returned. Also, if the beast Acnologia is caught in the crack, it probably won't die cleanly, it might even be stronger. Next time we meet, we must kill it completely. As the two black dragons were swept away by the storm of time and space, they finally swarmed into the cracks of time. At this moment, the sea returned to tranquility. Only Natsu and Happy were left in the air. Happy, you think, can he come back? Oh, don't worry, Emoi is stronger than Gildarts, he just dealt with a smelly dragon, he will come back sooner or later. And what no one noticed was, at the same time, in a corner of Tianro Island, a handsome young man with black hair also took in the scene in front of him. His eyes wavered slightly. 3 days later, Makarov finally endured the pain and gave the order to leave Tenro Island and return to the Fairy Tale Guild. On the ship, everyone's eyes were trying their best to look into the distance, trying to see Emoi's safe return at the last moment. In the end, he returned disappointed. The next day, Emoi's funeral was held in Magnolia. There were dark clouds and thunder rolling that day. The cold wind brought a biting chill. Everyone in the Fairy Tale Guild was wearing black mourning clothes. Under the pouring rain, it was impossible to tell whether the rain or tears on everyone's face was. Afterwards, Urza took out all her luggage from the girls' dormitory and moved it to the villa where Emoi once lived. Even though she was the only one living there at this time, there is always a lamp in the living room for lighting at night. Urza still retained the last glimmer of hope in her heart. Her lover may never come back, maybe he will come back tomorrow. Mileage devoted all her love to the toddler Mina, and she was determined to take good care of the child she had brought back with Emoi. Everyone and everything in the guild seems to be gradually getting back on track. At the same time, another corner of the world, Emoi opened his misty eyes and felt as if he was riding on a carriage, moving forward with slight bumps. Where am I? Vision has not fully recovered yet. A woman's voice of surprise immediately sounded in my ears. Kagura, come and take a look. This person is awake. Well, as long as he's not dead. A cold girl's voice came from the other side. Wait. Kagura? Before Emoi could continue to think about it, a pair of gentle arms had already supported his back and helped him sit up. What caught his eye was a woman wearing a spider silk patterned tights, with an extremely slender figure. I didn't expect you to wake up. When I saw you on the roadside, my heartbeat almost stopped. When we first met, my name is Alanya, and I am the mage of Mermaid Heel. Mermaid's Heel. Memories flooded my mind. Emoi tried hard to recall the scene before coma. He fought with Acnologia, but the result was only a draw, and eventually they were both involved in the crack. Could it be after that? Was he transported by the time and space storm to the town where the Mermaid Heel Guild is located? Emoi's eyes gradually became shiny, and he smiled back. Thank you, my name is Emoi. Alanya waved her hand. Half an hour ago, you were lying on the roadside. I didn't even notice you when I passed by. Fortunately, Kagura has sharp eyes, so I noticed you. Besides, you were naked at that time, not even wearing any clothes. Emoi was stunned and subconsciously swept towards his body. Fortunately, Natsu's white scarf is still there, just enough to cover Emoi's eye. Speaking of which, my original clothes should have been torn when I transformed into a dragon, right? Here, put your clothes on first. As the carriage door curtain opened, a black cloak was thrown directly over Emoi raised his head. The girl in front of her was wearing an exquisite white dress, with long purple-black hair hanging down to her waist like a waterfall. The delicate melon seed face has clear contours, the eyebrows are as dark as black, and the slightly raised eyebrows reveal a touch of imperceptible arrogance. The little girl is obviously very beautiful, but her face is as cold as frost, always giving her a feeling of being repelled thousands of miles away. A smile immediately appeared on Alanya's face. Kagura, you are here. Well, we'll reach Conch Bay in 10 minutes. I'll know the rest of the way. Kagura nodded slightly and sat next to Alanya, but still remained unsmiling. Immediately he looked at Emoi, who was wearing a cloak haphazardly on his body, with a slight surprise in his beautiful eyes. She had already checked Emoi's injuries before taking him into the carriage. There were more than a dozen wounds, large and small, all over his body, and they didn't even look like injuries that humans could cause. Even during the coma, breathing and heartbeat became very weak for a time. Kagura was originally worried about whether Emoi could survive until he was sent to the hospital, but she didn't expect that he would have regained consciousness on the carriage. You can wake up so quickly? If I'm not mistaken, you are also a pretty powerful magician, right? Emoi smiled incredulously, not forgetting to put Natsu's scarf around his neck as well. It's too much trouble. If I hadn't been discovered by you, I would have been snatched away by the wild beasts in the mountains. A flash of meaning flashed in Kagura's eyes. We don't have beasts here, only demons. Demon. Emoi suddenly became excited. Alanya next to her sighed softly, and said anxiously, don't be anxious, I will tell you slowly. Alas, our town Conch Bay has never stopped since a few years ago. Especially in recent days, demons have been particularly rampant and often attack travelers and residents in towns. This is not the first time I have encountered a situation like yours. But you are lucky to survive. Apparently, she and Kagura had regarded Emoi as an innocent passerby attacked by a demon. Emoi didn't explain anything further and chose the default. After all, transforming into a dragon is too nonsense. Even if they say it, they will definitely not believe it, and they might even have to send themselves to Linki. There was still no smile on Kagura's face, and he continued, after this period of investigation and crusade, we found that these demons seem to be organized, just like human guilds. Their organization is called the Evil Spirit Temple. The words fell. The look on Emoi's face was even more stunned. Temple of Evil Spirits? Isn't that the demon guild that he and Myra Jane met in Garrick Village before? Before killing their leader Anna Shillong, he seemed to have heard the other party reveal some information. The Evil Spirit Temple located in Garrick Village is just a branch, and their real headquarters is located in the southern kingdom of Fiori. It's probably here at Conch Bay. Moreover, the Evil Spirit Temple seems to have a darker background, one of the 3 giants of Balam Alliance, the Gate of Hades. Emoi carefully recalled the details of the original battle. There is only one demon in Gluck Village, Anase Yulong, and the rest are the humans he enslaved with his spells. If Conch Bay is their headquarters, perhaps, the Evil Spirit Temple here will be like the Gate of Hades, a guild composed entirely of demons. Sensing the strangeness in Emoi's eyes, Kagura asked doubtfully, what's wrong? Have you heard about the Evil Spirit Temple? No, it's nothing. Emoi answered vaguely. Seeing that they didn't ask again, Emoi also remained silent and closed his eyes. The mind jumps into the conscious space, looking from a distance. In the darkness, 8 crystal lights of different colors were still shining in front. Emoi immediately felt at ease. Fortunately, although I was seriously injured in the time and space storm, these 8 dragon-slaying crystals were not damaged, and the magic power recovery speed is still as fast as before. Vision shift. In the center of the 8 crystals, there is a vaguely unstable black mist jumping around, as if it lacks something to restrain it and is ready to move. Emoi rubbed his chin and thought, this should be the remnants of the dark crystal after transforming into a dragon, right? Although it is a disposable item, judging from its current state, it seems to still retain some of its magic power. If conditions permit, maybe we can find a container for this magic power. Maybe we can transform into a dragon again? Then when we meet Acnologia again, we won't just be happy. Everything inside the body is stable. Emoi simply sat down in the consciousness space and felt the magical resonance with the 8 dragon-slaying crystals to speed up the healing of his injuries. The crystals rotated, transmitting shining beams one after another, irradiating into his body. The pain and fatigue of the wound are gradually eliminated. Time passed by minute by minute. The silent space of consciousness was suddenly broken by a frightening voice from the outside world. Kagura, why is the horse suddenly frightened? There is something going on outside, please stay here and don't come out. Emoi suddenly opened his eyes from reality, but she saw that Kagura had jumped out of the carriage, and Alanya stared at her back with worry on her face. At the same time, a familiar smell flowed into his nose, causing Emoi to frown. This disgusting smell. I also smelled it on Anna Shillong. Are the guys outside the same species as him? Speaking of which, this year is still X784, right? There are still 7 years to go before the great magic battle in X791. No wonder Kagura looks even more immature than I remember. She hasn't grown up yet at this time, so she might be at a disadvantage when facing the devil. Halfway up a hill not far from the carriage, the girl Kagura's eyes were cold, and she held the sword tightly in her right hand, ready to attack at any time. And what appeared before her eyes? It was a gray-haired man with a twisted and ferocious face, and a strange aura emanating from his body, which made people shudder. He was obviously not a normal human being. Devil, Desirek. Kagura stared at the other person intently, already recognizing his identity. According to the investigation during this period, the demon in front of him is none other than the leader of the Dark Guild, Desai, who has been constantly attacking Konkbei. Compared to the nervous and fearful Kagura, Desai licked his dry lips, glanced over Kagura unscrupulously, and showed a smile that was uglier than crying. Miss Kagura, are you surprised to see me here? Kagura's face darkened. The Mermaid Heel Guild is located on the edge of town, only a few minutes' drive away. There are hundreds of magicians in the guild. Desai was at this point, blocking his way back single-handedly. No matter how he thought about it, he felt something was wrong. Isn't he afraid that Mermaid Heel's reinforcements will arrive and be surrounded? Unless... A look of horror suddenly appeared on Kagura's face. Where are your men? Are they going to attack the Mermaid Heel Guild? GG. Desai let out a few ghostly laughs, with a stern look in his eyes. I have been preparing for a long time, waiting for you to leave Konkbei. If everything goes well, the demon army under my command has already begun to attack the Mermaid Heel in a big way, right? As long as I get rid of you, your guild will be nothing more than a piece of loose sand. A drop of cold sweat slid down Kagura's forehead. Although he was still confronting the devil on the surface, he had lost some control in his heart. She had fought against Desai in the past. She tried her best but could only get a 50-50 draw with him. Most of the time, the opponent even had the upper hand. But now his guild has been attacked by other demons. If he can't solve it quickly, the consequences will be disastrous. Don't be afraid of the form of Daiqian sword. After a brief hesitation, Kagura gritted her silver teeth and rushed forward with a single lunge, swinging the unsheathed sword into the air and slashing it towards Desai. Clang. It was only a few centimeters away from Desai's head, but it was blocked by two black and withered demon giant hands, and the sword could not make any more cuts. The pressure generated was directly transmitted to the feet of the two people, and the ground cracked instantly. Kagura, let me help you. Alanya's call came from behind. Kagura had no time to separate, and immediately shouted, don't come over. You are no match for him, get back to the mermaid's heels first. As the magic power continues to be poured into the sword. However, Kagura's expression became increasingly labored, unable to break through for a while. Desai suddenly showed a playful look on his face, as if he had discovered some secret. You just said, you guys? If I guessed correctly, there should be your companion in the carriage, right? Is she too scared to come out? Oops. Kagura suddenly felt something bad in her heart. Emoi has just woken up after being seriously injured. If he becomes the target of Desai's attack, he will probably die. Although Emoi was just rescued and brought into the carriage by himself. But if he was targeted and killed by a demon because of this, Kagura himself would not be able to forgive himself. Miss Kagura, there is no room for distraction when fighting. Desai suddenly laughed sinisterly, and immediately took out his right paw, which had been accumulating magic power for a long time, and aimed at Kagura's chest and struck hard. From the very beginning, Desai's target was only her. The so-called attack on her companion was just a cover to lure her into being deceived. Mermaid Heel's strongest combat power is Kagura. As long as she is taken down, it will be easy to annihilate the entire guild. Kagura. Alanya in the distance had already turned pale, and rushed forward like crazy. He tried to block Desai's attack at the last moment, but was forced to take another step forward by the pressure of his spell. Kagura frowned, and tried to raise the hand holding the sword to resist again, but was also suppressed by Desai. The victory or defeat of a battle often only occurs in a split second. If you are slightly distracted, the magic aura is overwhelmed by the opponent, and it will be difficult to counterattack. The violent curse power would soon attack his body. Kagura pursed her lips and closed her eyes in despair. Is the end of Mermaid Heel coming? In a daze, a golden light suddenly flashed in front of Kagura's eyes, and time seemed to stand still at this moment. As expected, the fatal blow that he should have received did not come. His eyes opened dimly. The scene before her eyes made her even more unbelievable. The devil's claw that Desai raised high was actually held by a magician wearing a black cloak with one hand. As the blazing flames on the cloaked man's palm ignited more and more intensely, the demon's spell power disappeared little by little. Emoi. The black cloak blew in the wind. Kagura finally realized that the one who blocked the attack for her was Emoi, who had just woken up from a coma after being seriously injured. Alanya in the distance was also shocked. But seeing that Kagura was fine, the big stone in my heart fell to the ground temporarily. You. On the other hand, Desai's face was getting uglier and uglier at this time. He stared at Emoi and was about to ask. The severe burning sensation is transmitted directly along the arm to the whole body, and it is excruciatingly painful. A heartbreaking howl came from his throat. Desai looked in horror and found that the right side of his body was empty and his entire arm had been burned to ashes. You, who are you? According to the original plan, as long as Kagura is separated from the rest of the guild, he can split up with the demon minions under his command and take down the mermaid's heel in one fell swoop. When Kagura left Konkbei, she was also under Desai's surveillance. But when did such a monster magician appear beside her? In just one face-to-face encounter, the other party can easily cut off one of his arms with the help of flames. His strength is not on the same level at all. Desai already regretted it in his heart at this moment. If he could have known in advance that Emoi would appear out of thin air, he would never have continued to attack the mermaid's heel. Now, whether we can leave alive or not is a question. As the fire in Emobai's hand decreased significantly, a cold voice reached Disalok's ears. Now, let me ask you some questions about the evil spirit temple and demons. If there's any answer that I'm not satisfied with, I'm afraid it won't just burn off an arm. Do you understand? Disalok immediately nodded frantically like a chicken pecking at rice. A flattering smile appeared on his face, and he wanted to say a few words of flattery. But when he saw Emobai's cold eyes, he immediately shut up. Where is the headquarters of the Temple of Evil Spirits? This. Emobai hit the nail on the head and directly caught the most important issue. Disalok rolled his eyes and wanted to make a few quibbles, but he noticed that the flames on Emobai's palms were rekindling, and he quickly changed his words and answered honestly. The headquarters is in the western mountainous area of Kongbei, sir. Emobai nodded slightly. How many people are there in the guild? About 400 to 500, no humans, all demons. They should all be attacking the mermaid's heels now. When Kagura next to him heard this, his face immediately showed an anxious look, and he was about to rush forward to ask for details. Emobai waved his hand gently, signaling her to calm down temporarily. Kagura bit her red lips lightly, and finally chose to remain silent. Without Emobai, I'm afraid he would have been seriously injured by Disalok in the previous battle. It's better to listen to him now. Emobai paused and then continued to ask, I have met a demon named Ana Serong before, and his aura is similar to yours. Do you know him? Ana Shirutaka. Hearing this name, a strange light suddenly flashed in Disalok's eyes. Sir, Anase Yulong. Killed by me. This result was quite expected. Disalok was afraid that Emobai would run out of patience, so he immediately said, Anase Long and I are two shadow messengers of the evil spirit temple, each commanding a part of the devil's subordinates. It's just that a year ago, he ran away from the guild for some reasons, and I don't know what happened after that. No wonder the auras on these two people are equally disgusting. There really is some connection. The information he mentioned is generally consistent with what Emobai has learned. At the headquarters of the evil spirit temple, is there anyone more powerful than you two? The words fell. A look of panic suddenly appeared in Disalok's eyes, as if he thought of something terrible, and his voice became trembling. Originally, there was none. But a year ago, news suddenly came from the Gate of Hades, saying that a female demon would be sent to take over everything in the evil spirit temple. Emobai frowned. The Temple of Evil Spirits is a subordinate guild of the Dark Guild Gate of Hades. It's not surprising that some powerful demons were sent here. As for him being so scared, is that female demon very powerful? Disalok was in a daze for a moment. His throat seemed to be tightly strangled by an invisible hand, and it took a long time before he managed to squeeze out some sounds. She is the head of the 9 ghost gates of Hades, and is affiliated with Xingtian Quanghua. The day after Quanghua arrived at the evil spirit temple, he sacrificed most of the demons in the guild to Ziref in the name of starting a dark ritual. It was at that time that Ana Shalong disobeyed her orders and fled all the way to the north. Emobai's eyes also had slight waves. Although most of the demons in the world were created by Ziref to kill him, but a considerable number of them have their own thoughts, and like human beings, they begin to cherish their lives. The group of demons at the Gate of Hades are different. Not only are they powerful, they are also fanatical believers of Ziref and are willing to sacrifice their lives for Ziref at any time. It is normal for Disalok to be afraid. After all, the difference in strength between him and the 9 ghost sect is too great. Last question, why did Quanghua come to the Temple of Evil Spirits from the Gate of Hades? What does she want to do? Disalok said uneasily. I don't know about that. Ever since that dark ritual, everyone has been living in fear, and no one dares to ask. And in the past year, Quanghua doesn't seem to have any special movements. He only occasionally sends out some men, seemingly trying to find something in Kongbei. Looking for something. Emobai thought for a moment, but also couldn't figure out what Quanghua's purpose was. But as the saying goes, meeting is fate. Since we could meet their members 7 years before Operation Gate of Hades, it would be better to deal with them quickly and save them from trouble later. However, I looked at Kagura, who was still thinking about the guild. The first step now is to help them. Seeing that Emobai had finished asking all the questions and the murderous intent in his eyes gradually receded, Disalok was secretly happy and asked tentatively, Sir, I will take you over to the Mermaid Heel. As long as I give the order, they will never dare to act recklessly again. No need, I will solve it. Disalok suddenly realized that something was wrong in Emobai's words. Only then did he realize that his left palm, which was secretly hidden behind his back, was igniting explosive flames again. Go and reunite with your good brother. The flames mercilessly bombarded Disalok's body, and Disalok's face was full of unwillingness. His dry mouth opened extremely wide, but he only made a weak roar. All of a sudden, there was only a piece of blackened charcoal left on the ground. Emobai immediately turned his head, looked at the shocked Kagura and Alanya again, and smiled kindly. It's been a long time. Can I go back to the guild with you to support? Kagura breathed a long sigh of relief, looked at Emobai with a little more respect, and said solemnly, Thank you. It's just that when I was fighting the devil just now, the horse got frightened and ran away. You may need to run back. Emobai shook his head gently. No, running is too slow. Come over and hold on to my arm. Kagura and Alanya looked at each other. Although they didn't understand what Emobai meant, they still did it. Storm Dragon Wings. As the dragon-slaying crystal in the body activated, the dazzling dragon wings quietly bloomed from the back, soaring into the sky. By the time the two women reacted, the mountains at their feet had already retreated rapidly, and the outline of the Mermaid Heel Guild could already be seen in front of them. But what surprised them the most was the terrifying strength displayed by Emoi. Not only does it recover at an astonishing speed, it can even instantly kill the demon leader that has been bothering the mermaid for a long time, and now it can even grow a pair of wings and fly. What kind of monster is this magician who was attacked by a demon on the roadside? Conch Bay, the mermaid's heel. The once gorgeous guild buildings were now in ruins and dilapidated by the constant destruction of demons. Everyone, hold on, we must not let the devil continue to wreak havoc in our guild. As Rusalai shouted, she joined her palms together to summon a gravity magic circle, which immediately suppressed the large alien demon in front of her and made it unable to move. The girl next to her, Bess, took advantage of this opportunity and threw a carrot bomb without hesitation, exploding it instantly at the demon's side. Boom! Smoke and dust filled the air. The demon standing in front of him screamed, and then stopped moving. But there was no trace of relaxation on their faces. Look around. Dozens of magicians in the guild were trying their best to resist the demon, and many of them were injured. What they had just killed was just the tip of the iceberg. The two of them looked troubled. If you continue like this, sooner or later you will be completely captured by the devil. Everyone, we are late. The familiar girl's voice came from midair, immediately attracting everyone's attention. After seeing the figure in midair, everyone's faces showed a look of ecstasy. Kagura? And Alanya. Wait, who is the person who brought them back? Can he also use flying magic? First deal with the situation in front of you? Anyway, when Kagura comes back, the devils won't even think about stepping into the guild again. Although his qualifications are not old, Kagura has become the strongest magician recognized by everyone since joining Mermaid Heel. As long as she is present, everyone will be filled with fighting spirit. As Emoi landed smoothly, he turned to look at Kagura beside him and said, I will guard the outside, and I will leave it to you to enter the guild area. Be safe. Kagura hurriedly left a word, turned around, raised the sword, and stood together with Rusalai and others. Gravity magic. The magic circle emerged from the earth again. Compared with the gravity magic that Rusalai had cast before, it was obviously more powerful at this moment. Almost all the demons in the hall were restricted in their movements and stuck in place. The opportunity has come. The other guild members seized this opportunity and used their powerful magic to hit the demon mercilessly. Now I don't care whether it will destroy the guild building, just annihilate the enemies first. In an instant, huge magical energy surged here, until the last magic ripples dissipated, and no demon could stand up alive in the guild hall. The exhausted magicians finally breathed a sigh of relief, and many of them even went limp and collapsed directly on the ground. Finally managed to hold on. Rusalai couldn't help but ask, Kagura, who is the person who brought you back? Emoi, I picked it up on the road. Rusalai has black lines all over her head. Although Kagura has a good personality and has always been keen on helping other people in the guild, she is extremely resolute in doing things. When speaking, words are cherished like gold. Not at all like how a girl of this age should behave. There are so many demons out there, can he handle them alone? I believe him. Outside the guild, Emoi turned around. As early as hovering in the air, he had already roughly figured out the situation here. The girls in the Mermaid Heel Guild have good strategies. They have been defending the outside of the guild in a manner similar to a human wall, trying not to let in a single demon to avoid being double-teamed. But the number of demons was too great, and they came one after another, even destroying the buildings directly. This led to a small breakdown in the situation. However, looking around, there are still only a few demons that have invaded the guild, and most of them are still outside. Hiss. Staring at the various grotesque demons surrounding him from all directions, most of them were only half a meter tall. Emoi narrowed his eyes slightly, and violent dragon-slaying power emitted from his body. It seems like they are just some of the lowest-level demons who can't even speak. Thunder and electric arcs entangled around the body, making sporadic electric explosion sounds, signaling danger. However, these alien demons who are not yet fully intelligent can't understand this. They bare their fangs like a death squad and rush to Emoi to bite him. Thunder Dragon's collapse fist. A punch filled with magic power suddenly swung out, hitting the little devil in front of him directly in the face. But the power of thunder did not continue to explode on this demon. After completely seizing its life breath, he immediately used it as the center and split dozens of lightning chains in all directions. The lightning chain quickly wandered between the venues, and every demon hit by it was struck by strong thunder at the moment of contact, killing one by one. Outside the guild, in the blink of an eye, the demon corpses covered the entire street in a radiating pattern, and their number plummeted. Emoi breathed a sigh of relief. It's too troublesome to fight one by one. Moreover, the Thunder Dragon is too powerful. Killing one with one punch feels like a waste of magic power. It is better to use this method of dispersing magic power and directly clear the field with AoE. Now, the dozen or so surviving demons finally realized the danger of Emoi, and unconsciously moved away from them, turned around and ran away. Emoi turned over his palms casually. Several thunderbolts were released from the fingertips, hitting the fleeing alien again at extremely fast speeds. Apart from him, there are no other creatures on the field. Knock off. Emoi subconsciously wrapped Naz's scarf around his neck. Turning around, he saw the female wizards from Mermaid Heel standing in front of the ruins of the guild, staring at him blankly. Is this the end? There were hundreds of demons, and you collected them all at once? Kagura quickly rushed out of the crowd, her cold and pretty face showing a rare warmth, and asked with concern. You're not hurt? Emoi smiled and asked directly, what do you think? Kagura obviously paid attention to the scene just now. As early as when she killed Desiruk, she realized that Emoi was very strong, even stronger than all the magicians in Mermaid Heel combined. But he didn't expect that hundreds of difficult demons would be like a mob in front of him, and he would kill them all in a flash. Kagura lowered her head, and unconsciously got closer to Emoi, whispering, thank you, not only for saving me, but also for saving our entire guild. Fortunately, it's easy to do, it doesn't take much effort. Slowly walking towards the female wizards of the Mermaid Heel Guild in front, Emoi was about to raise his arm to say hello. Ruzalai suddenly shouted in the crowd. Sisters, Kagura kidnapped a man and returned. Emoi almost spit out a mouthful of old blood and looked at Kagura resentfully. Do you usually chat like this? A rare blush appeared on Kagura's face. She changed her usual cold look and apologized again and again. I'm sorry, everyone is really used to being unorganized in the guild. Don't take it to heart. The words have not yet finished. The girls from the guild had already rushed out and curiously gathered the two of them in the center. Kagura, where did you bring this handsome guy back from? I heard from Alanya, your name is Emoi, right? Hihi, do you have a boyfriend? You are stupid. Since it was Kagura who brought him back, then the two of them must have developed teeth. I have long said that their departure from Conch Bay is definitely not just to carry out a commission. Could it be that we had a kiss by the way? He was so handsome when he used lightning magic to defeat the devil just now. The Mermaid Heel Guild is called the Dancer of the Sea. It is a very special guild, and all its members are girls. Emoi was surrounded by so many girls at one time. Perhaps due to the battle just now, most of their clothes were more or less damaged, and large areas of their snow-white skin were exposed. Occasionally, I would accidentally touch some soft parts, which made the other person angry for a while, but there was no intention of blaming him. I have never had this experience in fairy tale. Okay, everyone disperse. Emoi is a guest who has helped our guild. If you have anything to say, we can go back first. Although the girls were still joking about the two of them just a moment ago. However, Kagura still has a lot of weight in speaking in the guild. As soon as he said this, the girls surrounding him immediately dispersed, making way for Emoi to lead to the main hall of the guild. Please. Although it is the main hall, it is completely open air at this moment. The roof was lifted off, the walls were damaged and crumbling, and broken tables and chairs were scattered everywhere. Only Mermaid's Heels Guild logo is still hanging in the center of the load-bearing wall, still standing. However, the girls didn't seem to care about these external conditions. They sat directly on the ground in a circle, chatting and laughing, celebrating their hard-won victory. Ruzalai walked over with a smile and sat next to Emoi and Kagura. Brother Emoi, a drink or a drink? Just drinks, thank you. Passing the orange juice to Emoi, a sly look flashed across Ruzalai's face, and she immediately picked up the wine glass in her hand and said loudly, Sisters, it was Emoi who saved our entire guild today. Let's toast him together. Come and pay respects to the handsome boy Emoi. As the girls raised their glasses, Emoi also stood up and drank the orange juice in the glass. Look around. This harmonious and cheerful atmosphere vaguely resembles the feeling of being in fairy tale. I wonder how Urza and Natsu are doing now. They are thousands of miles apart and they won't be able to go back for a while. They don't think I'm dead, do they? Emoi suddenly felt heavy in his hands. Looking up, Kagura had already filled herself up with juice again. Thanks. Kagura's eyes subconsciously dodged and she said unnaturally, we have just experienced a war here and the conditions are limited. I hope you don't mind. How could it be? Emoi smiled openly. Ruzalai next to her seemed to suddenly remember something and asked, by the way Kagura, Desiruk was not seen among the demons who attacked Mermaid Heel today. Did you meet him on the way back? I've already killed him. Emoi took over the conversation and said. There was a little astonishment in Ruzalai's eyes, but she thought of the terrifying strength Emoi had shown previously. Everything seems to make sense. By the way, how did you two meet? It's not like Kagura said, she suddenly picked you up halfway, right? There's nothing wrong with saying that. Emoi scratched his head and continued, to be precise, I come from the north of Fiori. I was accidentally teleported here for some reasons, and then I was taken into the carriage by Kagura while I was unconscious. Ruzalai suddenly realized. No wonder Emoi meets him, there has never been a strong man of this level in the Conch Bay area. I'm afraid that all the top 10 magicians will be eclipsed in front of him. Kagura asked softly, if you don't mind, why don't you stay in Mermaid Heel during this period? There are still free rooms in the girls' apartment. Living in a girls' dormitory? Before Emoi could react, several girls who were watching the fun had gathered around and agreed. Stay. Even though the battle is fierce today, the night view of Conch Bay is very beautiful during peacetime. Yes, if you are tired from playing, you can ask Kagura to warm your bed at night. Kagura's pretty face was covered with red clouds at a speed visible to the naked eye. Immediately feeling embarrassed and annoyed, he raised his hand and pretended to hit the girl who was joking. Hihi, I can't hit you, I can't hit you. In my opinion, Emoi won't be able to go back for a while anyway, so why not join our Mermaid Heel Guild? What a great idea. I support it with both hands and feet. But the problem is, doesn't Mermaid Heel only recruit female members? If Emoi comes in, will people in the town talk about it? Oh, rules are dead, but people are alive. I agree too. In the worst case, let him wear women's clothes when going out. No one will be able to tell. The more you say it, the more outrageous it becomes. Emoi coughed helplessly and gently pulled away a corner of his black cloak, exposing his upper body. Several girls turned away shyly. However, under the gaze of most people, Emoi's palm gently crossed his chest. There was an ugly scar like a dragon's claw on it, almost tearing the entire skin to pieces. It's hard to imagine how much damage he suffered at that time. Behind the scar, a strange golden pattern can be faintly seen. It's just that it's in disrepair. Emoi smiled brightly. I already have a guild. Although the coat of arms has been destroyed, the original appearance is almost completely unrecognizable. However, I will always be a member of Fairy Tail. Everyone was startled. Kagura thought thoughtfully. Fairy Tail? I seem to have heard of this guild. Is your guild leader Makarov, one of the 10 holy wizards? Emoi smiled and nodded. It seems we still have a bit of a reputation. Well, last time I went to the Magic Council for a meeting as the acting president, the name I heard the most was Fairy Tail. Your guild seems to like destroying half of the town no matter what mission it takes. Emoi. Sometimes being too famous is not a good thing. But it's too far away from Fairy Tail. How are you going to get back? There's no rush yet. The threat from the Evil Spirit Temple has not been completely eliminated. Emoi replied immediately. Ruzalai was puzzled. Isn't Disalok already dead? And basically all the demons under him are here. Emoi looked slightly solemn. The current leader of the Evil Spirit Temple is not Disalok, but Li Xingtian Quanghua, one of the 9 ghost gates of the underworld. Although I don't know why Quanghua came here, in order to prevent future troubles, it's better to eliminate the roots. So, I'm going to leave tomorrow morning. Disalok already revealed before his death that their headquarters is in the western mountains of Kongbei. Kagura couldn't help but be stunned. So fast? The injuries on your body. Skin injury, it's okay. Emoi smiled lightly and moved his arms to indicate that he was fine. For magicians, part of the magic power in the body can be used to maintain the life and health of the body. The more sufficient magic power there is, the faster the recovery from injuries will be. And for a person like Emoi, who has never lacked magic power, the wound healing speed is extremely unbelievable, like an immortal Xiaoqiang. Kagura's cold beautiful eyes revealed some hesitation, and then she suggested, "Shall I go with you then? It is our job to destroy the Dark Guild's Evil Spirit Temple." Considering the complex terrain of the mountainous area, Emoi had never been there before, so after careful consideration, he nodded in agreement. The worst thing is to pay more attention when the time comes and don't let her be in danger. Bang 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 bang. There was a roar overhead. Emoi subconsciously thought that another enemy was attacking. Just when I was about to activate my magic power, I realized that they were just fireworks lit by the girls with mermaid heels. The bright and gorgeous light illuminates the entire night sky, reflecting on the faces of every magician, reflecting a dreamlike brilliance. After the simple dinner, Emoi, led by Kagura, went to his residence not far from the guild. The buildings here have not been damaged by demons. Looking up, the entire building is much larger than the girls' apartment in Fairy Tail. After all, the entire guild here is made up of girls. End of the 3rd floor. Kagura's eyes showed a little gentleness. Here is the key to your room. The daily necessities have been prepared for you. Besides, my room is on the right. If you have any questions, just ask me. Does it include a warm bed? Ahem, thank you very much. Emoi sneered twice, took the key and opened the door to his room. Turn your head. But he found that Kagura had not left, and there was still a bit of embarrassment on his face. Is there anything else? If it's convenient, can you go back to your room with me? With confusion, Emoi was led directly to her bedroom on the right by Kagura. The faint fragrance of flowers hits my face. Looking inside, I found that the room layout was extremely simple, even like a cheap hotel. Lisena's room was even better than when she was in Edila's. But Lisena was really poor at the time, and Kagura seemed to have something on her mind. After asking Emoi to sit down, Kagura immediately walked to the table and took down a long-preserved Wizard Weekly from the highest place on the bookshelf. Just looking at the cover, it looks familiar. This is. Kagura turned it directly to a page in the middle. The moment he saw the text and illustrations, Emoi suddenly understood. The council was attacked a few days ago, and the Holy 10 Great Wizards Chikrain turned out to be the memory body of Jelal, the ruler of the Tower of Paradise. After investigation, it was found that Jelal and Arusha colluded to steal the magical elf power. Their real purpose was to activate the dark ritual of the Tower of Paradise. After stabilizing the situation in the Senate, Lahar, the captain of the 4th Forced Supervision Force, led the army to the scene, only to find that the Tower of Paradise had just been destroyed and collapsed. At the back is a picture of his back when he rescued Urza. From the time you took us flying, I felt that you were very similar to the person in the photo. Did you destroy the Tower of Paradise? That's right. Emoi replied vaguely. After all, I had just traveled through time at that time, and I didn't have a good grasp of dragon-slaying magic power. To put it bluntly, I was quite good at that time. The real reason for the destruction of the Paradise Tower was actually the rampage of Jelal and the magical elves. Kagura's tone suddenly became a little excited. She almost grabbed Emoi's hands and asked incoherently, "My brother? He was also in the Tower of Paradise at that time? His name is Simon, have you seen him? And under Kagura's expectant and almost pleading eyes, Emoi smiled helplessly and finally nodded. I know Simon. He had escaped safely before the Tower of Paradise was destroyed. Every word passed into Kagura's ears, and crystal tears instantly fell from the corners of her eyes. Is this, really? Ever since she was separated in an accident when she was a child, she has been on the road to find her brother for many years. In the impression, what forced the siblings to separate was a group of weird people dressed up like demons. After many twists and turns, Kagura learned that those people came from the Tower of Paradise. Their purpose was to capture living sacrifices and sacrifice them to Ziraf. As for the location, there is no way of knowing. Until I saw the news about the Senate from a weekly magazine half a year ago, the Tower of Paradise had been destroyed and the clues were broken again. Her personality also underwent subtle changes. She became cold and aloof under the torment of missing her every day, and she only wanted to find her brother. After hearing Emoi's answer, the years of grievance seemed to be rewarded in an instant, and I could no longer suppress my inner excitement. You mean, my brother is still alive? Yes. Not only is he alive, he should be traveling around the world with his friends now, and he can be considered a free life, right? Emoi replied with a smile. Tears rolled down Kagura's cheeks. She no longer expects to see her brother right away. As long as she knows that he is still alive, she is satisfied. Emoi sighed secretly in his heart. Kagura and Urza have quite similar personalities. They always deliberately show a strong appearance in front of other people and keep all their grievances in their hearts. But after taking off the disguise, you will find that they are just ordinary girls, and they all have a weak side. A long while. Kagura then raised her head, her tearful eyes filled with endless gratitude. Mr. Emoi, how can I thank you for saving Mermaid Heel, and my brother and I? Help me warm the bed. Emoi blurted out without thinking. Kagura suddenly blushed from her neck to her ears. Subconsciously he averted his eyes, unable to tell for a moment whether Emoi was serious or not. If so, it seems, not unacceptable. Emoi, who had a serious face, broke through in the next second and smiled. Ahem. I'm just kidding, don't take it seriously. If I hadn't been taken into the carriage by you when I was unconscious, maybe I would have been killed by the devil before I regained consciousness. There's no need to be so polite. Just call me by my name. Calling me sir seems unfamiliar. Kagura nodded slightly. The previous chill in his eyes had long been gone, and now he turned his attention to the photos in the Wizard's Weekly again. In the photo, in addition to Emoi who activated the wings of the storm dragon to fly in the sky, there was also a girl lying quietly in his arms. Although the girl's face cannot be seen clearly, her long crimson hair is particularly eye-catching. Kagura couldn't help but recall Kagura's childhood memories, and it took a while before she spoke with difficulty. At that time, our village was attacked, the houses were engulfed in fire, and my brother was also arrested by them. Seeing that I was about to be discovered, a sister who was several years older than me suddenly appeared and helped me hide in the box, so I escaped. I remember very clearly, that sister also had crimson hair and was very beautiful. Emoi took a long breath and said with a wry smile. You are right, the sister in the photo is called Urza. Urza mentioned that she once saved a little girl when the disaster happened. It should be you.
Hello everyone! As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500+ novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.